Warning. Audio discretion is advised. This book contains strong language, extreme graphic violence and explicit sexual reference. You have been warned. Street Justice. Written and narrated by Eddy. Chapter 1. The big man downed the remainder of his pint. It was gone 5 p.m. by now, and he had only popped in at lunchtime to see the local shoplifters about getting him some very expensive perfume, as it was his wife's birthday soon. There was really no point in paying full price or something when these boys only charged a third. Now that would be silly, wouldn't it? Of course it would. Although these boys are smackheads, proper heroin users, they were very good at their job and were usually inundated with orders for various goods, and their services were in demand. They were certainly doing their bit for the economy in that particular pub. They could be found there most lunchtimes, refreshed and ready for the afternoon shift, and taking orders from whoever needed anything. The big man and a few others took priority, as they were good customers. A few years ago he was in there one night, well pissed up, when they asked him if he required anything, and in jest he said, "Yeah, get me a grandfather clock," and he and his friends all laughed. The two shoplifters didn't know, they just said OK. 5 days later the landlord informed him that there was a big fuck-off rock in my storeroom and I want it gone, or you and your smackhead mates are barred. I don't mind a bit of gear behind a jump, but not fucking Big Ben. He learned a valuable lesson that day. Be careful for what you wish for. He gave the boys a monkey for it and gave it to his wife for Christmas. She hated it, so it had lived in the garage ever since. Yeah, no doubt about it, these boys were good. The pub was a den of thieves and the black economy was alive and well, as it had been for as long as he could remember. Even the old bills used to get their size 12s in a trough and buy the odd bit of hooky gear. Well, why not? They like to save a few quid like everybody else, especially on the wages these mugs were on. Contrary to common belief, all coppers are not bastards. Some of them, mainly the old school, were quite decent blokes, the sort you wouldn't mind having a beer with, and maybe getting a heads up if they were getting a bit twitchy about certain activities going on round the manor, which could be quite handy if you knew the people responsible. But sadly, it was this new breed of young, eager, dipshit jobs-worth copper who gave the filth a bad name. Times are changing. He ordered a large brandy and necked it in one, just to warm him against the cold London weather he was about to go out into. He said his goodbyes and left. Right enough, the cold air hit him as soon as he opened the door. It was freezing. The evening air seemed positively hostile. The brandy wasn't working either. He had a bit of a wobble on too. Still, after 7 pints of Stella and a large brandy, that was to be expected. He had promised to take her indoors out for a meal that night, so he'd go home and have a shower and sober up. He also wanted to get his leg over, and she became quite flexible after a bottle of good red wine. He was beginning to regret all that drink though. He wasn't a young man anymore, and he couldn't handle the lunchtime sessions like he used to. The car was parked halfway up the road on the corner of a side street. He had his fake blue badge and cardboard clock in the window. This kept the flies away, especially when parked on the yellow line, and saved a fortune in parking fees. He also hated traffic wardens, as most motorists do. No surprise there. Those rodents were a right nuisance. He continued his slow, slightly wobbly walk, wishing he had parked nearer the pub. The street corner was in sight now. Good. He could do with a sit-down. The car had invisible autopilot too, so it practically drove itself home from this familiar location, or so it seemed. There were 6 of them hanging about, just around the corner in the dingy, litter-strewn side street, outside a boarded-up wallpaper shop that had long since gone to the wall itself, as so many other shops had in the past few years. Croydon was fast becoming a soulless ghetto, a place that had lost its vibrance and identity. Sad. They were loitering, waiting for their dealer to turn up with some chemical goodies to help alleviate the terminal boredom and sheer pointlessness of life that most of the young suffered these days. They were between 17 and 20 years of age, fit, well-built young men. What a waste. All were wearing hoodies, all looked like Rat Boy. One was sitting on the bonnet of the gleaming black Jag, smoking a joint, like he owned the car. Well, he fucking didn't. The big man turned the corner and was confronted with the sight of this little young turd blatantly sitting on his bonnet. His fucking bonnet. The bonnet of his beloved car. His baby. His Jag. This little cunt was proper taking a liberty. Walking briskly now towards the boy and not really noticing the other rodents who were also nearby the car, as he was too focused on the young termite smoking and laughing, sitting on his bonnet. "Get off my fucking car," he bellowed. The boy didn't move, sitting there defiantly. 2 steps later he was level with the car and the now widely smirking boy, whose smirk seemed to be saying, "Fuck you, old man." It all happened very quickly. His arms shot out, his fist connecting crisply and precisely with the boy's jaw. There was a faint crunch as a large set of hardened knuckles came into contact with the young, fragile jawbone. The boy disappeared over the other side of the bonnet and landed in the road with a thud. The young lad was beaten and out cold. He was no longer smirking. No sooner had he retracted his fist that the other 5 boys were on him like a pack of savage lions attacking a large wildebeest. He managed to kick one of them full force in the bollocks. The force had the lad doubled up and yelping in pain. Then he felt a sharp pain on the back of his knee joints, where one of them struck him very hard with a baseball bat, sent him crashing down hard on his knees, one of which had recently been operated on. He was now vulnerable. They started stabbing him with such ferocity he could feel the fight drain out of his body, along with Estella. Each stab felt like a hot poker being punched into his now prone body. He was hurt bad. He knew that much. He had never been beaten before. Then the baseball bat made heavy contact with the back of his cranium. At that point the lights went out. Not content with beating the big man unconscious, they started stomping on his prone body, his head and limbs. One of the attackers then raised the baseball bat and smashed it down hard on his left hand for good measure. He felt no pain though. He was well past that stage now. A pool of blood started to form around his body, exiting from the many stab wounds that had been so brutally and unnecessarily inflicted. The blood was now flowing into the gutter. He could be dead, he could be not. The wildebeest was a strong and powerful animal, more so than any single lion, but they had attacked him in unison, and instead of teeth and claws, these animals had used serrated knives and a baseball bat to fell this big man. He was a human and not a wildebeest though, but it still seemed he lived in the jungle. They walked away, no pangs of guilt, no conscience, nothing. Their upbringing did not afford them such basic human decency, their parents incapable of breeding and rearing decent human beings. They also left their fallen friend lying in the gutter by the front wheel of the Jag, the bonnet of which he had so cockily sat on only moments earlier. This kind of scum knew no law to either, but on this occasion they will wish they had, for by leaving their friend there, unconscious, would prove life-changing for them. A woman walking her dog found them both a few minutes later. They were both lying unconscious either side of the gleaming black Jaguar, the only witness to this violent onslaught, but metal can't talk, not even such beautiful gleaming black metal. The woman alerted the police and the ambulance service. Luckily she didn't turn her back and just walk on, like so many other frightened citizens would have done, not wanting to get involved. This was just another incident, another South London statistic to the authorities, but life or death for the big man lying on the pavement like some piece of discarded human waste. Life was cheap in broken Britain, so very cheap. Chapter 2. My God, the year 2012, was that the time already? The year the world was supposed to end. Well, according to the ancient prophecies it was, and looking out of his window of his nice, comfy, well-furnished flat at the grim view of dark grey rain-filled sky, partially concealing the gasworks, Fox thought that this could just well be as the last days may look. Mankind would surely soon play itself out, but not this year. Looks like the ancients got it wrong. It was 7 a.m. on a typical dirty South London morning in March. Mind you, it could have just as easily been June, because there were no more seasons nowadays, just rain and cold, or rain and warmth. Fox hadn't slept well that night at all, not since receiving that phone call from Lynn, the phone call that was about to change everything, not just for himself, but many others. She was calling from the hospital. Fox had too many thoughts of hate and revenge running amok through his already unbalanced brain, and not even a fully loaded joint could bring him sleep. Usually one would put him into a coma until the next morning, when he had trouble sleeping, which is quite often these days. The problem was that he had too much time on his hands these days, too much time to dwell and think, which for someone like him was not good. The last 18 months or so had been very quiet, business was very slow, as was his sideline. They had both virtually come to a halt, the handbrake was up. In fact, he was living quite a boring life, without excess money to throw about. He was comfortable and not short of money, but far from extravagant like he was used to. Nevertheless, he counted himself very lucky, as he didn't have to get up every morning in all weathers and have to commute to a dead-end wage-slave job on public transport or on a box on 4 wheels, just to make ends meet. He could never be one of those people. A living hell, he imagined, totally soul-destroying. Especially looking out of the window at this horrible morning. That was the difference between success and failure, doing what he wanted to do and not what someone else told you to do. He had recently just turned 50 years of age and wondered where all those years had gone, especially the last 30 years. Gone in a flash, or so it seemed to him. He even went back to his childhood when reminiscing, which was unusual for him. He had far too much time to think. Back to the tender age of 8, when he stole his first item, a radio battery from a local post office while out of his mother. He didn't need it, but it was there, so he just took it. When they got home, innocently, or on further thought, foolishly, he told his mother, only to get a clip round the ear and marched back to the shop and returned the battery and apologised to the shopkeeper. Lesson learned. No, Not that stealing was wrong, but to keep his mouth shut next time, and there will be plenty of next times. Fox was a criminal, plain and simple. No excuses. It ran through him like the writing on a stick of Brighton rock. It was in his make-up. He enjoyed taking what he wanted, or finding the means to pay for it. Either way, he enjoyed the mental challenge, the adrenaline rush, and most of all, the fruits of his labour. It was, however, not in his DNA. He wasn't brought up like that either. No, he was an only child. His father was a totally law-abiding citizen, a real straight-goer, as they say. Sadly, he never got a chance to know his father, and things would have been very different for him today, if they had. For, apparently, he was quite strict and would have wanted his son to be privately schooled and have a good education and career. According to his mother, yes, things could have turned out a whole lot differently for him. But his father died when he was just 6 years old, so it didn't go in the intended direction. This left his mother to bring him up on her own. He had no siblings, no aunts, no uncles, cousins, only a maternal grandmother, and she didn't particularly like him. No loss there, though. He weren't too keen on her anyway. His mother, however, encouraged him to mix with other boys. He was sent away to boys' camps in the summer, and soon learned how to get on with other people. How to mix, and he also learned that good friends were more than a substitute for not having a proper family. It worked out quite well and helped shape the young boy. How to make friends, get along with his peers, play sports, have fights, etc. All in all, just what growing boys are supposed to do. Maybe if it had been in this sad day and age, his mother would have wrapped him in cotton wool, let him stay in his bedroom for countless hours, on his computer, his best friend, which is how so many young losers live their lives now. But then, his mother would have taken this course of action for fear of him going outside and mixing with a feral scum who now plagued the streets. Who knows? But he was glad that he didn't have any kids to bring up in these immoral, dangerous times. It must be a nightmare, he thought. He was a well-rounded person, although he had always had a deep sense of isolation and a deep inner loneliness. More so today, as he had more time to dwell. Too much fucking time, in fact. Something just wasn't quite right, but he couldn't put his finger on it. No one would have known it, though, as he was an outgoing, sociable person and respected by his peers for his reliability and honesty among his own. He firmly believed those qualities made a man and were very important to maintain. No one likes a dishonest, unreliable, low-life piece of shit in their midst, and he had come across many of those in his years, especially in his line of work. But that's just how it was. Maybe if he had had a private education he was destined to receive, he would have mixed with even bigger two-faced, dishonest, deceiving maggots. The difference being, these were educated liars, which made them more dangerous. Fox was an honourable man with his own set of rules and his own moral compass. His life, his rules. But apart from all that, he still felt like an island. His bad luck with families continued. He was once married with a daughter when he was in his early 20s, but sadly the woman he was married to was a fucking ogre, pure poison, a real sack of shit, the biggest mistake he ever made. He eventually left her, purely for the sake of his sanity, and the fact that he had urged to do her great harm, and that couldn't happen, even though she thoroughly deserved hurting. His daughter was 9 years old at the time, but due to his wife's poisonous brainwashing and utter hatred for him, he never saw the girl again. 2 years later, she was hit by a car and was in a coma for 3 days before dying of her injuries. Even then, his ex-bitch didn't bother to tell him that his daughter had passed away. He only found out from his ex-mother-in-law, who he had always gotten on with, and he knew deep down inside, she knew what an unbalanced, horrible person her daughter was, and only thought if the right thing to do to inform Fox of his child's death. Fox and his mother went to the funeral, and he laid a bunch of black orchids on the coffin as it was being lowered into eternity. Then, as he walked away, he spat in his ex-wife's face as he left. She didn't react. He really should have broken her fucking neck, opened the lid and put her in a box too, but she wasn't worth getting lifed off for. But maybe it would have been worth it just to hear her dirty neck snap. Maybe. He never managed to shed a tear or grief for his daughter, Victoria, as he never really knew her. One of his main regrets in life was having a child with this vile bitch. Had it been any other woman, things would have not ended so tragically. This was just one of the demons he had carried inside him for so many years, and the rest to come. Maybe it was his destiny not to know what it was like to have a family, to be part of one, feel the closeness and love that one could provide. Still, that was all part of what had shaped him through his life. A life which, to this point, he was perfectly happy with. Things had almost been on his terms so far. He had progressed from a 2-bob radio battery stolen at the age of 8 from a post office to push bikes, motorbikes, cars, shoplifting, robbing social clubs, pubs, warehouses, etc., and all manner of things in between. It had all been for financial gain. He didn't see the point of risking his liberty for anything other than money. OK, there had been your bit of vandalism, arson, punch-ups and joyriding, getting his first proper arrest at the age of 13 for stealing a moped and getting chased by a Bill, and receiving a driving ban for 2 years and a probation. He even went through a phase of taking telephone dials from phone boxes. You remember those funny looking red things on the street corners, and throwing them through windows, but boys will be boys. Having left school at the age of 15, with not one qualification, he got a job as a baker. He was no academic, that was certain, and he was no great loss to the school. He just wanted to work and earn money. He could read and write and was pretty good at maths, and that was good enough for him. The rest of the stuff they taught at school seemed pretty irrelevant as far as he was concerned. How was the intimate knowledge of an isosceles triangle going to get him that new Kawasaki Z1000 sitting on the driveway? It wasn't. But a crowbar, a Phillips screwdriver and a bit of silver foil to get ignition would. Then, dressed in a new number plate, he would be able to enjoy his new bike, thus saving him a considerable amount of money having to buy one from a showroom. Quite simple really. Street education, not fucking trigonometry. His life, his terms. Fox was doing okay, working by day and stealing by night, until one day, when he was 19, things took a turn for the worst in the shape of a wages snatch that went boss-eyed. Well, it was inevitable really. He was burning the candle at both ends and was getting away with a lot of things. He was, as they say, well overdue. This unfortunate incident earned him 2 years in Borstal. Did not pass go and did not collect 200 quid. Mind you, the way he was going, he could have collected a lot more porridge if he hadn't been caught that time, as him and his pals were progressing to more serious crimes. After the wages snatch, they had a major robbery lined up. The big league was calling, and when you carried shooters, whether you used them or not, the stakes rose considerably. So fate dealt him the result by only getting him 2 years, although he didn't see it like that at the time. But the ever-resourceful young Fox turned the negative into a positive, and whilst locked up, he made good use of his time and took advantage of the opportunities offered to him by the system. He qualified as a mechanic, as cars and bikes were his passion. He even got a certificate, which he was proud of. Well, it was the only one he ever had, apart from the cycling proficiency test he took at primary school. In fact, he still had the little triangle badge to prove it, somewhere. He also learned about new car theft techniques from another chap on the course, which should also come in handy at a later stage. All in all, his time passed slowly, but it wasn't as bad as he thought it was going to be, even though Borstal was tough in those days, as it should be. Not like today's 4-star hotels run by pathetic social workers and lefty do-gooder retards. No, he knew he did his bird as it was meant to be done, not wrapped in cotton wool. Upon his release, he got a job in a bread factory. It was shift work, and the money was good, but it was mind-numbing bollocks. It wasn't for him. He knew he was much better than that. Working in a factory for the rest of his life like some lobotomized loser. No way. He had his whole life ahead of him, and it was fucked if he was going to spend it putting bread dough into tins while surrounded by retards and window lickers. This was the kind of place you were expected to end up if you had no education, not to mention a criminal record. He may not have been an academic, but he did have a brain. Big difference. Sadly, his mother didn't share his way of thinking. To her, it was a disappointment. Leaving school with nothing, mixing in the wrong company and getting locked up. He was now, to top it all off, working in a factory and a totally dead-end job with no apparent future. Relationships were strained, to say the least. Even to the present day, despite his success, she couldn't bring herself to praise him or be proud of him. He would never live up to her expectations. Well, it worked both ways. Fox didn't give a toss. After a few months of the bread factory nonsense and mixing with the fraggles who worked there, he managed to break free before he got sucked into their one-dimensional world, and he got himself a job in a backstreet garage in nearby Mitcham, a shitty South London suburb. It wasn't too far from Streatham, where he now lived with his future venomous nightmare of a wife. The garage only did bodywork, not mechanical, but he soon found out that there was more money to be made in body repairs than mechanical. His new boss was a black guy called Vic, who had taken him under his wing, and Fox quickly learned the trade. So quick, in fact, that within 2 years he had his own body shop, along with a friend of his. They did lots of work for local car dealers, who paid less but gave them a good quantity of work. So when things were a bit quiet, they could still earn their bread and butter from these dealers. But while he was working his nuts off for these blokes, they were just sitting in their office, then earning all the money. They did the easy bit. Fox now wanted some of that. He really wasn't prepared to be a labourer working on cars for the rest of his life. These were the mid-80s, and now he had set himself up as a car dealer. These were the boom years, where big money could be earned by anyone with a bit of get up and go, not for your 9-to-5ers with no aspiration to improve their lives, which is okay with Fox, as these made up most of his customers. He had now found his niche in life and was quite happy as the money rolled in. Sadly, yet another disappointment for his mother. A car dealer for a son? Tut-tut. Never mind, he still can give a toss. Life had been a roller coaster ride up until the last 18 months. So much money had flowed under the bridge, from the legit car fronts, the squats, the lucrative sidelining fraud that yet another twist of fate had led him to. This sideline facilitated luxury worldwide travel, all the best hotels at home and abroad, the best cars, ringers, clothes, and a high lifestyle in general. All he wanted or needed without breaking into a sweat. All it took was a little application and creativity. It was there for the taking, which he was good at. Who needed an education? It only led to a shitty 9 to 5 anyway. He had met many colourful characters along the way too. Some good, some bad, some just plain crazy. He had done business with some, drunk with many, and laughed with them all. Where had all those priceless years gone? It seemed he was just a shell now, a shadow of his former self, getting older by the day. Now he was at a fork in the road. He had 2 important decisions to make. He had already made one the previous night. Revenge. Chapter 3. Later that morning, after a cold shower to chase the sleep away, he made his way through the traffic and pissing rain to Croydon's Mayday Hospital, also known by the locals as Mayday, due to its poor service and staff with little knowledge of the English language. The once great NHS was now on its knees. The hospital was only 3 miles away, but, being a Friday, and being as his journey took him past the main mosque in Croydon, it took him over an hour, as the roads were packed solid with government-funded people carriers of all makes, mostly new, full of worshippers on their way to pray. Fox pondered as he crawled along, one car length at a time, looking out of the window at what could easily pass for a Middle Eastern ghetto. Was this still England? And if so, for how much longer? A very depressing thought for someone as pissed off as he already was. He really needed to leave this sinking ship while he still could. He actually arrived, but had to park 2 streets away from the entrance. He walked slowly towards the hospital, a grim, dirty building in serious need of modernisation, but, he guessed, the council had more important things to spend their money on, like the shiny new mosque he had recently passed, 21st century priorities. He hated hospitals, no matter what the condition of the brickwork. He hated the smell and the knowledge of death occurring all around him. Maybe some poor soul was departing this earth as he was walking into the building. The knowledge that he may well end up in one of these places, an old man whose life was coming to an end, a life soon to be forgotten, committed to the earth, the bed changed and another soon-to-be corpse ensconced in the crisp starched sheets, while in another ward not too many feet away, a new life was beginning, eventually following in this inevitable journey. This scared him, but this was a cycle of life, and he was well and truly over the halfway mark. Death by cop, while he was still in good health, would enable him to cheat this grim end, he thought. A tad extreme, though, even with his warped mind, especially if the bastards didn't shoot straight. He'd be back to square one again. Nah, fuck that. He took the lift to the ICU floor and exited, gagging from the smell of piss, vomit and disinfectant. He entered the ward and saw Lynn sitting beside a bed, holding the hand of what resembled his close friend of many years, Big Stan Clark. It looked as if someone had taken a meat tenderizer to his face. His head was bandaged up and there was all manner of tubes and wires attached or inserted in him. He was unconscious. "What the hell happened, Lynn?" asked Fox, although he already knew this, but it was more of a reflex question upon seeing the state of Big Stan. "He was attacked, like I said," she replied. "Who the hell would want to try it on with him?" said Fox. Stan was 6'5" and 18 odd stone, an ex-skinhead and a dedicated football hooligan, albeit 30 or so years ago. He was still a frightening looking figure and could still have a good row and feared no one. He was a hard man. He and Fox had met back in the late 70s when Fox was going out with Stan's sister. Back then, Fox was stealing anything with wheels, mainly fast motorbikes, while Stan was going to football matches and kicking the shit out of anyone with a wrong colour scarf on. He was a legend on the terraces, fearless and very violent. He still was, but he had calmed down over the years, unless someone upset him, which rarely happened, but when it did, he would pound the shit out of them. But usually, one look from him would stop any aggro in its tracks. He and Fox really didn't have that much in common back then. Fox broke the law purely for financial gain, and was not in a mindless violence. On the other hand, Stan was not a criminal. He was a fairly honest man. He just liked to fight. It was that simple. Stan's sister was the only thing they had in common. But still, they forged an unlikely friendship over the years, which was still solid to this day. In fact, they had grown very close over the years. The criminal and the thug. Although Stan had stopped all his nonsense many years ago, Fox kept progressing. Well, thieving paid for things. Violence didn't. Fox looked at Stan as the brother he never had, though he would never tell him this. Stan had hung his steel toe caps up when he met Lynn. He met her while Fox was in Borstal, and was a changed man when he came out 2 years later. Stan introduced Fox to her. They both looked into each other's eyes for a split second, and then looked away, silently erasing the past as if by telepathy. "Hello," is all they said. Fox and Lynn had a history, but there was no need for Stan to know, as it might get in the way of his and her happiness. And in that split second that decision was made, and still adhered to this day. Fox and Lynn were born on the same day in the same year, and lived on the same street, only a few doors down from each other. They even shared the same pram. They grew up together, close childhood friends. Their mothers were good friends, sharing the bond of giving birth on the same day. They were always in and out of each other's houses, playing and just doing what kids do. They too shared a special bond, sharing their first kiss at the age of 9, and at 10 they gave each other friendship bracelets made from plaited shoelaces. He gave her a red one. Her name was Redwood, and he often called her Red. She gave him a black one. She said she thought he had a black heart. He didn't understand at the time, but he did much later on though. She moved away when they were 13 due to her father's job. Just before she left, they lost their virginity to each other in Fox's front room while his mother was at work. It meant a lot to him, and he thought it did to her. However, she moved a couple of days later, and he never heard from her again, despite her promises to write and phone. Fox missed her for a long time. She was nothing special, a bit of a plain Jane, with lank brown hair, and he jokingly called her the girl with the mousy hair, the words from a Bowie single out at the time. Lynn was his first love, his first experience of a woman, the warmth and the comfort, also the distance and the coldness. He would never understand them, never. Then, meeting all those years ago in those circumstances, very strange. However, a lot of water had passed under the bridge since then. They had made the right decision in that split second. Stan and her were meant to be. Big Stan had changed. He had grown his hair and stopped wearing the skinhead uniform of boots and braces. He had given up the violence. He had got his head down and started his own roofing business, which was now very successful. They had a son too, and everything in the garden was rosy, until the previous day. Not only would Big Stan's life change forever, but Lynn's too, though she didn't know it yet. Fox was now looking at his friend in this terrible state, and wondering who had done this to him. Whoever it was must have been well-handed to cause all this damage. Apparently he was jumped on by a gang of yobs as he was about to get into his car after coming out of George's pub. 5 of them, the bastard cowards, according to the woman who had found him. They had just walked past her. He managed to chin one of them up according to the old bill, said Lynn. She continued, he's been stabbed 16 times, a broken eye socket, 4 broken ribs and a broken hand. He got a whack on the head, but nothing severe. Of course she had told Fox all this on the phone the previous evening, hence his sleepless night. But seeing Stan now rammed it home to him, just how bad he was. Fox knew the story was true. He was jumped, because Stan would never pick a fight with a gang of yobs. Maybe 30 years ago, he would, just for the hell of it, and he would have crushed them all. But not now. He was set upon for some reason, probably for the sake of it, just so they could hurt somebody. They do that these days, don't they, these yobs, said Lynn with a tear in her eye. Fox had to look away, unable to deal with the emotion in that room right then. Fear, anger and pain. Also, the question why. He knew the youth of the day were nothing more than feral animals, zero morals, unafraid of the law and the pathetic justice system. They had no discipline at school or at home, whilst being dragged up by low-life parents who should never be allowed to breed. They got their kicks from hurting innocent people just to fill the void in their pointless, worthless lives. This really sickened him to the very core. He had read all too often of these random attacks, especially in a local rag, but to experience it happening to someone close to him really pissed him off. To see firsthand just what these bags of pus were capable of doing to a fellow human being disgusted him. What did the doctors say were his chances of full recovery? Asked Fox. He'll pull through, he's a tough bastard, remember. The stab wounds are not life-threatening, thank God. He'll be moved to a normal ward in a couple of days, all going well, she replied. Do you want me to do anything? Asked Fox. Yeah, you can pick his car up from North Police Station and take him home for him. Also, I phoned Matt. He's arriving at Gatwick North Terminal tomorrow. Can you pick him up too? Matt was Stan and Lynn's only child. He was away at a kickboxing camp in the Philippines for a few months. He was 26 and already the European champion, and will be world champion one day when he turned pro. Fox assured us. Matt was dedicated and as hard as nails, like his old man. OK, no problem. Ring me later and let me know how the patient's doing, and I'll bring Matt straight around here tomorrow, said Fox. Just as he was leaving, Lynn said in a low voice, I know who one of them is. How's that? Asked Fox. I heard the nurse talking to the copper who's dealing with this and telling him the boy's name and address, the one who Stan hit. He had his ID on him, so she told the copper to hurry things up and get his parents down to the hospital. Do you remember any part of what the nurse said? Asked Fox, getting a little excited. With that, she handed him a scrap of paper she had scribbled on. Neville Harrison, 481, Headley Road, Addo. This gave Fox an immediate rush. He held the scrap of paper and stared at it, as if it was the winning lotto ticket. His brain was bouncing so many thoughts of torture, maiming and other punishments around inside his head. He almost got a semi right there in the room. He had a lead. There was a light at the end of the tunnel. With this information he could find the identity of these vermin and dish out some real justice. Life-changing justice. Beautiful retribution. Perfect pain. Screams of pure agony. Revenge was what he needed. What he really needed. This would feed some of the demons inside him. This would satisfy their greed. He would make these disgusting young animals wish they had never been born. He would make their pond-life parents cry when they saw the terrible things that he had done to their filthy offspring. Fox knew at that moment just how truly disturbed he really was. His thoughts were not with his friend lying there in a hospital bed, but of the sheer satisfaction he would get from hurting these young scabs. His demons were calling. They were happy too. It was soon to be their feeding time. All he had to do now was plan the next step. Planning was what he was good at. It's what made him a success. It was now what was going to fulfill his warped desire for revenge. He left the hospital with a spring in his step. Game on, motherfuckers. Chapter 4. Fox left the hospital feeling a bit queasy due to the smell of piss and vomit in the lift on the way down, and made his way through the heavy traffic, mainly made up of ragheads leaving the mosque and heading back home. What shit morning, he thought to himself. Having seen his old pal lying in that hospital bed in such a state had deeply affected him and enhanced his rage and hate for the vile society he now lived in and shared with the scummy pond life, such as the ones who had done this to Stan for no fucking reason. He poured himself a large VAT and sat down for 5 minutes, reflecting on what he was now unconditionally immersed in, not by choice, but by sense of loyalty and a sense to need to vent some of his anger at the scum on the streets. Little did he know just how far it would escalate in the coming months. He finished his drink and considered pouring another one, but decided against it. He needed to pick up Stan's car from the old bill pound, and the last thing he needed was some over-keen ponce of a copper smelling his breath and giving him a tug. Fuck those muggy cunts, he thought. Fox had a deep disliking for the filth, as he did for most official figures, as most of them he considered the enemy. The bastard taxman, the old bill, traffic wardens, ticket inspectors. That was just a childhood thing, though, as he wouldn't be seen dead on a scuzzy public transport since he first got a driving licence. And last, but by no means least, the bastard TV licence arsehole, who constantly knocked on every door that he had ever owned over the years, asking to see his TV licence. Well, they could fuck right off as far as he was concerned. His TVs worked just as well without one. It was only recently that his pal and landlord Roy had punched one in the mouth for having the front to ask him for his licence. No doubt the old Bill will be getting involved soon, but Roy didn't give a shit. He, like Fox, didn't have any time for these parasites. Fox phoned Norwell police station to arrange to pick up the car, but that seemed easier said than done, as things these days were not straightforward anymore. There was no such thing as a simple phone call now. That was a thing of the past that only dinosaurs like him remembered. After about 20 minutes of being put on hold, then transferred here, there, and maybe even to a Bombay call centre, he finally got through and tried to explain the simple fact that he needed to pick up a friend's car from the pound, giving Stan's name and the registration number of the car. This was met with some confusion by the moron on the other end of the phone, so he was transferred to a higher power within the zoo that held the blue bottles. So now he repeated his request to pick up the car to some other halfwit who he doubted had the intelligence of a fucking tree stump, but he hoped the message would be relayed to the relevant department by the dummy. But who could tell? He called a cab and half an hour later he was there, armed with his insurance policy and licence, just in case the idiots would try to be funny and not allow him to take the car over some small technicality. You could never tell with these two bob failures in uniform, forced to do their policing from behind a desk. They tended to have a plate of chips on their shoulders, forced to push a pen until they were pensioned off and put out to pasture in their allotments, wondering where the last 35 years had gone, with all to show for it was a 2-bob carriage clock from Argos sitting on their mantelpiece, next to the wedding photo of him and his wife, who bore no resemblance to the one that he was shackled to now, 8 stone of which he was not legally married to, after years of her getting fat and leading such a dull life, which made dishwater seem exotic. Such is the life of a copper. He stood for the minute at the gates of a grim grey building, which blended in well with the grim grey sky. A building full of old Bill, a very nasty breed of people. He hated these places as much as he hated hospitals, because you were in trouble if you were admitted to either establishment. He walked along the short path and entered the building, and walked a few short steps to the front desk, and told a pimple-infested retard behind the jump that he was here to pick up Mr. Clark's car. The pissant promptly got up and disappeared through the door behind him, never to return. Maybe this was all too much for him. He could have gone for a little lie down, or a fucking well overdue lobotomy. Fox didn't know, But looking at the skinny, scrawny youth, he realised the force must be getting desperate in their quest to recruit police officers, as possibly the safest place for this boy was behind a desk, as he would no doubt get his face kicked in if he tried to arrest anybody over 5'3" and 10 stone. 5 minutes passed, with Fox wondering if this was not going to be as easy as he thought. After all, so far, with the phone call and now his arrival, the simple task of picking up a car seemed to be pushing the Met staff a little too far. Thank God he wasn't there to actually report a crime. That could really have fucked up the whole status quo in this grubby building. His thought pattern was abruptly broken when an old familiar face and a former adversary appeared behind the counter. "Hello, Mr. Fox," said the formidable figure standing before him. It was none other than Detective Chief Inspector Cotton of Scotland Yard, the last person that Fox had expected to see. His heart skipped a beat. DCI Cotton was a 6'5" lump and a real proper old school copper. Although he was nearing retirement, he was still as sharp as a shithouse rat. He was top dog at the Yard's fraud squad. He was nicking crooks when they were still using an abacus to commit fraud. He was a real criminal's nightmare. He was feared and respected, and was once head of the flying squad back in the day. He took no shit. He was the heavy mob. Fox also had a grudge and respect for the man. He may have been the enemy, but Fox had entered the arena on an opposing side, and like two fighters in the ring, both wanting to win respect for one another, or just one way possible, though he doubted that Cotton respected him, as he had Fox in his grasp, but had to let him go. That was a close call. He won that bout by the skin of his expensively capped teeth. Fox wondered if he had been set up, but surely not. After all, he hadn't been active for some time, or could this be an old comeback? How could Cotton know he was going to be there? Fox had the misfortune to come across Cotton 6 years earlier, when his good friend Frankie was arrested for a big scam, which involved using credit card numbers to pay for goods and getting them delivered to drop addresses, ones with no comebacks to him, then selling the stuff on, such as gas boilers, electrical goods and anything of high value, for half price. He was also sending people he knew on expensive foreign holidays, or getting a first-class long-haul flights, using the same method, and charging half price, or less if Fox was going on holiday via Frankie's unofficial travel service. Fox took full advantage of this little turnout, even going to Australia for a month with his pal, Roy. All expenses paid. Frankie looked after Fox as they went back a long way, and over the years did plenty of business, both legal and otherwise, always doing well. Fox had nothing to do with Frankie's swindle this time, but upon learning how it worked, he started his own version, and he was also seeing a girl at the time who happened to work in a big retail store. This was ideal, as he had persuaded her to supply him with till receipts containing credit card numbers. She could also cherry-pick and just give him the gold and platinum card details, with much higher limits, leaving the lesser cards alone. Great stuff, and so fucking easy. Well, easy if you had the brains and know-how, and Fox did. He was a quick learner. Cheers, Frankie. His version wasn't as big as Frankie's, though. He didn't want to get too greedy. He was quite happy with a couple of grand a week for making a few phone calls. He also modified the scam a little, which worked out well. Also, there were free restaurants, hotels, holidays in the sun, and sometimes taking the bird who supplied them the card details as a reward. She never knew just how much these numbers she was supplying were earning him. He always played it down. He kept her on a short leash, but she was in love with him, so he used that to his advantage. Together with his second-hand car business and a few other no-strings-attached birds on the go, and lots more he was into, life was very sweet. He was fit and healthy, and also living on his own in a nice house he had acquired. Such happy days. But deep down inside, he knew that when things were this good, as in other times during his life, something not so good was waiting for him round the corner. That's just how life worked. Good times don't last forever. Sad but true. It was best to milk a good thing while you could, and experience told him that there was always going to be a fly in the ointment sooner or later, and on that particular occasion, that fly was in the shape of DCI Cotton of the Yard. Frankie was arrested for an unrelated incident, and due to being sloppy and somewhat complacent, his credit card number scam was uncovered. Had he been more careful, like Fox was, then it would never have come to light. Then Cotton wanted the word with all those who had been benefiting from Frankie's little holidays and flights coup. Bastard. Fox had just picked up 2 first-class tickets for a 5-star accommodation for him and a bird to the Caribbean from one of his drop addresses, the day before Frankie was nicked. He was due to leave the next week, but as time drew on, he had learned of people getting a tug. He knew that it was only a matter of time before he put in an appearance. So, with a heavy heart, he burned the tickets in the accommodation voucher the day before they were due to go. He knew it was way too risky to go. He told the bird he was going with that the travel company had gone bust, so he couldn't go. Well, in a way it was true. Frankie was busted, and so it took on a knock-on effect to their holiday. Cotton had done his homework and got in touch with the airlines and hotels and obtained the names of the people who had travelled on the stolen credit card numbers, which included Fox. The problem was that every foreign holiday needed to be booked in a person's real name, as it involved showing their passport. Somehow, there was no danger of a comeback. Well, except if someone like Cotton started digging deep, which no one had anticipated. Still, Frankie, like a decent bloke he was, took all the blame, saying the people he sent on holiday had no idea. Well, he was banged to rights, so he stood to lose nothing. He knew he was going down, whatever happened, but Cotton wasn't totally convinced that people were that gullible. However, he had opened a giant can of worms worth over £500,000, and this didn't include the stuff that Frankie was having delivered to his drop addresses, i.e. gas boilers, etc. Chapter 5. Fox stopped what he was doing immediately when the shit hit the fan. It would start up again when the dust had settled. This scam was way too good to stop. Besides, he wasn't the only one doing it. He knew the Nigerians swore by a bit of fraud. In fact, they wrote the book on it. Fox was now and had always been paranoid, which was a good thing in his line of work, and thanks to having smoked cannabis for over 35 years, he had paranoia in spades. Some days he would stay indoors, too scared to venture out, and had an impending sense of doom. This was quite rare, and it would only last for a day. The next day he would be fine. He made preparations for his little chat with Cotton. Chat bollocks. He was wise enough to know that that meant arrest. Now that Frankie was on remand, there was talk of confiscating money from his bank accounts that the filth were now in possession of, due again to Frankie's carelessness. There was a new law out called Proceeds of Crime Act, which meant they could estimate how much money they thought a person had earned from their particular piece of skullduggery and confiscate accordingly. This could also include property or any other assets. The cunts. So Fox got rid of a chunk of his money and emptied his accounts, only leaving his post office account open, into which his social security and housing benefits were paid into. He was claiming disability benefits and housing benefits, which meant no rent, no council tax, free medicine, and then enough left over to fill his thirsty V8 Jag up with petrol every week. And most importantly, he was on the radar, from which the Inland Revenue's point of view was essential. Fox had all the angles covered. He liked to be one step ahead of the system, always had and always would. By appointment, he went to see Cotton at the Croydon factory. Lo and behold, once Cotton had welcomed him over the threshold, he showed Fox into a back room and promptly arrested him for conspiracy to commit fraud, just as Fox had expected, one step ahead. The old Bill may think they are clever, but a good criminal and a successful criminal really does need to keep one step ahead, otherwise he will find himself slopping out before long, like Frankie was doing. This is a fact. After a whole day at the police station, and a good brief, legal aid of course, plenty of front and bullshit, Cotton had nothing concrete to charge him with, so he had to let the cunning Fox go and back into circulation. Result, plus a few more grey hairs for Fox. Ever since then, the threat of Cotton remained. "I know you're at it, son, and I'll get you one day," he had told Fox, but he knew this was just a standard threat from a frustrated copper, but coming from Cotton, not to be taken lightly. Fox returned to his scam a few months later, and Frankie was weighed on for 5 years, and a sizable chunk of dough extracted from his bank account. He proceeded with due care and attention until the scam played itself out, due to the credit card companies tightening their security measures. Even after that, he remained extra vigilant when he was involved in any fraudulent ventures, with belt and braces firmly in place. Since that little turnout, he couldn't afford any mistakes, or he could well find himself slopping out with poor Frankie before long. Never underestimate the enemy. Never. Cotton had fired a shot across Fox's bow, and that was duly noted and acted upon, which wasn't a bad thing really, better than a shot across the bows and a direct hit. But Cotton was here now. So was he being true to his threat? "I know you're at it, son, and I'll get you one day." Well, if he was, then he was out of luck, as Fox was in a career coma and had been for a while now. That's unless you call claiming full government benefits while making large profits from selling cars a real scam. He knew that Cotton wasn't interested in petty things like that. Or was he? Was business that slow for Scotland Yard's fraud squad? Very doubtful indeed, thought Fox. Very. It turns out he wasn't at Nick Fox, but there was still a surprise to come. "Let's take a walk to the pound and get this car sorted, shall we?" said Cotton. "So, what are you doing here, Mr. Cotton? You usually work out at the Croydon factory when you're in these parts, not a back street car pound," said Fox. "I heard what happened to Mr. Clark. Terrible thing to occur. He really didn't deserve that," said Cotton. "I don't understand. You're head man at the Yard's fraud squad. Nothing to do with this sort of thing. How do you know Stan? Your paths couldn't have crossed, surely. He has never been into any kind of skullduggery, especially not Auntie Maud," said Fox. Not to my knowledge, no, he hasn't. But he did save my life once, said Cotton. Say that again, said Fox, unsure of what he had just heard. You heard. Let me explain. When I was a rookie copper back in 1979, I was on football duty, there to keep the hooligans apart, began Cotton. Fox couldn't imagine Cotton in a tall hat walking around the terraces, truncheon in hand while quietly shitting himself, as these things could go very wrong very quickly, and every copper was a target for all the hooligans. One Saturday, Spurs were at home, can't remember with who, and to cut a long story short, it all went off and I was caught out on my own, amongst all the commotion, by a couple of black bastards. One had an axe, and they got me on the floor after a brief scuffle, and meant to do me great harm, even possibly kill me. They were foaming at the mouth with their sheer hatred for coppers, and now was their chance to do one, good and proper. The axe wasn't just for show either. They had used it earlier on some poor mug. It still had blood on it. I was fucked. Then, out of the blue, came this big lump in boots and braces. He kicked the one with the axe full in the face as he was leaning over me, bursting his nose. There was claret everywhere, his and mine, as I had taken a good few kicks by then. He went out like a light. Then, quick as a flash, he grabs the other coon by the head and starts smashing it into the ground, scraping his face into the concrete at the same time, proper hurting him. Then, just as he had finished demolishing the coon, the cavalry arrived and promptly nicked him. Lucky for him, the two survived with some head and face injuries. One had a fractured skull, so Stan got 18 months for his troubles. He never called me as a witness. As far as anyone was concerned, it was a 2-to-1 fight which he won, using excessive force. It would have been seen as a serious offence in those days by his peers to have helped a copper, as we were the enemy as much as the rival firms. Cotton paused, taking a packet of fags from his coat pocket and lighting one up. Then he continued. I don't know why he did it. Maybe he didn't like blacks, or he had a heart and didn't want to see a copper killed in cold blood. Who knows? So that's the story, and that's why I'm here. I've never told anyone this before, he concluded. Well, said Fox, he never mentioned it to me. I know he got 18 months, but thought nothing of it. It was just inevitable. The way he liked to fight, he was going to get some birds sooner or later. Changing the subject, as he clearly didn't want to dwell on it, Cotton said, There have been lots of these attacks on innocent people by these little bastards. The streets ain't safe anymore, and it's going to get worse. No doubt Stan won't let this lie. But tell him to be careful when making a decision. Things have progressed since the old days, and not in the right direction as far as I'm concerned. Maybe he would benefit from some advice from a slippery fucker like you, in order to avoid any contact from us lot, if you get my drift. Thanks, Mr. Cotton, I'll bear that in mind, said Fox. And with that, he got into Stan's pride and joy and left. What a strange day, he thought, as he made his way to Stan's house, savouring every mile as he drove the mighty V12 Jaguar. It glided along like a silk carpet floating inches above the tarmac. He loved this car. Chapter 6. Fox had another sleepless night, kept awake by thoughts of pain, mutilation, and even more, revenge. They say it's a dish best served cold, but Fox wasn't intending to do that. These scroats were going to pay, much sooner than that. He had the name and address of one of the maggots responsible for his friend's pain. OK, so he never got to join in with his mate's cowardly attack on Stan, due to being knocked out cold by him. But he was guilty by association as far as Fox was concerned. Plus, he was the only lead he had, thanks to Lynn's quick thinking. He would reveal the names and whereabouts of the rest of these heroes involved, or by fuck he would suffer great pain and mutilation. He had to deal with this. He could taste the blood, and it was soon to be spilt. He was on a mission, and nothing could stop him now. These little maggots would live the rest of their miserable, worthless lives remembering what happened the day that Fox dished out his own brand of justice. Fox was no stranger to death. He had killed a man before, and he knew he would kill again. It was about a year after the death of his daughter, and he was still very much in a bad place in his head. The hatred for his ex-wife was becoming unbearable. He really wanted to kill her for what she had done and the way she had acted, poisoning his daughter against him to that unnecessary extent. She was a fucking devil. Nothing more, nothing less. Pure evil. He wouldn't hire her on to top her. No. He would need to do it himself. To be there when he snuffed out her lights. Saw her take her last fucking breath. Then see her life force leave her body. Sent right back to hell where it came from. That's the only way it could be. But, thankfully, common sense overruled his heart, and he did nothing. Not that he didn't want to. It just wasn't worth doing life for. That way, even in death, she would have had the last laugh. He could only hope that karma did its thing and saw fit to punish her in this life, or indeed the next. He could only hope. One day he was in the pub, drowning his sorrows and sheer frustration with the whole sorry thing, when he was approached by an associate, who told him that he was getting paid £10,000 to assassinate someone, but it would have to be a two-handed job, as he planned to use a motorbike, as that would be the best means of escape and would need someone on the back to actually pull the trigger. Fox would receive half the money if he agreed. Now Fox, apart from still seething with hate, let the mist clear long enough to see that this was a way of trying to lay his demons to rest over the matter of his filthy ex-wife. For by killing someone who clearly deserved to die in this case, as innocent people don't usually have a 10 grand bounty on their heads, he could get rid of his ghosts. Hopefully, maybe. The money was neither here nor there, as he didn't really need it, and would do it for free if he could guarantee peace of mind. But he couldn't, so he took the dough. The following week he found himself riding pillion on a powerful 1000cc Suzuki motorcycle, heading out towards Kent. He had been given a 9mm Beretta with a silencer by the rider, and this was safely concealed inside his jacket pocket, until it was needed. He didn't feel any nerves, just calmness. He knew that if anything went wrong, the rider would get them away at great speed. No one will be able to catch them. He told Fox that he had a good escape route just in case. After a nice cruise, they approached a red Mercedes Sports convertible, waiting at a set of traffic lights. The rider told Fox that this was a target, and as he pulled alongside the Merc, Fox saw a nondescript, balding, middle-aged man on his own, sitting in a midlife crisis convertible, just waiting for the lights to turn green. He didn't live long enough, though, for just as they pulled alongside, Fox pulled out the gun, aimed it at the side of the man's head and pulled the trigger, putting a neat hole in the side of his head. There was no blood. The man just slumped onto the passenger seat. Fox put the gun back in his jacket, tapped the rider on the shoulder, and they were gone, all over in less than 10 seconds. I saw his associate again after he dropped Fox off at his car and paid him his blood money. For 6 months later, he heard that the man had died in a fight outside a pub in nearby Epsom. He had been stabbed through the heart by a pikey. Well, at least he was the only person who knew what Fox had done at that set of traffic lights in Kent, and now there was no danger of him ever talking to anyone. Fate. That was well over 20 years ago, and he never had a pang of guilt. The man he shot obviously deserved it, in order to have that kind of price on his head. So Fox was just a messenger. He always saw things in black and white. It was much simpler that way. The deed, however, seemed to lessen the burden of hate for his ex, but he would never forgive her, or forget. Although these days it was just a dull pain he only experienced every so often, not like the burning fire that threatened to destroy him all those years ago. His brain hurt like a warehouse with no room to spare. So much pain already there. Time heals, so they say, but it doesn't provide a graft for the scar. Now, he could only hope that something terrible would happen to her one day. Today his demons were beginning to stir again, urging him to do terrible things to young animals who had hurt Stan so badly, a feeling that he was comfortable with on this occasion. They would fuel him in a positive way this time. He would have to tread very carefully, however, as he was about to enter a new arena. He was a thief and a fraudster, and not a planner or an executioner of kidnap and torture and maiming. But he guessed that if he approached it with proper planning, a thing that he was used to and good at, that the same principles applied. He wouldn't get caught. He intended to punish them severely and make them feel extreme pain. He knew that Matt would agree. They would talk later, after he had taken him to see his dad. The next day, Fox arrived at Gatwick Airport, just in time to meet arrivals. The boy looked good, despite a long flight and the reason for his journey. Somehow he looked bigger and more menacing than Fox remembered. Matt was 6'2", 14 stone and super fit. He had been in the Philippines for over a year now, training and fighting. Kickboxing was his life, and he was fucking good at it. Apart from his physical appearance, he was fairly nondescript. He was more like his mother than Stan. He had a mousy hair, short back and sides, parted to the left, blue eyes and a boxer's nose. He was a quiet lad and very intense. Fox knew that what had happened to his dad would cut very deep and would need sorting. "Hi, son. Good flight?" asked Fox. "Yeah, fine. How's Dad? Can we go and see him now?" said Matt. They drove to the hospital in silence. Fox could tell that Matt wasn't in the mood for idle conversation. When they arrived at Mayday, they went told that Stan had been moved to a ward that was on the 5th floor and that he was conscious and out of danger. That was a good sign anyway. Another trip in the piss and vomit lift. Fox and Matt entered the ward and immediately saw Lynn sitting on a chair next to Stan's bed, holding his still bandaged hand. Stan looked round and upon spotting them, said in a deep booming voice, "About time. Where's my fucking grapes, eh?" "The only grapes you got are the ones round your arse," replied Fox with a smile, then added, "You look like a fucking mummy, you mug." They all managed a little laugh. Matt hugged his mum and then tried to give Stan a hug, but found it difficult due to the wires and pipes still attached to him. "We'll leave you to it," said Lynn, walking out of the ward, followed by Fox. They went to the canteen and drank coffee, and sat in silence for what seemed like ages. Then Lynn broke the silence and said, "I've not mentioned a piece of paper to him." "Good. Don't say anything to him. I'm working on it. And when I've done my homework, I'll pay a little visit and get the names of the others. Leave it to me. I'm also going to let Matt in on it, as he has a right to know and be part of it, if he wants," replied Fox. "Yeah, you're right. He wouldn't forgive us if we kept him from it. I know he's young, but has his dad lying there, so he needs to be involved," said Lynn. Fox left the hospital and waited for Matt in the car. He wanted to get the stench of the place out of his lungs. Piss, vomit and death. He would see Stan when he got out of there. But for now, his time would be taken up with the matter in hand. Jaw boy. Matt got into the car half an hour later, slamming the door and punching the dashboard. "I want those fucking cowards, Fox. That wasn't my dad up there. That was a victim. They done him good and proper. So what's the score? What are we going to do about it? He's like your brother, and I know you won't let this go," said Matt. Now, Fox had known Matt for all the 26 years he had been on the planet. Fox, too, was a very competent martial artist. Like Matt, he had trained for 18 years, achieving a 4th dan in Taekwondo, and also studied the deadly art of pressure points fighting for many years. In fact, it was Fox who had taken Matt to his first lesson when he was 14. The boy had a temper, like his dad, and he was always getting into scraps. But unlike Stan, he wasn't into football hooliganism, so he had nowhere to vent his anger. So Matt joined Fox's dojo, and before long he proved to possess quite a talent. His long legs were very useful weapons, which he learnt to use with the accuracy and speed of a punch. But unlike a punch, a kick is 4 times stronger, and if landed correctly, would always floor an opponent. Matt liked this. Soon he was entering competitions and winning with ease. After a few years, Fox decided that Matt would be more suited to the intensity of kickboxing instead, as he didn't seem to be too keen on the technical side of Taekwondo. He just wanted to fight. So Fox took him to a friend of his who ran a gym just outside Croydon, and soon the boy found his place under the coach of the gym. He went from strength to strength. By the time he was 20, he was European champion in his class. Fox often went to his fights and was always in his corner together with his coach. Matt was an awesome fighter. He took the blows well and didn't seem to feel pain, but he could certainly inflict it. He was a natural and would soon turn pro. But right now, he needed to be part of this, and focus on this only. "I've got our name and address, but we ain't going to go charging in. I'll need to plot up and see who else lives there, see their comings and goings, etc., till I know the right time to get him on his own for his interview," said Fox. "So what are you going to do then, just sit outside his house all week like a lemon and get rumbled by his neighbours?" asked Matt. "Something along them lines, I suppose. Well, what else can I do, eh?" said Fox, slightly irritated by this young lad. He might be Stan's son, but he wasn't going to take a lip from him. "Ever heard of Google Earth, you dinosaur?" asked Matt. "Yeah, I think so. It rings a bell," said Fox. "Well, you can plot up on a location in real time, watch who comes and goes, times, etc., from the comfort of your own home via satellite on your computer, and it costs about 15 quid, said Matt. "Yeah, I knew that," said Fox. Matt knew his way around a computer, and being a young person, he knew a lot more than Fox the dinosaur ever would. All he used his laptop for was buying and selling cars, and also go on dating sites when he was bored, or needed to restock his supply of cunt. Fox really wasn't interested in much else. He was firmly stuck in the last century, a much better place as far as he was concerned. If the internet crashed, then people would be lost, running around like headless chickens, not knowing quite what to do with themselves. But not him. He could survive, as most of the people of his generation could. Kids these days lived their life through social media. They were such one-dimensional losers, not knowing how to interact. They even needed a fucking app to tell them when to have a dump. Fox thought it was all very sad indeed. But it did have its uses, such as now. "OK," said Fox, handing back the piece of paper. "Get plotting then, you smart-ass." "OK, leave it with me for a week, and I'll have all the info we need to arrange a time for a visit," said Matt. That was good. Fox had one less thing to worry about now. Chapter 7. 5 days later, Matt phoned Fox and told him he had some news about his surveillance. This made Fox quite excited. He was still in bed, and lying next to him was a little bird he had pulled the night before. She was just waking up as he put the phone down to Matt. So he pulled the covers off, exposing her naked body. Then he told her to turn over and put her ass high up in the air, because he had a raging hard on that needed sorted. Then he proceeded to give her a good hard fucking. Then he slipped into a tight little ring piece, and after a good few minutes of pounding, he came his load right up her ass. He loved waking up like that in the morning, as it was a good start to the day. And he was looking forward to Matt's report. He had arranged to meet him at the office at lunchtime. This would give him enough time for more dirty sex with his willing young slapper beside him. Then he would drop her off on the way to the meet. His office was what Fox and his mates called their local pub, where they used to meet up and conduct their various business transactions. He also kept a few cars in a pub car park and sold them from nearby train stations or side streets to avoid any comebacks. But if they were good cars, which was not too often, then he would sell them directly from the car park. He had his trade down to a fine art, and the advent of pay-as-you-go phones made things so much easier. He would buy a SIM card for every car advertised, and then when it was sold he would destroy it and put in another one in the phone for the next car. Sometimes he had 4 or 5 old phones with bits of tape on the back with the make on the car and the price written on them, in a carrier bag for various cars advertised. No income tax, no VAT. The governor of the pub was kept sweet by those who benefited from using it for their business and as an office, and if any hooky gear was on offer, then he would always get first refusal, so everyone was happy. They also spent a lot of money behind the bar. Fox arrived first at just gone 2 o'clock, as Matt had phoned and told him he was delayed until then. Fuck it, I could have had an extra hour in bed with a slapper. I could have managed one more go at her back doors, thought Fox. Still, not to worry, it was about the right time now for his first drink of the day. Just then Matt arrived, and Fox bought him an orange juice and himself a pint of wife-beater. Matt didn't drink or smoke. Good boy. Fox brought the drinks over to the table in the far corner of the pub, not wanting anyone to hear what was about to be discussed. I've been plotting all week, Matt began. He lives with his mum and what appears to be his younger sister. Mum goes to work every morning at 9 o'clock and returns at just after 2 o'clock. The girl goes to school on her own at 8:30 and comes back at around 4 o'clock. Our boy doesn't leave the house until 3 or 4. I followed him to a kiddie's playground yesterday. Seems that's where him and his pals hang out. And that's about it, concluded Matt. Fuck me, you're a right regular little Columbo, ain't you, son? You ever thought about joining the old Bill? Joked Fox. Bollocks, I'd rather be a fucking bus driver, replied Matt. Then, on a more serious note, Fox said, OK, how about next Tuesday morning? He asked Matt, adding, are you sure you're ready for this? It could get a bit messy if the little turd doesn't cooperate. Of course I'm ready. I need to do this. So how are we going to do it? Asked Matt. Leave that to me. All you've got to do is get into the house with as little fuss as possible and give him some pain until he tells us what we need to hear. Hardly rocket science, is it? Said Fox. He also told Matt to plot up on a Tuesday morning until he came round to pick him up, just in case anything had changed, like mum or sister not leaving the house for some reason. Fox spent the weekend relaxing and drinking, and called one of his little birds up for a good session in the sack on Sunday afternoon. Nothing like a tasty honey pot for Sunday lunch. It was a different snatch to the one he had reamed on Friday. He had her number and he would call her up during the week to have another go at her back doors. He loved the freedom he had, to come and go as he pleased, and all the pussy on call any time he wanted. Fucking great. What donut wants to get married, eh? By Monday he had a plan. Funnily enough, it came to him late the previous night, as the bird was sucking his cock. He had never done anything like this before, torturing someone for information, but he guessed that if he applied the same principles as he did to his other bits of business, then all should be well. Paranoia, careful planning, belt and braces. By the evening the plan was perfected, and he had also done a recce of the house to see how the land laid, and it all seemed fine. The only thing he was not too sure about was how much pain the boy could take before he talked. Would he be loyal and old school and not grass under any circumstances? Or, as Fox guessed, the young scrope would grass at the drop of a hat, or the threat of a broken fingernail, just like all the lowlives of his young age. He had bought a pair of garden secateurs, as he didn't want to be in there too long and fanning about. He would start by asking the boy once for the information, then, any stalling or bollocks like that, he would start cutting off his fingers. He needed the boy to talk, and quick, and that should do the trick. Fox called round for Matt the next morning as arranged. Luckily, Lynn was already at the hospital. Stan would be allowed home any day now. Being stuck in that filthy hospital was really getting to him. He had already tried to chin one of the packet doctors up for trying to shove a tube up his arse. Then, realising it wasn't Stan who the arse tubing was for, fuck the NHS. Here, put these on, he told Matt, when he was in the hallway, passing him a pair of old workman's overalls. Fox also donned a pair. He had borrowed them from a mechanic mate of his, but he didn't have time to wash them, so they stunk a bit, but grease and petrol were smells that he liked. Matt wasn't so keen though, turning his nose up, but he still pulled them on. These should make us look like proper workmen, said Fox, smiling. Fuck me, what would you know about being a workman? The last day's work you did was in the last century, teased Matt. But in fact he was right. The last time Fox had actually done a day's work had been at his garage, and he got rid of that in 1987, which was in the last century. That did make him feel rather old. He also gave Matt a balaclava with 2 holes for the eyes, but when rolled up it just looked like an ordinary beanie hat, something else a workman would wear. He donned one himself. Is this all part of your brilliant plan or what? Asked Matt. Yeah, good, ain't it? I'll explain the rest to you on the way. Let's do this, replied Fox, adding, oh, and by the way, is it all clear? Yeah, his mum and sis left bang on time, so the coast is clear, Matt replied. 20 minutes later, just before 11 a.m, they pulled up about 50 yards past the house on Headley Road. It was a crappy 2 up, 2 down, end of terrace council house on a shitty council estate on the outskirts of Croydon, called New Addington, or Addo by the locals for short. But whatever you called it, it was still a fucking shithole. Fox hated the place and avoided it like the plague, even refusing to go there to buy cars, as from previous experience they were always not as described, often stolen, smashed up or not running. So whenever he saw a car advertised in Addo, he knew it was a foregone conclusion it would be a pile of shit and not worth wasting his time and petrol on. The people on the estate were not to Fox's liking either, one little bit, and this included a little maggot they were about to visit. You know the drill? He asked Matt. Yeah, I bet that took some planning, eh? Said Matt sarcastically. Fox didn't tell him that the final part of the plan, the part involving the secateurs, was thought up while he was coming his load in a bird's mouth. Matt wouldn't understand. Best not confuse or corrupt the poor lad. The house was set back from the road, separated by a wide pavement and a grass verge. They casually walked up to the front door of number 481, a dull green one with no glass or spy hole. It would open inwards on their right-hand side. Fox stood to the left and rang the doorbell. Ding dong, this ain't Avon calling. Fox was slightly nervous. He was out of his comfort zone and he was hoping that he wouldn't get too carried away with this little turd, but he really wanted to hurt him. He could taste it. After about 20 seconds, they heard footsteps coming from behind the door. They looked at each other and Fox winked at Matt. The door opened about halfway and standing there was a young lad of about 17, tall and skinny, with one of those dumb stupid haircuts that these young idiots sported these days. He needed a slap just for that. He was wearing tracksuit bottoms and a grubby t-shirt with a picture of a marijuana leaf on it. But what struck Fox most of all was the metalwork in his mouth, keeping his jaw closed after it had been shattered by a big stand. It looked as if he wasn't long out of bed, the lazy little bastard. No sooner had he opened the front door when Matt gave him a well-aimed kick to the solar plexus, knocking him right down the hallway and putting him flat on his arse. Good start. Matt was straight in, followed closely by Fox, both pulling down their masks on the way, after Fox had shut the front door behind them. Matt was now kneeling down behind the boy, applying a chokehold, not using enough pressure to knock him out, but making him a bit easier to handle. Not that a soppy, skinny little cunt would have caused either of them any major problems, but this saved Fox having to knock him out and waiting for him to come round. That was time they just couldn't afford. The second room down the hall, they were outside, was the dining room. Matt picked him up beneath his armpits, dragged him into the room and sat him on one of the old wooden dining chairs surrounding the table. Fox then pulled out some cable ties from the donkey jacket and secured the boy's hands to the rear legs of the chair and his ankles to the front ones. Then he put a piece of duct tape over his mouth. All this happening before the boy knew what the fuck was going on. Okay, listen very carefully, sonny, said Fox, handing Matt the secateurs he had bought the day before from home base. $9.99. Bargain. I need to ask you some questions, but don't worry, we ain't the old Bill. Nah, we're the bad guys. So every time we don't answer a question to my satisfaction, or I think you're lying, then my colleague here will cut off one of your fingers. Nod your head if you fully understand what I've just said. The boy, now fully alert, or as alert as any one of these young fucking losers with a haircut can be, realised that he was in a world of shit at this precise moment, and started nodding his head frantically, his eyes bulging with fear. Okay, first I'll refresh your memory, continued Fox. A couple of weeks ago, just down from the George pub in Croydon, you received a broken jaw, correct? The boy nodded. Okay, I'm going to remove the tape now, and I'll need you to tell me who was there with you at the time. The only sound I want to hear are the names of all those there. Any other sounds will result in your fingers leaving your hands, one by one. Is that fucking clear? The boy nodded again, but not as urgently as before, realising he had no choice but to grass his mates up. Fox took the tape off slowly, praying the boy didn't scream. He didn't. He then took out a pencil and a piece of paper from another pocket in his jacket. Okay, I'll tell you, please don't cut off my fingers, said the boy through his wide jaw. Fox noticed with some surprise that it was quite easy to understand, despite the metalwork in his mouth. Fox nodded for him to continue. If I tell you, please don't say I grassed them up, said the terrified boy. Tell me the names, you fucking cunt, hissed Fox. Matt's eyes widened at such venom coming from Fox's mouth. There were 6 of us. 2 of them are now on remand for some shit, but 3 are still about. Kelly Day, Jordan Wells and Peter Ross. Fox wrote down the names. So, where can I find these heroes? Asked Fox. They're all off the estate, but I ain't sure of their addresses, said the boy. He seemed a little more relaxed now, accepting his situation, and now having pissed himself. Fox glared at him through the eye holes in his mask, then took a threatening step towards him. This was enough to make the boy say more. "I know where they hang out," he blurted, thinking he was going to get a slap. "The kiddies' playground on the edge of the estate, just before the lanes, next to the school. They're usually there from early in the evening to about midnight. They use the place to sell a bit of gear," he finished, hoping that would be enough info, as he really didn't have any more. "OK, but if you're lying to me, or tell anyone about this visit, I'll have your mum gang raped and your little sister fed to the local pedos. Then I'll come round and kick your fucking lungs out. Is that clear?" said Fox. Yeah, leave it out, for fuck's sake. I won't say nothing, I swear," said the shit-scared boy. Matt cut the cable ties off and Fox told the young scrope to stay seated until they had gone, then to go and clean himself up. There was a bad smell in the room now. As they were walking out of the room, Fox said to the boy, "Do yourself a favour, son, and start keeping better company, or one day you'll end up on a fucking slab before your time." He didn't answer, but Fox knew that he'd taken the advice on board. Back in the car, Matt said, "Fuck me, I'm impressed. You dealt with that like a pro." "Yeah, I watched Reservoir Dogs to get him in the mood," replied Fox. "But seriously, that was the easy part, Matt. The next bit will need serious planning and plenty of bottle. Next time there will be blood and serious injuries." "Too right, I can taste it. This is for my dad, so start planning," said Matt. Chapter 8. Fox got home shortly after 5 that afternoon. He went to see the playground that Neville had mentioned, to see the lay of the land after he had dropped Matt off. It looked promising and was accessible by car or van, and was set back from the road with plenty of places to hide and sneak up on their prey, so that was good. He also saw a few young scroats sitting around in the playground, looking well sus, but they had no fear of the cowards in blue, so they had a licence to do as they pleased. Modern-day Britain, an absolute disgrace, lawless and blind. He had then gone to the office for a well-earned VAT or 3. Vodka and tonics, the only VAT he had ever contributed to in all his years of business. And as far as income tax, well, why oh why would he want to pay that? His average earnings these days were around about £1,000 mark, or close to that, through car sales, so he would therefore be in the high income tax bracket of 40%, which meant that out of that £1,000 he had earned, he would have to pay £400. 400 fucking quid to some faceless parasite at the Inland Revenue, to be put in the pockets of terrorist and immigrant rapists on benefits, or to line the pockets of third world dictators, more commonly known as foreign aid. Well, he may as well just burn the 400 quid. He knew that the country ran off people's taxes, that he was fucked if he was ever going to contribute. He did have a screw loose, granted, but he wasn't totally insane, nor a fucking charity. He left the tax paying to the poor saps who were too scared not to pay, and the PAY drones who had no choice but to pay. He sat in a quiet corner, deep in thought, and bit by bit a plan was forming. The problem was that he would need at least 2 more people on the firm for this one. He looked up from his drink when he heard the distant noise of the door slamming shut. He would have to have a word with Monty, the governor of the boozer, to fix it, as it drove him mad. The slamming every time someone came in or left, it made it hard for a man to concentrate. Fox used the pub as an office, and between him and his mates, they kept Monty well oiled, so the least he could do was to fix that fucking door. As he was looking at the door, he saw that it was Mickey the Beast, who had just come through the door and made it slam. He spotted Fox and made his way over. Mickey was in his mid-40s, short and stocky, with long, unkempt blonde hair. He was smothered in tattoos and looked quite scruffy. He was a drug dealer and had been for many years, longer than Fox had known him, which was over 20 years or so. He was one of the few people to survive in that game for so long without getting nicked or shot. But he was a shrewd bloke and took no chances, and if anyone took a liberty with him, they got swift and brutal justice from Mickey. But lately his business was being affected by all the young kids stealing, as it was easy money for them. Better than working in McDonald's on a pissy minimum wage. But most of them didn't last long, as there was a lot of rivalry among them, and quite often they would have their stashes stolen from their rivals. It was commonly known as taxing, but for obvious reasons they couldn't go to the old bill. So unless they were well connected or had plenty of bottle to sort it out, they were fucked. Not well organised and lacked the years of experience that Mickey had, or the contacts, there and abroad. But like Fox, he had a very good run for it and had to accept the times had changed for the worse. Mickey was old school and a decent, trustworthy bloke, and as for his rather unfortunate nickname, that came about many years ago and was thoroughly undeserved. He was accused of rape by some old slag he had pulled in a nightclub and shagged down an alleyway. The next week at the same club, she was there, but he blanked her and pulled over her mates. No big deal, different night, different slag. No. The next day he got a visit from Plod and a do not pass go card, and before his feet could touch the ground, he found himself nicked and on remand. After 2 long months in segregation, for his own protection, as rapists and nonces were known as beasts and were not tolerated by the other inmates, even the screws despised them, so poor Mickey wasn't best pleased with his situation, and even less so with the fucking dirty slag that had put him in there. The cunt. Luckily, when he went to court, he was acquitted, due to the fact that the dumb slag had lied, and when under cross-examination, she had said that Mickey had dragged her into his car via the back door. Well, Mickey took her nowhere near his car. Also, he owned a 2.8i Brooklyn Capri, a ringer that Fox had sold him, and the dumb lying slag obviously didn't know that there was no such thing as a four-door Capri. The filth knew it was his car because they impounded it as evidence in the case, but the dumb cunts never knew it was a ringer though. So, that was that. The judge threw it out. Case closed. Well, it may have been case closed as far as the court was concerned, but not as far as Mickey was concerned. Shit sticks, especially the stigma of rape. Even though people that knew him knew he wasn't the type of person to do such a thing, and that the slag had lied out of spite and jealousy. But it was altogether a very unpleasant experience for him, to say the least, so he really couldn't let her get away with it, could he? No fucking chance. The next week he paid a couple of local junkies a few £100 to go round to her house and do it for real. God knows what they did to her, but she spent a couple of weeks in hospital with internal injuries. Rumour had it that there was a chair leg involved, but Mickey didn't give a fuck if there was a fucking horse involved. As far as he was concerned, she got what she so richly deserved. Every action needs a reaction, and anyone who fucked with Mickey always got a nasty reaction. These were the facts of life. "All right, Fox, long time no see," said Mickey, pulling up a chair. "Fucking bad about what happened to poor old Stan, eh?" Mickey liked Stan. They had been friends for a long time, and Stan had never judged him over the so-called rape incident, and always stood up for him if anyone slagged him off. He knew that Mickey was no rapist, and as for what happened to the slag, well, she deserved it, Stan would say. "Yeah, he'll be home soon and hopefully make a full recovery," Fox told him. Mickey looked him in the eye and said, "Any idea who's responsible?" "Yeah, I know where to find 3 of them," said Fox. "Well, if there's going to be any payback, I'd like a piece of it," said Mickey. "Way ahead of you, mate. I've got a plan and I need a driver with a strong stomach for what I've got in mind." That was enough for Mickey. He was in. They drank a toast to Stan and to a bloody revenge. Fox knew Mickey could handle it. Good, thought Fox. It was slowly coming together. Later on, as he sat in his lazy-boy armchair, drawing on a large super-strength spliff, thanks to Mickey slipping him a couple of skunk buds as he was leaving the pub. Happy days. He phoned Matt the next morning and arranged to meet for lunchtime in the office. Mickey would be there too. They all sat in the corner table and started talking. Then Fox said, "We're going to need some chloroform. I can sort everything else out except for that. It's the only stumbling block. But a total necessity, I'm afraid." He looked across the table at the others and asked, "Any ideas?" There was a long silence, and then Matt said one word, "Maisie." Now Maisie was Matt's cousin. She was a right geezer bird and a devout lesbian. Fox had known her for most of her 30 years. She was a very complex girl, and damaged goods. She had been abused by a family friend when she was a child, a man close to her father, but nothing came to light until the nonce died of natural causes, and only then did she feel safe in telling her parents about her abuser, because he could no longer hurt her. But physical pain was nothing compared to the psychological damage it had done to her. She was about 13 at the time and started self-harming and experimenting with drugs and generally going off the rails big time. She managed to straighten herself out by the time she was 20 and took up boxing to try and control her rage and anger. She was a born fighter with a very cruel undercurrent and often went too far with her opponents, mostly men. She was also a devout man-hater, tough and angry, not a good combination. Maisie was working as a trainee anaesthetist and still trying to sort her life out. "Yeah, she works at Mayday, don't she, Matt?" "Yeah, funny enough, she's an anaesthetist and probably gets you what you need. But we'll need her to administer it too, 'cause we ain't got a Scooby-Doo about how much we need for whatever you got in mind," said Matt. Now Fox really wasn't sure about getting her involved, and he told Matt as much. "Leave it out, Fox. She's even about what happened to the old man, and she would jump at a chance for some payback, and well you know. She's as good as any bloke, and the way I see it is we need her unless you got another anaesthetist you ain't telling us about, eh?" Mickey looked up from his pint and said, with a smile on his face, "Looks like we've got the NHS on the firm, boys." Fox arranged another meeting for 4 days' time, for one final briefing. First to walk into the office was Maisie. Fox was already sitting in a corner. He'd been there for a while. She headed towards him. She wasn't hard to miss. 5'10", 13 stone, and wide as well as she was tall, built like a brick shithouse. She had short dyed black hair with a parting to the left, small piggy eyes, a pug nose and a wide thin mouth. a scary sight to behold. "Hi, Foxy, how's it hanging, you old bastard?" she said, pulling up a chair. "Still hanging to the right, Maze. How's the rug munching going, girlie?" "I bet I've eaten more pussy than you have in the past few months, you old perv," she replied. "Yeah, probably. So can I come and sit on the edge of your bed and watch next time you're dining on a piece of pink delicacy?" leered Fox. "Fuck off, you old perv. You come in your panties before I even had my first lick. Get your own snatch, you mug." They always had a bit of banter when they saw each other. "I hear there's a party and I'm invited," she said on a more serious note. "Yeah, but you sure you're up for this? This is serious stuff, you know. If we get caught, we go away for a long time," said Fox. "Fuck that, course I'm in. If you know who these cunts are, I want to give 'em some pain. Big Stan's my uncle and I love him dearly, so I need to be part of this." "Okay," she replied. Well, that told Fox. Just then, Matt walked in, followed by Mickey. They took a seat at the table and Fox got straight down to business and began to outline his plan. They all sat in silence until he finished. They told him that they liked it. They liked it a lot. Chapter 9. Fox went round to see Stan the following day, and after Lynn let him in, gestured him into the front room. He found Stan in front of the TV, still looking very rough, with sallow skin and a look of total defeat in his eyes. Just like a victim should look, but not at all like Stan should look. But he still had a smile on his face for his old pal. "How you feeling?" asked Fox. "Like a right cunt," he replied, looking Fox in the eye, and continued, "I've had many a ruck with many a hard bastard and come out on top. Only now they get fucked over by a bunch of fucking spineless coward kids. That's just not cricket now, is it?" "That's how it is these days. They hunt in packs like filthy rat cowards. None of these little wimps could hold their hands up in a proper toe-to-toe straightener. They got no bottle. You get one on their own and they'll be squealing for their slag of a mummy while you are beating the granny out of them and slicing their face off with a rusty blunt knife," said Fox, getting a bit carried away. "Yeah, so what's happening out there on the streets these days? They seem to be full of these kind of shit cunts. It's a right disgraceful state of affairs. Must be something in the water this generation's drinking," said Stan. "Do you remember what any of them looked like?" asked Fox. "Yeah, one big ginger cunt with a stupid haircut. One tall skinny cunt with what I could only describe as a fucking poodle stuck to his head. One black cunt with dyed white hair and the flattest nose I've ever seen on a coon. And one short-ass packy with a big tattoo on his neck. There were a couple of more in the background, but it kicked off before I could clock 'em." He paused and took a long pull of his can of special brew, then said, "Why are you asking? You going to do something? Because if you are, I want in and I want to have some of those slags." "I'm working on it," said Fox. He didn't tell Stan about the piece of paper with the name on it that he had extracted from Neville, nor would he or Lynn tell him about the fact that she had overheard Neville's details in the hospital. Stan would be told when the deed was done, and not before. There was no need to get him excited at this early stage. If all went well, then he would be told. Plus the fact that he was in no condition to be of any use. He still had a long recovery as far as Fox could tell. Stan would in fact just be a hindrance and of no help at all, and they really couldn't afford any dead weight. This had to be done properly and precisely, with no margin of error. The punishment had to be dealt out to the fucking letter for the message to get across to these feral young scabs. Fox's plan, Fox's rules. Sorry, Stan. Fox went home and went over the plan again, and tomorrow he would get the necessary tools for the job and buy a van. The day was set for the following Tuesday. The kiddies' playground was situated on the edge of the big sprawling shithole estate, on the left as you drove out, leaving behind the great unwashed and pond life who dwelt there, and into the lanes which led to better places, much better places. The three-storey townhouses and the filthy tower blocks finished and the green lush fields began. It was like entering another world. It almost felt like there should have been a board there, with guards and guns, but there wasn't. About 100 yards past the estate boundary, there was a primary school, and directly next to it, and before the main estate road turned into a country lane, stood the playground. It wasn't attached to the school and was a totally separated area. Both were set back from the road about 30 yards, with access to the school being a wide drive, and just off of that was a dirt track, passing in front of the playground, and off into the distance. Both the school and the playground backed onto huge playing fields, with rugby posts and football posts. It was 11 p.m. and a crescent moon partially lit the scene. There were no street lamps beyond the estate, and there was enough light on the cloudless night for them to make out 6 figures around the swings area. 3 were sitting on the swings and 3 were standing. Fox, Matt and Maisie were at the back of the school, watching through a missing slat in the wooden fence that separated the school from the playing field. They had a good enough angle to see through the high wire fence at the side of the school. See and not be seen. "Okay, are we ready?" "Tools ready. There's 6 of them, so we'll have to play by ear. Follow my lead, okay?" whispered Fox. It was time. There was no going back now. They were going out on a limb. They pulled down their masks and quickly and silently ran towards their prey. They ran through the entrance of the playground that had long ago lost its metal gate. The local pikeys had no doubt nicked it and sold it as scrap, the thieving scum. Quickly they surrounded the swing area, and before any of the youths knew what the hell was happening, Fox had a 9mm Luger with a silencer pointing at them. Then, in a low voice, he said to the group, "I'm going to call out 3 names now, and I want those 3 people to step forward and identify themselves, and no fucking about, or each one of you gets shot." He looked around him and was relieved to see the big ginger cunt, another dipstick with a ridiculous-looking perm, and a black boy with dyed white hair. All as Stan described. The other 2 were on remand, as Neville had said, which was good in a way, as 5 of them may have been a bit of a handful. The 3 seated on the swings were their boys. There were 3 girls standing behind them, but they were of no interest. They may well have done some terrible things to innocent people, like mugging old ladies, etc., but their time would come, one day, but not this night. This was only for the 3 guilty ones. "Who the fuck are you?" asked Ginger. With that, and before Fox could say anything, Maisie grabbed hold of one of the girls, the one closest to her, by the hair, and held a scalpel to her eye and said, "OK, now fucking tell me the names of these boys, you fucking slag, or I'll cut your eye out." And with that she kneed the girl hard in the kidneys to get her point across. "Now," she hissed, and pressed the scalpel into her cheek, just enough to draw blood. "Billy, Jordan, Peter," the terrified girl blurted out in a whisper. The rest of them were watching in sheer disbelief, but made no attempt to move, as now they were convinced they would be shot. Wise. Well, as wise as these dumb young losers can be. Matt then spoke into a mobile phone. 30 seconds later, a blue transit van pulled up on a dirt track at the entrance of the playground, and Mickey got out, wearing his mask. He ran up to Fox's side, as Matt was tying the boys' hands behind their backs with cable ties. Fox was keeping a watchful eye on everything, in case he needed to shoot anyone. At the same time, Maisie was tying the girls' hands behind their backs and to the frame of the swings, sitting them on the ground. As she was doing so, Matt and Mickey frog-marched the 3 boys to the rear of the van, forced them in and made them lie on the floor. One of them shouted for help on the way to the van, only to get punched hard in the solar plexus by Matt. There was no more shouting. Maisie was now giving the girls a small dose of chloroform, enough, she said, for half an hour's sleep. Then she joined Matt and Fox in the back of the van, while Mickey got in the cab and fired up the engine. She then gave the boys a dose, only slightly more than she had given the girls, as they would be needing it. Mickey was now turning right into the estate road, driving the boys to their fate. Fate sometimes is not so good, for some people. The boys are fast asleep now. Surprisingly or not, they didn't put up any kind of fight. Partly Fox suspected due to the fact that they would be utterly futile, and partly proving his theory. They had no fucking bottle. The whole of this manoeuvre had taken them less than 10 minutes. Now they were heading towards Wimbledon Common, and it had started to rain. The drive was uneventful. It was best that Mickey was up front alone so as not to look too sus. After all, 3 up in an old T-Reg transit van at this time of night would look quite suspicious, and the last thing they needed was a tug from the old Bill. Their cargo would take a bit of explaining, and they certainly didn't want any interference on that night's bit of work. The van continued on, through Wimbledon village, the posh part of town, with its wine bars and fancy eateries, with overpriced shit for the pretentious ponces who used them. They headed towards Putney, along the side of the common. It stretched for about 3 miles on the left-hand side between the village and Tibbetts Corner, the busy junction of the A3, leading left to Portsmouth and right into central London. About a mile before the A3, there was a small turning on the left, leading into the windmill, a famous landmark in those parts. Mickey turned left towards the windmill, and about 40 yards along, there was a little dirt track on the left, of which the common had many. Fox knew the common like the back of his hand, as he used to play there as a child, and spent many a day riding his bike around with his mates. He had only lived a few miles away then. Good days, but now so long gone. It was a huge expanse of land, ideal for the night's work. Mickey turned into the dirt track, turning off the lights as he did. It had stopped raining now, and he had good visibility. It continued another 20 yards and then stopped by a tree with a white circle painted around its base. This was put there by Fox a couple of days before, while he was doing the recce of the place, finding the right spot for what was to be done. Chapter 10. Mickey cut the motor and got out of the cab, and walked round to open the rear doors, as the handle inside was broken, and when Fox jumped out, Mickey said, "Can't you ever buy a motor where anything works on it?" Fox just smiled and said no. Then he helped Matt carry Ginger out. One had his arms and one had his legs. All the boys are still out for the count. They laid Ginger by the base of the marked tree, and then they carried out the other 2 and laid them at the foot of the trees either side. Matt and Mickey then lifted Ginger up by his waist and let him against the tree, still supporting his dead weight, with his feet 6 inches from the ground. Fox then pulled out 2 9-inch nails from the pocket of his donkey jacket and a hammer from his inside pocket. He then proceeded to hammer the nails into each of Ginger's palms, while Maisie climbed onto Mickey's shoulders and held his wrists above his head, about 2 feet apart. Fox is 6'2", but he still had to stand on tiptoes to do this. Then, still supported by Matt and Mickey, Maisie tied the boys' ankles firmly to the base of the tree with a length of tow rope. They did the same to the other 2 boys, to the other trees, methodically and in total silence. The only sound to be heard was the banging of the nails into the trees, but there were no houses in the vicinity, so that was not a problem. The boys had tape put over their mouths before being removed from the van. Now that they were secured to the trees, Maisie pulled out some kind of smelling salts from her jacket and held it under each boy's nose in turn. They then came round from their chloroform-induced sleep to what they might have thought was hell. It was. They all started to scream, but hardly any noise came out over their taped mouths, and once Matt had punched one of them in the bollocks, the noise stopped. Fox went round to the front of the van and retrieved a nice new sledgehammer from behind the passenger seat. He went to the first tree occupied by Poodlehead and proceeded to smash his kneecaps and shins, 4 heavy, well-aimed blows on each target, smashing bone and ripping flesh. He went to the next tree occupied by Ginger and did the same. Then Matt pulled him aside and said that he wanted to do the third boy himself, so Fox handed him the sledgehammer. Matt did the business. It would be a miracle if any of these boys walked unaided again, but justice needed to be served. No time for any sympathy, because emotion didn't belong there that night. Neither, it seemed, did it belong on the streets the night some innocent man was being beaten and stabbed to within an inch of his life for no fucking reason. But not just any man nor stranger, but a friend, a father and an uncle. This was justice, and this is what it was all about. Nothing more and nothing less. Still in silence, they watched as Maisie added her contribution to the proceedings. She pulled out her scalpel and gave each one in turn a deep double tram line down both cheeks. Double so that they couldn't be stitched together properly and would leave a nasty scar, so that whenever they looked in the mirror every day of their miserable lives, if they could bear to, that is, it would be a constant reminder. They knew why they were there that night. They didn't need to be told. They had attacked the wrong innocent man this time. Matt took out his phone and took some pictures for Stan. Still in silence, they got back in the van. Mickey and Maisie up front this time, Fox and Matt in the back. Mickey backed up the track and headed for the main road. He was heading to Willow Lane Industrial Estate on the outskirts of Mitcham, another undesirable part of the world Fox was very familiar with. He had gone to school there. Their mission was now complete. They entered the estate, which was one big horseshoe-shaped road. Then almost immediately they turned into a car park used by some of the units years ago. The estate was practically empty now, with only a few businesses still operating, all at the other end of the estate. Mickey parked the van up in the far corner of the car park. They all got out and Fox pulled a can of petrol out from under the driver's seat, poured some in the cab and some over the bonnet and wings, and finally some in the back. They all threw their jackets and masks into the cab and Fox fired it up. They calmly walked away from the burning van and into the main horseshoe road where their cars were parked. Mickey took Matt home in his battered old Ford Mondeo. Fox knew he could afford a decent car, but he wasn't bothered what he drove these days, and foremost, he didn't want anything too flash in his line of work. Fox got into his gleaming red V8 Jag with Maisie. He, on the other hand, did care about his mode of transport, and it could only ever be a Jag as far as he was concerned. As they headed off the estate towards Croydon, Fox turned to Maisie and said, "Best make the call now." She did this. "Hello, ambulance and police, please. There's been a shooting on Wimbledon Common." Then she gave the location of the 3 unfortunate scumbags and hung up. Fox wondered what the old Bill would make of that little scene. He hoped the mugs had a strong stomach. Taking the back off the phone, one bought the day before just for that one call, Maisie removed the battery and SIM card. Fox then slowed the car down to a walking pace and drove near to the curb, while Maisie opened her door about 6 inches while looking in the gutter. Then she said stop, and as Fox did so, she broke the SIM card in half and dropped it into the drain they had stopped over. They repeated this twice more, once for the battery and once for the phone that she had just pulverised with her boot. Fox then dropped her off home and went home himself. It was 5 to 2 in the morning and he was still buzzing and in no mood for sleep. It was way too late to call one of his nose strings attached birds for a good session. So, lazy boy, spliff and vodka it was. He turned on the TV and flipped through the channels and settled for an old black and white film that had just started. It had Edward G. Robinson in it, so he knew it would be good. Not like the modern computer-generated shit they made these days. He raised his glass and said, "Sentence has been passed. Justice has been done." He didn't sleep that night. He had a flight booked in the morning at 10 a.m. from Gatwick to his little bolt hole in northern Cyprus. He loved it out there, and he had bought an apartment there just before his interview with DCI Cotton of the Yard, so as to get rid of a chunk of his ill-gotten gains. It was a nice 3-bed place, close to the sea, and it was one of the best things he had ever done. He usually stayed there for about 3 months in the summer, when the sun was guaranteed and there were birds to be pulled. Also high-interest bank accounts that paid a good return on the money he had there. Enough, in fact, to cover the bills and the costs of his holidays, in style. It was his second home, and one day he planned to move there permanently when he was ready to jump ship from the rapidly sinking HMS England, all thanks to Mr. Cotton, fate. Chapter 11. Fox returned 5 weeks later, and while he was over there he received a text from Stan, saying, "Thanks, I appreciate it. Fancy some more?" Fox didn't reply, as he wasn't too sure what he meant though, but he had a little inkling, knowing Stan so well, but he was too busy having a good time, drinking and shagging, to let that bother him. He would sort it out when he got back. He knew that Matt had shown Stan the pictures of the boys nailed to the trees, as Fox had instructed, to show him that justice had been served on his behalf. However, he really didn't want to continue nailing lowlifes to trees, as he suspected Stan was getting at. Fox went round to see Stan the day after he got back. He knocked on his door and Stan answered it. Fox was surprised to see the change in his appearance. He had lost weight and looked a lot fitter. He was still a big lump, but not a blob. In fact, he looked fighting fit, and this bothered Fox. Now he knew what was coming. "Good holiday?" asked Stan. "Yeah, great, thanks. You look a lot better. How you feeling? You healed up yet?" asked Fox. He followed Stan into the kitchen and Stan put the kettle on. "Yeah, I feel fucking fantastic. You done me proud, mate. Them photos gave me a kick up the arse that I needed to pull myself together. You really nailed those bastards." He burst out laughing at his little joke, and Fox allowed himself a little smile. "Well, it had to be done, didn't it? We couldn't really let it lie, could we?" said Fox. Then he added, "I had some help, though. I couldn't have done it on my own. They all got a lot of bottle and carried out the plan to the letter." "Yeah, fantastic how you thought that up. It took some imagination. It was fucking perfect justice as far as I'm concerned," said Stan. Then he added, "By the way, as far as Lynn's concerned, you just sent some of the boys around to give these wankers a good kicking, and that's the end of it." "Yeah, best you don't really know what happened. She may look upon us in a different light, considering it was a bit more than just a kicking," said Fox. "Oh, by the way, what did you mean by that text you sent me? You want some more?" he asked Stan. Forgetting about the kettle, Stan beckoned him to the kitchen door, which led to a large double garage at the back of the house. It housed Stan's pride and joy, a 1990 Series 3 V12 Jaguar saloon in gleaming black. He had bought the car brand new, and it was the last of a classic Jag shape ever made as far as Fox was concerned. He treated it like a baby, keeping it in show condition regardless of costs. He took it to the local Jag dealership once a year for a full service and complete once-over. That alone ran into phone numbers. It was truly a beautiful beast, which Fox had been trying to buy from him for the last 10 years, but no amount of money would persuade Stan to part with her. In fact, he was adamant that he was going to be buried in that damn car. Now, that was true love. Fox would tease him and say that he'd dig it up, take it and stick Stan's body back in the hole. No one would notice. Stan said that he would come back from the dead and kick his fucking head in if he tried to do that. Stan told Fox to keep his eyes off her, and walked over to the far side of the garage to a steel wardrobe-sized cabinet. He unlocked it, opened it and revealed several baseball bats, about a dozen knuckle dusters, 4 stun guns, 5 telescopic koshes, a few pairs of nunchucks, a crossbow, some pepper spray, 3 machetes and a samurai sword. "Fuck me, all that just to protect a car? It would have been cheaper to put an alarm in," said Fox. "No," said Stan. "While you've been horizontal on the beach, drinking vodka and getting skin cancer, I've been doing a lot of thinking. What happened to me wasn't a one-off. It happened to some poor bastard every hour, every day in this fucking country. I've been reading the papers, and every day, especially in the local rags, there ain't a day that goes past that some poor old person, some vulnerable woman, some innocent kid, is attacked, robbed, raped, beaten or stabbed by the same kind of filth that did me." Fox could see where this was going, just as he had expected. Well, it didn't take a bloke in a white coat with pens in the top pocket, a stupid haircut and thick glasses to work that out, did it? No. After what had happened to Stan, and knowing his mindset, violent, that he wanted to make a few changes to the way these young maggots viewed their fellow human beings, especially the more vulnerable among them, letting them know that it would be better to help them, to be kind to them instead of hurting them, and that one and only way was to get their message across was by using violence, as it was the only language these young maggots understood. They had been dishing it out for long enough, without any retribution, so now it was time to start hurting them. Well, in Stan's mind it made perfect sense, and who could argue? Well, the pathetic spineless scum do-gooders whose philosophy was to turn the other cheek may not agree, but it was those worthless bastards who had created this sick lawless society in the first place, where people were now forced to live in. Don't get me wrong, Fox. I'm truly grateful for what you and the others did on my behalf. I couldn't have come up with a better punishment if I tried. Not in a million fucking years. I would have simply kicked him into a coma, but not you. You've got a sick imagination. It shows you really care," said Stan. Now Fox couldn't deny that he got a buzz from the payback those dirty little scumbags received. Hate fuelled every nail he hammered through their hands, and every swing of the sledgehammer. Maybe he should have swung for their bollocks, so they could never be allowed to breed, because God only knew what kind of shit those worthless cowards would inflict on society. He even thought that they should have done some more damage, but on reflection, Maisie had added a nice little touch with her scalpel, a nice visible reminder. He could see exactly what Stan was on about now. He really did have a valid point. Those three turds were just the tip of the vile, filthy iceberg that ran through society in these rancid modern times. Although they could never eliminate this element, they could perhaps teach a few of these bottom feeders the error of their ways, only a small percentage, but it was better than doing nothing and just ignoring it, hoping it would go away, like the dumb sheep on the streets did. Well, it was only going to get much worse, and these poor fools who were in such denial would one day become victims of their own weak blindness. "So what you got in mind then?" asked Fox, expecting a detailed account of a plan. "We steam in and break as many skulls as possible," was all Stan came up with. Fucking priceless, thought Fox. Maybe that would have worked on the terraces 40 years ago, but things have changed a hell of a lot since then. "Well, you've got the makings of a great plan there," said Fox. "But, if you don't mind, I'd like to polish it up a little. It will make me feel a little more comfortable." "Yeah, the others didn't seem too impressed either," said Stan. "So who else is on a firm then for this little endeavour?" asked Fox, a little concerned about who the hell Stan had told. "Only Mickey, Matt and Maisie. I ain't told anyone else. It's only us that know about the last occurrence. I know how paranoid you are about anyone knowing about your business," said Stan. Fox wasn't too happy about the way Stan had said the last sentence. In fact, he was well annoyed, if the truth be told. He only did what he did out of loyalty to Stan. He wasn't really into violence unless it was necessary, which usually meant a slap or a kick on the spur of the moment if some mug needed it. Anything premeditated against someone who was out of order was dealt with by a paid third party. That had indeed happened in the past, but very rarely and always over money matters. Fox only broke the law for gain, be it money or goods, and as far as he was concerned, breaking heads didn't pay. But he had to admit to himself that he did get a buzz from what they had done, only because they were guilty. Maybe he needed to get more off his chest than he thought, and what better way to do this than a bit of violence directed at the scum who thoroughly deserved it. It's not as if he was busy at the moment. In fact, he was bored shitless, so why not, eh? After all, Stan swore by it. Maybe he was right, and Fox was too stuck in his ways. He needed this, he was convinced. Funny, he was adamant when he first came round to see Stan that he would have none of his stupid violent ideas and would tell him so. Strange how things change. This was fate at its best, but as we all know, fate can be good or bad, so this bit of fate could go either way. "Look, don't take the piss," said Fox. "Yeah, I'm paranoid, very. That's how I've survived in the jungle for this long, with only a few minor hiccups with the law, because I tell no one nothing unless I'm working with them. The most successful criminals are the ones you never hear about, and I'm one of them. What we done to those boys, kidnap, torture and maiming, would have got us 15 years apiece from some cunt of a judge," said Fox. "Sorry, I've been in a straight line since I met Lynn. I still know all the boys, but I ain't been involved in any skullduggery. I've got a good legit business and don't need any sidelines. I know you and respect you for what you've done and what you've ever done. Most of it I don't know about, but I do know it didn't involve doing a 9 to 5, and you're slippery enough to have not come unstuck. It must take nerves of steel to live like you. And again, I'm sorry, mate." Fox knew that Stan meant it. He was a good friend, and maybe Fox shouldn't fly off the handle so quickly. He was getting well twitchy in his old age. Time to retire to the sun, maybe. "OK, let me dwell on it for a week or so, and I'll get back to you with a plan. Perhaps I do need this to calm me down a bit. Since I haven't been training as hard as I used to, I feel myself getting more angry. I've always needed to vet my anger. I'll go back to you, and I promise we'll have a meet-up. Oh, and by the way, who's funding all this? It won't come cheap if it's to be done properly," said Fox. "No problem. I've just sold one of my houses. Remember the one over in Balham, the one you got me that bent mortgage on? Well, I got more than I expected, so it's down to me," said Stan. Fox had to admit that Stan did seem to have things well covered. Game on. Chapter 12. The day after his visit to Stan's was a Friday, and Fox was up early again. He remembered the days when he could stay in bed until gone 11, and that was when he was working. And now that he had nothing much to do, he couldn't sleep much past 8. It must be old age, he told himself. They say you sleep less when you're the wrong side of death, and he agreed. He was 50, but he didn't feel it. He was fit and strong and had a good appetite for sex, of which he had plenty of and always had. He couldn't understand how a married bloke could bang the same hole for years on end. After all, variety was the spice of life, and fresh pussy was all part of that variety. And when he got fed up with banging the same hole, or the bird started acting up, she was gone. There were plenty of birds out there, and Fox wanted to taste as many as he could. Well, he only lived once, so as far as he was concerned, the married mug could crack on with the same old if it made him happy. His was not to question why, his was just to shag and die. He had a lot of thinking and planning to do after his conversation with Stan, but that could wait, because today he needed a bit of female company on board. The only problem was that he only had 3 birds on the firm at the moment. This may sound as if he was greedy, but, as mentioned before, he needed variety. His opinion of women wasn't very high, and as far as he was concerned, they just served a purpose. He was always very polite to them and never gave them a slap, not his style. A wise and old car dealer once told him many years ago, if it's got tits or wheels, sooner or later it's going to give you trouble. Never a truer word spoken. However, when a car starts giving you trouble, you can just put it in the auctions and maybe take a loss and let some other mug deal with it. But when a woman becomes troublesome, it's not quite that simple and a lot harder to get shot of them. Fox liked his women dirty, the filthier the better. It wasn't in all this love-making nonsense, just a good hard ride and every orifice filled. His idea of safe sex was not to tell the bird his real name or where he lived. The 3 he had on board now consisted of one who was married, and he only ever saw her when she could slip away, usually when her old man was away on business, and he hadn't heard from her for a while. The other one was a workaholic and lived in East London. He saw her about once a week, but she loved it up the arse, so he wanted to hang on to her for as long as possible, as not every bird took it rounded back. Usually a couple of fingers were enough. Last of all was a little bird from Trinidad, a few years younger than him, a single mum who didn't work and only lived a few miles round the corner from him. He had kept in touch with her while he was on holiday, saying that he was away on business. She had wanted to come out and join him, but he had to swerve that one. He had told her he was a property developer and had to travel abroad sometimes, if there was a good deal to be had. Well, it sounded a bit more glamorous than a used car dealer, and a tad more honest. He believed him, so that was okay. The only problem was that she didn't stop talking. She would go on about anything and everything. She didn't get out much. When he was with her, although his cock was at a 45-degree angle, his ear rolls were always bent to a 90-degree angle, with her incessant rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. She could take a good pounding in the sack, and that was all that mattered as far as he was concerned, and he was getting closer to smashing her back doors in every time she came over, which was progress. Take her off with a smooth, old boy. He texted her and booked her in for that night. It was short notice, but she was up for it. He would bounce her off the bedroom walls that night, and start work the next day with a clear head and an empty sack. Happy days, Mr. Fox. After a lazy Saturday and a good rest after his heavy session in the sack, he left his flat at 10 p.m. It was raining as usual. He was out for a drive in a recce. He didn't want to go near Croydon. There was no need to shit on his own doorstep. His journey took him towards South London, towards Tooting in a straight line that followed the Northern Line tube stations along the way, into the smoke. This was a route he knew well, having used it so many times during his childhood, by road or by rail, back when it was safe to use the tube without the threat of combustion. He drove at a steady 30 miles an hour, keeping his eyes peeled, looking right, looking left. There was an invisible air of hostility around. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it was certainly there. He could feel it. A sixth sense, maybe. A gut feeling. He had his window half open, breathing in the smell of diesel fumes and filthy fast food, cooked in old fat by dirty foreign hands, never washed after using the toilet. He hated anything but proper fish and chips, and a pie and mash, and gravy, cooked by white British hands, but not many of those left these days. He crept along Tooting High Street. He saw groups of feral hooded youths on street corners, just waiting for someone to stab or mug. Hating. Waiting. Nothing better to do with their time. Some were outside kebab shops, some outside tube stations. He remembered the days when he and his friends walked the very same streets after coming out of a pub or a nightclub, feeling the worse for wear, and be quite safe, but not anymore. There were random gatherings of feral kids with no hope or future in a now totally broken country. A country now utterly ruined by mass immigration, political fucking correctness, a vile traitorous government, and so very much more. Churchill or Maggie will be ashamed and very disappointed. Kids with a total lack of respect, discipline or morals, which their good-for-nothing parents were incapable of instilling in them. Kids with no fear of the gutless police, parents or pathetic teachers, safe in the knowledge that they were free to do whatever badness they chose without fear of punishment. An utter fucking disgrace. The country's leaders lived in their ivory towers, while the plebs lived in concrete ones. It was totally fucked up and would continue in a downward spiral until it reached the gates of hell. Fox never really gave it much thought usually, as he was okay, but this brief glimpse into the streets and all their filthy lawless glory showed him just how bad the place was. There was truly no future as far as he was concerned. None. He slowed down for a red light just outside Clapham Common tube station. He looked over to his left and saw 5 white boys of about 16 or so mugging a black boy of about the same age. He saw the black boy handing over his mobile phone. Then one of the white boys gave him a sound backhander across the face. The tables appeared to have turned, thought Fox. As this was happening, people were just walking past, totally ignoring it, acting like frightened sheep, for they knew that any kind of intervention would result in a good beating or worse. There were no more heroes anymore. The sheep also knew that all these lowlifes carried blades these days, and they wouldn't think twice about using them. There was no consequence. Life was very cheap these days. The streets were a dangerous place, ruled by these animals in hoodies, and not policed anymore, like they used to be. It was truly fucking hostile. He went on past Stockwell Tube Station and towards the Elephant and Castle roundabout. It was still raining, but only lightly now. Along the way he witnessed yet more hooded youths harassing the public outside yet another filthy, greasy, salmonella-ridden kebab shop. Maybe these young animals like kebabs. He didn't know. But what he did know was that the streets of London were no longer safe for the decent citizens who lived there, due to these little maggots. He was getting angry now. Stan had a very good point, and only now was it really starting to sink in. He turned right at the Elephant and Castle roundabout and onto the Old Kent Road. This place he knew but was not overly familiar with. Nevertheless, it was the cheapest place and the shittiest place on the Monopoly board for a very good reason. Slowly the Jag crept along the wide road. Either side were filthy grey council tower blocks, punctuated by boarded-up pubs that had long since served a pint, or heard drunken laughter. Barricaded shops, still in business during the day, but not brave enough to open after dark. Even the money-grabbing packies. It was well fucking grim. Suddenly, on impulse, he turned right into one of these faceless estates, curious to see what pond life lurked in the shadows and under the rocks. Big mistake. He went on for about 30 yards and turned left into a narrow road. He didn't see the dead-end sign. It was missing. Just as he made the turn, his headlights picked up 6 or 7 youths sitting on a wall at the end of the road, the dead-end road. Only then did he realise it was a dead end. He'd phone the council tomorrow and make a complaint about the lack of a sign. Maybe. No longer had that thought crossed his mind than a face appeared at his window, which was already 6 inches down. The doors were locked. A few inches away was an ugly, pock-marked black face. It came close in and said in a menacing voice, "What you doing here, white boy? In it?" "I'm terribly sorry," began Fox, "but I appear to be a little lost." He thought it best to be polite and avoid antagonising the dirty black cunt. He was so ugly that Fox doubted that even his mother could love a face like that. He made a ginger-haired stepson seem appealing. And to add to that, his putrid breath stunk like a fucking sewer. What a disgusting article he was. Suddenly the car started to bounce up and down. He looked to his left and saw 2 white boys in the front wing. Catching a look in the rearview mirror, he saw 1 on each rear wing too, and 2 more standing just behind his ugly inquisitor. 7 against 1. Brave bastards. The horror of it was, even though they were less than half his age and obviously fit and healthy, he knew that he could beat each one of them to a fucking pulp, one by one, and not break into a sweat. But that wasn't likely to happen tonight, was it? No. "Nice car, white boy. You're in my yard now, so you've got to pay tax, innit?" continued Sewerbreath. Fox, meanwhile, was slowly going into the right inside pocket of his jacket with his left hand, slowly feeling for the little screw cap on his Jif lemon squeezer, which no longer contained lemon juice, but sulphuric acid. His thumb and forefinger undoing the cap, while the bottom 3 fingers and the palm were holding the body. "I'm sorry, I don't understand. I've just taken the wrong turning, I'm afraid," said Fox, still gently undoing the cap without arousing suspicion. With that, Sewerbreath produced a rather nasty-looking blade, about 8 inches long and serrated on one side. Then he said, "Get out of the car. You in the wrong place, fucker." The cap was now off, and quick as a flash he pulled a squeezy lemon bottle from his pocket and squirted over half the contents into Sewerbreath's ugly black face and eyes, mostly the eyes, through the gap in his window. He let out an animal scream and staggered back, dropping the knife and putting his hands to his face. But that wouldn't help, as his face was now starting to melt. But that may have been an improvement. The youths are now confused, and the car stopped bouncing in the same second. Fox threw the lemon squeezy bottle on the passenger side footwell, selected reverse and floored it, running over at least 1 pair of feet and hitting some shins too in the process. What a fucking shame. He reached the end of the short, narrow, dead-end street, turned the lights off while glancing forward to look out the front screen to see 3 more of them about 10 feet away from the car, with big fuck-off blades in their grubby hands and hate in their fucking eyes. Quickly selecting forward gear, he floored the mighty V8 along the 30-yard street and back onto the Old Kent Road, his heart pounding in his chest. What a rush! There was no traffic for a brief period as he turned the lights back on and headed slowly back towards the Elephant roundabout and on towards home, his heart still racing. He had mistakenly driven into the viper's nest and escaped by the skin of his teeth. My God, he thought, it really was a violent, hostile, lawless jungle out there. It was a filthy underbelly of society in all its vile, disgusting glory. Scary stuff. I was buzzing all the way home, with a renewed vigour and hatred. How dare that piece of dirty black rat shit talk to him like that? How fucking dare he? Then he laughed out loud to himself at the thought of there being one less fucking lowlife out there to hurt innocent people. Well, unless you've got a well-trained pit bull as a guide dog. Doubtful. Fox dwelled gleefully at the thought of his filthy, ugly black face melting into one big fucking almighty mess. How justly he deserved it. How sweet was that? In it, Fox felt powerful and relished in the idea of more street justice. Chapter 13. Monday morning found Fox in the dry cleaners in Portland Road, Norwood. But not just any old dry cleaners, though. This was owned by a man called Monkey Brown, a strange and colourful character. Although in his mid-60s he didn't look it, he had worn well. Monkey Brown always dressed in a sharp suit. This 6'5", 13-stone man with snow-white shoulder-length hair and still blue eyes looked every inch the movie star. But he wasn't. He was as bent as a 2-bob watch. He was a master forger and someone who could get you anything if you needed it, from a second-hand tank to a string of fake pearls. The local faces and further afield had used his services for many, many years. Fox had used him back in the 80s to print logbooks up for the luxury cars he was stealing. Monkey's work was excellent, and you couldn't tell the difference from the real thing. Oh yeah, Monkey Brown was good. He was still very active, but for some reason the old Bill left him alone. He had many connections, and no doubt some of them were bent coppers. Fox admired the old man. He also admired his 1960s Bentley, which he used as his everyday transport. The man had class and style, one of the true old-school crooks, in total contrast to the modern-day scumbag wannabe gangsters. Monkey Brown was the real deal. The dry cleaners was just a front and was ideal for his money laundering activities. The irony was not lost to the people who knew him, nor, no doubt, to the old Bill, for he had a chain them across South London, but he chose this particular branch as his main office and conducted all of his business there. Fox was inside with his shopping list and a wad of Stan's money. Stan was outside waiting in his van. Then, as luck would have it, or not, depending on how he looked at it, out of nowhere appeared one of the things he hated most. Apart from cyclists, he detested those lycra-clad arseholes with a passion. No, this was a Nigerian on a scooter, wearing a traffic warden's uniform. Well, it could have been an African. Stan didn't care. They all seemed to be one or the other these days. But it was a uniform and whoever was in it that he hated. To him, and most other motorists, these people were annoying fucking cockroaches. The warden parked up his scooter in front of the van. He got off and walked up to Stan's open window and said, "You need to move, you're illegally parked." "OK," says Stan. "I'm just waiting for someone, then I'll go." "I'm afraid you'll have to go now, or I'll have to give you a ticket," said the warden. Now Stan was getting well overheated by this point. It didn't take much these days for that to happen. Not much at all. His fuse was short. "Listen, you fucking pest. I'm going to count to 3. Then I'm going to punch you very hard. So best you piss off, because you're vexing me now, you mug cunt," said an irate Stan. He had his right hand gripping the lower window frame, and his seatbelt was off. The warden just stood there, not quite grasping the seriousness of his predicament. After all, how many times did he get threatened every day? Plenty. So why should he take this any differently? Well, it wasn't every day you were threatened by Big Stan Clark. 1, 2. There was no 3. On the count of 2, Stan launched a well-aimed left, while propelling his upper body, stabilising with his right hand on the window frame of the door. The punch connected full force with the unfortunate warden's chin. Bang! He lay spark out on the pavement, right outside the dry cleaners. Well, he was warned, wasn't he? Yes, he fucking was. A moment later, Fox emerged from the shop, carrying a large Hessian sack. He looked down on the pavement at the outstretched figure, and stepping over him, he got into the van. "What the fuck?" said Fox. "I'm in there doing the business and holding a sack full of weapons, and you're out here chinning up fucking traffic wardens." "Well, they're a fucking nuisance and need the occasional slap. It just so happens it was his turn today," said Stan. "Ooh, you're such a bully, Stanley, you really are," said Fox, and they both laughed as Stan pulled out into the traffic. Overzealous traffic wardens were just another part of life in the concrete jungle that was now London in the fucking 21st century, and Fox knew quite a few people who had smacked one of these infuriating insects, including himself, although he preferred punching cyclists who took liberties on the road. It was more satisfying, seeing the look on their dumb, arrogant faces when they got a good hard smack. The council really should have an annual Slap a Cyclist Day. Fox spent the rest of the week preparing and spending Stan's money. Tomorrow was Saturday, the night. He hoped everything went to plan, but who could really tell? And still fresh in his memory was the night that he had done the black bastard over in the Old Kent Road, and he was still buzzing. He had turned the tables in his own style. It only took seconds for him to outwit the dumb, thick black boy, who was so used to getting his own way and terrorising the public. and turning his worthless life into a now living hell. He was smart and cunning, and he knew that his prey tonight were hard pushed to share a brain cell with their fuckwit parents. His plan was a good one, and he was gagging to get out there and just fucking do it. Saturday night, 10 p.m, and Fox was parked on another industrial estate, this time opposite Wimbledon Stadium, famous for its greyhound racing, speedway and banger racing. He was in a black London taxi, which he had bought anonymously off the internet from some mush over in Shepherd's Bush. It had no Hackney carriage licence plate on the boot, due to the fact that it was decommissioned, which meant that it could no longer be used as a taxi, only as a private car, as they all were after a certain age. So he had Monkey Brown sort him out a licence plate to make it look like it was still in service. Luckily the meat was left in the boot, so he put that back on too. Also, this vehicle was ideal smother. He was early. Driving Saturday by Bowie was playing on a radio, a fantastic tune that took him back to a much simpler place in time, a safe, carefree childhood, which kids of today would never know. Never. This was an ageless song, sung by an androgynous being from a place many light years away from anyone's imagination, a place with glitter and stardust, platform boots and glamour, a starman sent to Earth to plug the kids into hazy cosmic jive, or so it seemed at the time. Many people Fox's age still enjoyed listening to his music, including himself. There was a message there somewhere, he was sure of it. Fox lived on another plane, Bowie lived in another dimension. All was good back then, so fucking good. A tap on the window came and brought him out of his trance, just as Bowie was explaining how John the foreman prayed at work, and neither hands nor limbs would burst. It was Maisie and Matt. They got into the back of the taxi and closed the door. Fox turned round in the driver's seat and said, "Fuck me, Matt, you look like a Burton shop window dummy," with a smile. Matt had on a cheap suit bought from Armani. This was all part of the plan which Fox had gone through with them at lunchtime the previous day in the office. They had all been well impressed with his plan, his imagination, and attention to detail. It was practical and deadly if it worked. Maisie had on jogging bottoms, a t-shirt and a puffer jacket. Fox had on the same. Nice loose-fitting clothes that allowed them their full range of movement. All three had on black Blitz martial arts trainers, thin, light and sturdy. Buy some now. Next to arrive was Stan and Mickey. Mickey was to be the night's driver. He had on jeans, a t-shirt, leather jacket and a flat cap. He looked every inch a typical London cabbie, albeit one out of the 80s. Stan was the exception. He had on a white t-shirt, rolled-up jeans and revealed 21-holed Oxblood Dr. Martin steel toe-cap boots. His head was freshly shaved, and to top it all off, a pair of bright red bobber boy braces. He looked every inch the violent hard skinhead he had once been. Fox had to admit that he looked fucking good. He looked frightening. He alone would inspire some serious skull cracking and Stanley blade slashing. This, however, was not part of the evening's dress code, but Stan had insisted, so who was Fox to deprive him of the impending night's pleasure to the full, even if it meant him dressing the part? After all, this was Big Stan's idea. He used violence. He fucking oozed it. Mickey swapped places with Fox and started a taxi. The other good thing about a London taxi was the fact that the rear windows were tinted for the passenger's privacy. More smother. Mickey turned the taxi around in one manoeuvre, using its tight turning circle ability. He turned right out the industrial estate and headed towards Tooting. He had the meter running. Chapter 14. As they rode in the back of the taxi, Fox broke the silence and turned to Maisie and said, "You sure you're up for this, Maze? It's going to get nasty, and we ain't going to show no mercy once we get stuck in. We are judge, jury and punisher here." She turned to him and looked him in the eye and said through gritted teeth, "Fucking right, I'm sure. I work in a hospital, remember? Every day I hear about scum abusing staff, hitting them, threatening them and even spitting on the nurses. I hear about the mugging victims, the stabbings and sometimes shootings that the doctors have to repair. I hear these same old stories all the fucking time, and I'm getting sick of these lowlifes. So yeah, I do need this. I need some of it, okay?" "All right then," was all Fox said. Well, at least her heart was in it. They were just passing Tooting Broadway station, on their right. Mickey was doing a steady 30 miles an hour, just looking, as they all were. Half a mile later, Fox found what they were looking for. There were about 10 youths hanging about outside yet another kebab shop on a street corner to their left. They seemed to be about 16 to 20 years old enough and big enough to bleed, some white, some black, all looking for trouble, looking to do someone totally innocent and inflicting some damage, just for something to do on a boring Saturday night. Fox let out a manic laugh. With Fox's instruction, Mickey turned left at the corner and went round the block, going back on himself, then emerging from the corner before the kebab shop. He stopped the taxi about 20 yards before the shop and Matt got out, followed by Fox and Maisie. who walked over to an estate agent's window and pretended to look at the well overpriced properties for sale in this sewer of a place. Matt walked towards the kebab shop, and as he approached, the youths began whispering. He went into the shop. It was empty except for 2 brown boys and a black boy sitting at a table by the window with some soft drinks. They eyed Matt up as he walked towards the counter. He walked with a slight wobble, as if he was a bit worse for wear, an easy target. They too started to whisper, and it all felt very hostile, and Matt's senses were on full alert. But he hoped nothing would happen inside the shop. Not yet. He ordered a large kebab for the illegal immigrant behind the counter. A large kebab with plenty of chilli sauce on the top. Plenty. While he was waiting for the jigaboo to sort out his order, he rolled up his sleeves to reveal a Rolex watch, turning slightly so that the boys at the table could see as he pretended to squint at the time. The watch looked the part, but it was fake, just another prop Fox had bought from Monkey Brown. He loved the details. He knew these young retailers would be drawn to this and were too thick to tell if it was fake. Hell, they probably couldn't even tell the fucking time anyway. Oh, the taxi had pulled up 10 yards past the shop on the opposite corner of the street, with Stan still in the back, putting on his knuckle dusters and smiling. Not long now. Fox and Maisie were also waiting for Matt to leave the shop with his kebab and walk towards the rest of the youths outside. Matt was the bait, and timing was everything here. Everything. Meanwhile, no one took a blind bit of notice of the taxi waiting on the corner. Well, they wouldn't, would they? After all, this was London, and there were thousands of these identical black vehicles everywhere. Great disguise. Matt's kebab was ready now. He paid the illegal, who had recently been a stowaway in the back of a lorry from France, and asked for more chilli on top. As paying, one of the boys at the table by the window made some kind of sign to the others outside. Matt didn't see this. No matter. He left the shop, turning left towards the youths. Fox and Maisie walked towards them slowly. They both had on one knuckle duster each, leaving the other hand free for grips, eye gouges or other such things that couldn't be done while wearing one. Stan put his hand on the inside door handle. Mickey kept the motor running. The tank was full. 3 black boys moved in front of Matt, blocking his path. Nice watch, white boy. Me want it now, said the middle youth. And they were all quite big chappies, Matt noticed. 3 more came up behind him. Then the 3 who were in the shop appeared on his right, boxing him in. I can't. It was a present from my Uncle Hector from Peru, said Matt. This threw them a little. He could see the look of dun confusion on their ugly, soon-to-be smashed-up faces. Fucking young window lickers. But I'll tell you what you can have, Matt continued, hoping the fact that the others were now in place nearby. Very nearby, because this was it. He couldn't stall them any longer. What's that then, fucker? Said the black boy on his right. This, said Matt, as he rammed the chilli-topped kebab into his face, at the same time grabbing the back of his head and running him backwards, thus rendering him unable to defend himself as he was too busy trying to keep his balance, his face and eyes burning from the hot chilli sauce. Just as this was happening, Fox and Maisie ran forward, each taking 2 boys by surprise, hammering them with fists and elbows and feet. Right on cue, Stan leapt out of the taxi and went for the remaining 2 boys, who had seconds earlier stood in front of Matt, together with Kebab Face. He smashed one to the ground with one devastating punch, head-butting the other one, throwing him up against the wall, and as he fell to the floor he kicked his head in with his gleaming steel toe-cap DMs, then stomping on the other boy's face who he had decked 5 seconds earlier. The rest of the boys remained rooted to the spot, frozen in sheer horror and utter surprise. Stan started punching the one nearest to him. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 well-aimed shots to the face and head. The boy was out cold before he hit the floor. Then 1 full force kick to the face from Stan, just to finish him off. Matt, meanwhile, had finished off Kebab Face by sweeping his legs from underneath him and dropping him, then stamping on his face a few times, aiming for the jaw. You still want my fucking watch, you thieving cunt, eh? He was asking as he stomped, but there was no reply. It was hard to talk with a fucking shattered jaw. He then got down on one knee and started pounding his face till it was mush. He had donned his knuckle duster while he was stamping on his face. Job done. The 3 boys who had originally been in the shop tried running, but Fox blocked their escape, stopping one dead in his tracks with a kick to the solar plexus, doubling him up ready for a kick to the face, full force, smashing his nose, then dropping him like a sack of shit that he was. Maisie came up behind him, and they started battering the remaining boys ferociously with good hard bone-crunching shots, until they were a bloody mess. Then, out the corner of her eye, Maisie saw a boy of about 13, about to get on a mountain bike that had been leaning against the wall, and ready to take off. She ran over and grabbed him by the hood of his coat, and pulled him to the ground. Then, with one hand on his throat and one on his crutch, she pulled him up and threw him against the kebab shop window. But he bounced off. Bollocks. So, as he landed as a heap on the floor, she gave him a few good kicks to the head and 1 good stamp on his face. He was just a kid, but scum all the same. The boys got up off the ground and started to straighten himself up. only to be smacked square on the jaw by Stan. He fell to the floor, out cold. The whole episode took no longer than a minute. The violence was lightning quick, well-timed and extremely vicious. The boys didn't know what had hit them. Most of the scum will be scarred for life, as the power behind every duster-clad punch was devastating, tearing through flesh and breaking bones. They never attempted to fight back. They had met more than their match and paid the price. This is how things needed to be done. The two illegals behind the counter of the shop had just looked on in amazement. Well, at least they had enjoyed the show, which is more than the youths had. Fox doubted they would even bother phoning the police, as that would be a waste of time, due to there being so much violence on the streets and their total reluctance to get involved. Broken Britain. Meanwhile, Mickey had turned down a side street and was waiting 10 yards away from the corner with the engine running, the lights off. When the violence was over, much to Stan's disappointment, they all legged it away from the scene and into the back of the waiting taxi, and off they jolly well went. Fox had a semi. The atmosphere in the back of the taxi was electric. They were all buzzing, and the adrenaline was flowing through their veins with a vengeance. They all felt high. Stan was the first to speak. What a fucking charge. Now I'm warmed up. Where to next? Calm down, said Fox. They were back on the high street now, and about a mile away from the kebab shop and heading towards Balham, but still scanning the streets. The night was young. Just keep a lookout. Do you fancy another kebab, Matt? Asked Fox, smiling. Fucking right, I'm starving. I bloody spilt the last one, replied Matt. They all laughed. They knew that what they was doing was not wrong. These are not innocent kids, just out for a laugh, a little high jinks. No, these are nasty, poisonous, feral animals who hunted in packs, hurting and sometimes even killing innocent, tax-paying, law-abiding citizens. They were a fucking disgrace and a cancer running through society. The night wasn't over, and more of these cancerous tumours were about to be removed by the surgeons in the back of the taxi. Chapter 15. The taxi continued along through Balham and all its dirt and grime. What Fox could never fathom is why idiots were falling over themselves to live in a sewer like this, paying well over the odds for a poky little property, sky-high council tax and everything else that goes with having a South London postcode. Who were these bellends kidding? London, all of it was now one great big fucking immigrant-infested, crime-ridden cesspit, and yet they still wanted to live here, so they can no doubt give it a large to whoever will listen. Fucking wankers. He wondered if they ever ventured out to the local kebab shop to see what it was really like out on the streets, or whether they were too tired after working all the hours God sent in order to pay for their overinflated mortgages and bills to even have the strength to have a social life. Fox had to laugh at the mentality of these sheep in their herd mentality. Stan pulled out a little white pillbox from his jeans pocket, tipped some white powder onto the back of his hand and snorted it, repeating the same for the other nostril. Fuck me, said Matt. You back on that shit again? I thought you'd promised Mum you'd given it up. Don't worry, I have, but this is a special occasion. Just a little livener for an old man, eh? Said Stan, smiling. Pass that over, said Maisie, much to everyone's surprise. There you go, said Stan, putting some on the back of her hand. Anyone else? He asked. Fox and Matt declined. Fox had taken a fair amount of coke in his teens, but that was then. Now his only drug of choice was grass, and when he could get hold of it was skunk. Also, he consumed a fair amount of vodka too, and if he wanted a really good all-night session, smashing the birds' back doors in, he had the occasional sachet of liquid Viagra, which his mate had brought back a load from India, and that did the job, good and proper, and the bird knew she had well and truly been pounded. Oh yeah. However, he did fancy having to go on some opium one day. Maybe he'd try it and find a den near him. It could be a new experience. Fox was well and truly charged now, without the aid of drugs. A bit of violence certainly helped to clear the cobwebs, especially when unloaded on scum. They all needed some more that night. There was no doubt about that. It was becoming very clear. On through Balham, but there was nothing there for them. All seemed quiet. Then up a slight hill towards Clapham Common Tube. The night was clear, with no rain and a full moon, and the usual smell of exhaust fumes and junk food. As they approached Clapham Common Tube on their left, the traffic lights by the station were red, and a small queue of about 20 cars had formed. They all looked towards the station, its concourse visible from where they were. Outside on the pavement, on the corner, there were 4 white boys with hoodies on, and they were blocking the path of an old black guy, who seemed a bit drunk. It was 10:45. The vermin in hoodies were jostling him and laughing, blocking his path. Just as the lights changed and the taxi moved off, Stan said, "Stop the car on this corner, Mickey, and turn left and wait, okay?" It was more of an order than a request. "Sure," replied Mickey. He knew what was to come. He just wished he could watch, but he was the driver and he had a job to do. "This is mine. You lot wait in the motor," said an excited Stan. Those hooded vermin were now seconds away from their fate. With that, Mickey pulled up on the corner and Stan opened the back door nearest the curb, He got out and vaulted over the barrier that protected the pedestrians from the traffic. He cleared it in one. He moved lightning fast for such a big man, but the coke may have had something to do with that, and the spring in his step too, and also the smell of blood. Then he ran, or rather charged, straight over to the rats harassing the old boy. It was too late for the one nearest Stan to realise that there was a crazy skinhead steaming towards him at full pelt. One punch on the side of his head put him out cold. He may well have killed him, as Stan was wearing his dusters. The boy hit the concrete with a sickening thud. Oh dear. He hit the deck. Stan started laying into the next one, smashing his face with his metal fists. The others started to run off, but Stan lunged to his left, grabbing one of the boy's hoods and pulled him clean off his feet and proceeded to kick his face in the dog food. He most certainly did die. His skull couldn't take the punishment of the full force kick Stan was delivering with his steel toes. No fucking way. Stan was in his element. He felt powerful enough to crush 20 more. Right there, right then. Fox had to sort him out some more, because he certainly wasn't going home until he had his fill that night. No way. This was too fucking good. Hearing this, the few people that were walking past or running out of the station just carried on walking with their heads down, too frightened to stare just in case they were next. Stan knew that tomorrow there will be a sign put up outside the station, appealing for witnesses to his brutal attack, and at least one murder. But Plod really didn't give a fuck. No one really did, except the families of these vermin. But their loss is society's gain, and the price they have to pay for breeding feral scum. Meanwhile, the old guy had shuffled off muttering something or other, but Stan wasn't listening. After about 10 good kicks to the last boy's head, he turned left and strolled towards a taxi waiting for him 20 yards down the road. His old heart was beating hard. He got in the back and Mickey pulled away from the curb and into the light traffic. "Feeling better?" asked Fox. "Oh yeah, I needed that. Those bastards won't be going that much after that little turnout, let alone bully any more old people. I fucking smashed the granny at them cunts big style." Indeed, he was dead right about 2 of the rats anyway. They were never going out again. They had no chance of surviving their beating. "Well, I hope they see the error of their ways," said Matt, smiling. "I doubt it," said Stan. "Maybe I'll drive back in a couple of months and give them another slap." Meanwhile, up front, Mickey looked at his special sat-nav, which gave him the positions of the nearest police vehicles in the area, another of Monkey Brown's gadgets, and found that the nearest one was a mile away going in the opposite direction. Sweet. He reported this to the others in the back, which in effect told them that they were in the clear thus far. "I'm still buzzing," said Stan, taking another line up his left. "Where to next, Mr. Fox?" he asked. "Well, I'm all for going home and having a nice cup of cocoa now," he replied. Stan, the only one seemingly not to get the joke, just gave him a manic stare. Then, when the rest burst out laughing, the penny finally dropped. "You cunt," he sneered. "OK, well that's the warm-up done. So how do you feel about a trip into the lion's den, eh, chaps?" "Yeah, fine. Let's find someone who will fight back. I want a real fight," said Matt. "I second that," said Maisie. Fox turned towards Mickey and said, "Old Kent Road, please, Gov." This could go either way, he thought. But what the hell? There was nothing like a challenge, and it seemed that's what they all needed. Some real adrenaline, some real fear. The fear of pain, injury, or even worse. A real fight. One where they would be outnumbered. A fight with weapons. Fox wasn't really a violent man, or so he thought. But maybe he was unleashing something that had always been there. Well, so be it. If it needed exercising, then this was the time. The taxi headed towards the Elephant Castle roundabout. Chapter 16. The taxi cruised slowly along the Old Kent Road, passing the same high-rise slums and boarded-up pubs that were there the week before, and looked like a glimpse into the post-apocalyptic future of the country. Fox had told him about his little excursion into the filthy underbelly of this degraded area the week before, and told him what had happened to him, and thoroughly relished in telling him how he had melted the ugly, putrid-breathed coon's face. He was still high on that moment. He had dealt out instant justice, right there, on the spot. No ifs, no buts. He had turned the situation 360 degrees in one split second, from his helpless predicament and destroying a filthy animal. How fucking sweet. How very fucking sweet. Fuck me, this is the right shithole, no mistake. I pity the poor proper people who have to live shoulder to shoulder with this stinking vermin scum, said Maisie. And of course she was right. There were probably many decent people who had lived in the area for many years, from a previous generation, and had no choice but to live here and watch the place devolve into a ghetto inhabited with vermin from the current generation. After all, it wasn't the buildings that made a slum, it was the scum that lived in them. "OK, turn right here, Mickey," Fox said, pointing to the road he had turned into the previous week, leading to the concrete and cockroaches. The taxi crawled towards the dead-end road, but there was no one there collecting, or rather demanding, taxis tonight. Pity, because they would have received a tax they would never have forgotten, had they survived. Death tax. Fox wondered if the black boy he had squirted had lost his sight. He hoped so. "Well?" asked Stan, but Fox didn't answer. He just told Mickey to turn round and head for the belly of the beast, where he knew they would find what they were looking for. They turned left out of the dead-end road and ventured deeper into the sewer. They passed more boarded-up shops, then turned right into a large crescent-shaped road. Halfway along, there was a Londis grocery shop on their left. Only a greedy packy would be open this time of night, thought Fox. It was 11:15. Although it was open for business, purchases could only be made through a hole in the wall, like a serving hatch, and money had to be paid in before the goods had passed through. Greedy packies, but certainly not stupid packies. My God, had the country become that fucking lawless and unpoliced? It had. It reminded Fox of a scene from the Bronx in the 80s. Bright side, though, there were at least 8 hooded youths hanging around outside, drinking from beer cans and smoking cigarettes. To the right of the shop was an alleyway, with a battery of lock-up garages on one side and a high wire fence on the other. The whole scene looked like it belonged in a bad film. The alley was not a dead end, but led to another dirty tower block. The Crescent Road, where they were also in, was a dead end, one way in and the same way out, a potentially lethal death trap. Mickey drove to the end of the Crescent and turned round, pulling up a few yards past the shop. The taxi was now pointing to their only exit. Matt got out of the door nearest the road, so as not to reveal the rest of the vehicle's occupants. He calmly walked up to the hatch and asked for a packet of jelly babies. The boys were just to the right of him and about 10 feet away. Then, one of them, a brown boy, said, "Oi, white boy, what are you doing in my patch, innit?" Here we go again, thought Matt. Next time, someone else can have the cheap suit and bit of fucking bait. Not that he minded the energy rush and fear of what was going to happen next. He loved it, but the cheap suit made him look like a right cunt. No wonder these young maggots kept picking on him. He looked like a typical victim. Well, what other kind of person will buy a suit from Primark, for fuck's sake? "I'm just buying some jelly babies. I hope that's okay, sir. You see, I especially like biting heads off the black ones," replied Matt, as he was easing the knuckle duster on in his pocket to his left hand. Tick-tock. With that, 2 of the boys came towards him. One had a knife in his hand. Then the others came up behind the first boy, and now Matt was facing 8 very angry young bastards out for his blood. 8 against 1. The usual odds. All the time they completely ignored the taxi. "What you saying, bitch? You dissing me, innit?" said Knife Boy. "You heard, you dumb cunt," said Matt. Then it all happened. Matt pulled out a machete from the inside left pocket of his cheap suit with his right hand. The lining had been removed to accommodate it. In one fluid circular motion he hacked Knife Boy's right forearm, good and hard, but it didn't come off as intended. But it was hanging at an awkward, unnatural angle all the same, so that was good enough. At the same time, the others charged out of the back of the taxi using both back doors, one for Stan and one for Fox and Maisie. All in milliseconds, they were steaming straight into the rest of the boys, nearly falling over each other for the kill, fists and boots flying in all directions. No weapons, just dusters and fucking rage. The boys were fighting back, all except the one who had just been hacked by Matt. He was on the floor, too busy bleeding. Some of the boys got close enough to draw tools and they were carrying. They all had big blades and one produced a baseball bat from seemingly nowhere. So now it was getting interesting. These boys fancied their chances. Stan took a blow to the left shoulder from the bat, but it had little or no effect. He kicked the boy hard in the balls and he went down, dropping the bat. Stan picked it up and smashed him on the back of his skull 3 or 4 times with no mercy. The boy died there, on the spot. Meanwhile, a white boy had stabbed Maisie in the back, a split second before Fox could reach him and put him in a chokehold until he passed out. Then he picked up the knife he had dropped and rammed it into the boy's thigh, right up to the hilt, shattering his femur. By this time, the boys who were left had been beaten unconscious. 2 of them had had their faces smashed into mincemeat. That was Stan's doing. Fox looked at Maisie, and she said, yeah, the vests work. Except for Stan, they had all put on stab-proof vests. Fox had insisted. The devil was in the detail. What they didn't realise was that during the fight, one of the boys had managed to slip away, down the alleyway beside the shop. Just as they were straightening themselves out and surveying their fallen prey, Matt, who was nearest to the alley, turned round to see about 20 boys running down towards them. They all seemed to have weapons in their hands. "Quick, get the tools. There's more coming. Fucking lively now," said Matt. They were about 50 yards away and gaining fast. They all ran to the boot of the taxi. Mickey was still up front with the motor running, lights off. He couldn't leave his post now, no matter how much he wanted to join in with the violence. He had a very important role to play. He was the driver, a man who was never to be underestimated. The driver on any kind of job, be it a hit, a bank robbery, or indeed a night of violence. He and he alone was the man who was responsible for the safe getaway of his colleagues from the law, or in this case, a bloodthirsty mob who had been invaded by these self-appointed vigilantes. Mickey was probably the most important part of this little firm, and he knew it. Fox opened the boot, and they all hurriedly grabbed something. Stan took an axe and a bicycle chain. Maisie took a mace, a medieval-style weapon consisting of a steel ball with spikes attached to a wooden handle by a short chain. Matt took a samurai sword, replacing the machete, and Fox took a kung fu staff, which had been modified with a nut and a bolt at either end. He had practiced many times with these staffs, and now it was time to put it into action. This was it, a real fight, one that would result in fatalities, as neither side gave a fuck about using their weapons to their full capacity. The boys from the estate were angry and wanted to destroy the invaders, and the invaders were totally enraged and wanted to destroy the vermin who lived on the estate. A perfect scenario for a fight to the death. The boys had now reached the end of the alleyway and started walking towards the four invaders, who were more than ready. This time it was them who were waiting. The boys, although outnumbering the four by more than 5 to 1, were a bit wary though. After all, who would have the bottle to come on their turf and pick a fight? These are strangers, only 4 of them. They were no rival gang, that was for sure. Not just 4 of them. Plus they all looked too old, and the biggest one was dressed in a strange way. They seemed confused. Then Stan, sensing this, as he had many times in his football days, where psychology was the most important part of a fight, knew they were rattled. This had been his advantage in many a ruck he had been involved with, when he was totally outnumbered. Suddenly, Stan shouted, "Come on, you cunts, let's have it." Nothing. "Fuck it," he said, as he started running towards them. These boys had no clue how many times Big Stan Clark and his firm had charged mobs who had outnumbered them and won, due to sheer fucking tenacity and determination. These boys knew nothing. This was just like a football hooligan film when the opposing firms rush into the other mob. He didn't look behind him to see if the rest were following, because he knew they were. Like his old firm, he had total faith in their bottle. It was unquestionable. Although, right now, he would have happily steamed in alone the way he was feeling, with all that coke in his system. Tonight, Big Stan was fucking indestructible. Stan swung the bicycle chain above his head. The others were right behind him. Either the boys would brick it and run, even though they were well outnumbered, the brave 4, or they would fight. They fought. Although they had weapons, they certainly didn't know how to use them. They were obviously so used to hunting in packs and battering their defenceless, unarmed victims that they were not used to being on the receiving end. A weapon can be used for defence as well as attack, but they didn't know this. The 4 of them charged, all guns blazing. They knew how to fight and use their weapons to give maximum pain, where to strike most effectively, and also how to deflect blows using their weapons. The vermin on the estate were totally fucking annihilated. By the time it was over, about 1.5 minutes, there were 12 boys on the floor with various injuries, varying from severe head wounds, broken arms, smashed ribs, and some severe lacerations, caused by Matt's sword. He had aimed for the arms of the wielding weapons and sliced the backs of their legs to fell the enemy. Matt had watched Braveheart a few times. The rest of the boys had fled when they saw the sheer ferocity of the attack from these 4 nutters. Wise move. Stan had a cut on his forehead and a split lip. Maisie had a gash on her upper arm, but nothing too serious. Matt and Fox got away with nothing. Lucky. They put the tools back in the boot, not expecting another turnout. Then they got back in a taxi. Mickey was still patiently waiting with the engine running. It had been a good fight. The odds made it worthwhile, and it was no walkover, which none of them wanted this time. There was a danger and a real possibility of serious injury, so they had to be full alert every second, defending the blows while stitching them out, as in a multiple attack situation, which they had all faced at some time or another during their martial arts training or, in Stan's case, on the terraces. So all 4 of them were familiar with combat in the ring and on the pavement. They were also familiar with the concept and the mentality of fighting, whereas these young losers who had just been battered were not. It was always a one-way street for them as far as they were concerned. Their way, but not tonight. Stan, more than the rest, was quite disappointed by the lack of spirit shown by these young bullies. In his day, when there was a fight between rival firms on the terraces or elsewhere, none of them gave up until they were on the floor. They put up a hell of a lot more fight than this lot had tonight. It must be a sign of the times. As Mickey pulled away, Fox asked him where the old Bill were in the vicinity, but before he could answer, another mob were running up the road towards them. Only this time they were coming from their only exit, the open end of the crescent. There was about 10 this time, with baseball bats and axes. Mickey had the lights on full beam now. "Floor it, Mickey," shouted Fox. There were no other options, as the tools were now in the back of the boot and unavailable. The only weapon they had was a fucking 20-year-old London taxi, but that was enough in Mickey's capable hands. He was the driver, and that was his turn for action, and his job to get them to safety. He drove towards a mob of angry young men as fast as the old girl could go. "Walk Factor 8, Captain." "Run the cunts down," said Stan, looking excited. The mob quickly parted when they realised that the taxi wasn't stopping to pick up any fares. No fucking chance of that. The taxi now had a clear pass, but the boys were on either side, wielding their weapons. Mickey acted quickly, swerving to the left and ploughing into 3 of them, knocking one of them up into the air and bouncing him off the roof. But, as this was happening, the group on the right were hitting the vehicle with everything they had, axes, bats, and one hurled a brick at the back just as they cleared the gauntlet, smashing one of the back lights. Fox knew they had already smashed one of the front lights. He had heard it, and no doubt there were a good few dents as well. But at least they were unscathed. Mickey didn't stop to swap insurance details either. They reached the Old Kent Road without further incident and turned left towards the Elephant Castle roundabout. No old bill, said Mickey. Nearest one's about half a mile away in New Cross, heading this way. That was okay. It was doubtful they would have the bollocks to attend a riot on a filthy council estate. They probably switched the radio off after getting the call, hoping that the scum would sort themselves out. Okay, pull over to the next petrol station after we clear the roundabout, and let's take a look at the damage, said Fox, adding, the worst thing you can have on a night out are broken lights. That's a guaranteed pull, and we really don't want to be getting pulled by the old bill. Why not, said Stan, taking another snort. I quite fancy spanking some coppers. Fuck off, you mug, said Maisie, and stop shoveling that shit up your nose. It makes you talk like a cunt. Chapter 17. Luckily, there was a petrol station just half a mile away from the roundabout on the left, so Mickey pulled in and went round the back to where the car wash was. They were now out of sight from the road, and the man behind the till wouldn't come out from the safety of his locked shop, as sticking his nose into other people's business could result in all sorts of unpleasantness for him. Anyone working or living in this lawless ghetto knew this, and that included the good-for-nothing plod. Hence the fact that the feral scum kids were left to their own violent devices, unhindered by the cowards in blue. What a terrible state of affairs. Fox got out and walked around the taxi, surveying the damage. The right-hand side was only slightly dented on the front wing and the rear door. The right headlight was broken, as was the rear right-hand light. Also, there was a dent on the bonnet and a little crease in the roof just above the windscreen, beside the taxi sign, where Mickey had played skittles with the three boys and bounced one up in the air. Apart from its ability to blend in unnoticed, its ability to conceal its occupants in the rear, and its tinted glass, its ability to turn on a sixpence, it is also a handy weapon for running over lowlifes. All boxes tick then. Buy one now. Fox went to the boot, where he had 2 second-hand headlights and 2 rear ones. Also 2 front indicator lenses and a selection of bulbs tucked away in the corner and wrapped up in a cloth. He then set about replacing the broken lights and bulbs. These are all quick, easy fixes for him. This is an old vehicle, and not one of these new ones, where you needed to be some kind of scientist in order to replace anything. Fox hated these new cars. They all looked identical and driven by people with no personality, all just trying to keep pace with each other. An average family car would set you back about 12 grand, and for half of that you could own a practical classic car with some character. But, sadly, the sheep in question would need to have some character themselves in the first place. They didn't, though. This was the world according to Fox. It was his world, and after all, in his opinion, he was sharing it with people who didn't understand the facts. The sheep had no peripheral vision. They were just beige people. 15 minutes later, having checked the lights were all now in working order, he got back into the taxi. Fuck me, you thought of everything, you clever person, you, said Maisie. Yeah, organisation and planning. It's all in the detail. What can go wrong will go wrong. So always plan for it, replied Fox. Yeah, I bet you ain't got a fucking spare engine in the boot in case this one dies, have you smart cunt, eh? Said Maisie. How the fuck would you know? You don't even know what an engine looks like. You're just a soppy fucking bird, said Fox. Bollocks, I'm more of a man than any of you mugs, she retorted. Yeah, can't argue with that. She's even got a pair of bollocks, said Stan. Maisie raised her middle finger in reply. Mickey started a taxi and headed out of the petrol station, turning left towards home. They wouldn't be taking the same route back, though, for obvious reasons. They would turn left at Clapham Wharf tube station and go via Streatham Common. But something was about to happen to delay their progress. Their night wasn't quite finished yet. As they approached the traffic lights at Kennington tube station, they stopped as they were on red. Fate. Fox noticed a car waiting on the oncoming set of lights. It had its headlights switched off. This could be the cherry on top of the cake for tonight, he thought. Mickey, as we pull away, flash your lights at that car over there with its lights off, said Fox, pointing to the 4-door Honda. He could also make out 4 faces in the car. There was plenty of street lighting, so visibility was good. Why, are you a good citizen all of a sudden? Who gives a fuck if the mug forgot to turn his lights on, said Mickey. Just do it, Mickey, and trust me on this. I'll tell you where to drive. If it is what I think it is, then we're going to have another good turnout, chaps, said Fox. A couple of years ago he had been told by a young lad he knew about gang initiations. They would steal a car and go cruising at night with the lights off, waiting for some unfortunate good Samaritan to flash their lights at them to warn them of their lack of illumination, a mistake plenty of people had made, who themselves would be glad that heads up, as any good motorist would be, but not these scumbags. They would turn around and follow the car that had flashed them. Then, at a convenient location, they would cut them up and force them to pull over and stop. Then they would all get out of the car, and the person who has been initiated into the gang that night would have to physically attack the driver, either with his fists or a weapon, and if the driver was very unlucky, they could even get shot. Fox thought this was just an urban myth. How could these evil bastards think up such a terrible thing, let alone carry it out on innocent people? Just doing the right thing. No good deed goes unpunished. This was even beyond Fox's twisted comprehension. If this was the case, then events could lead towards his rapidly unfolding plan of entrapment. These boys in their little headlight trap would receive life-changing injuries, maybe even death, as he could taste the hatred for them and their very fucking existence. Of course, he could be getting totally carried away with his warped sadistic imagination, and they may have generally forgotten to turn on their damn lights. Maybe. But if he was correct, he would have to think quickly and be on his toes. He would have to lead them into an ambush, and an induction ceremony they would never forget. One way to find out. The lights changed and Mickey flashed the Honda 3 times, so they could make no mistake that they had been flashed. Then he proceeded to drive at a steady 30 miles an hour while the rest looked out of the back window. Fox had explained his theory very quickly while they had been waiting for the lights to change to green. Stan looked happy and took another snort. The other two looked confused and thought that Fox was in need of some vodka. Nothing happened for 30 seconds. Then they all saw the car do a U-turn. It was the same car, but this time with its headlights on. The Honda was about 100 yards behind them now. Fuck me, said Matt. No, they're the ones who are going to get fucked if we can lure them. This time we really need to hurt these wild bastards severely. Okay, said Fox. They all nodded. Oh, fucking yeah, chimed in Stan. They all kept their heads down so that the boys in the Honda would think it was just a lone cab driver on the way home. Easy pickings for the new member of the gang, who so bravely would beat the crap out of him. Although the windows were tinted, they didn't want to take the risk of their shadows being seen, as this was too sweet a chance to screw up. Chapter 18. By now they were in Stockwell, another place that Fox knew well. He had a car site there a long time ago in the High Street. He also knew that roughly 5 streets away, along on the right, and another couple of side streets off of that, there was a car breaker's yard at a dead end of a cul-de-sac on its own with an office block opposite. This would be a perfect place for the ambush, but they really needed the Honda to follow them right there if at all possible. The Honda was gaining slowly. It was 3 cars behind now. Fox told Mickey to take the next turning on the right and told him to take the turn as slow as possible. After he made the turn, he slowed right down to see if the Honda was following. Then he saw the lights sweep into the turn, so he sped up a touch so as not to make it look too sus, like he wanted them to follow him. So far so good. Chuck a right here, then a first left, Fox told him. Then park up at the end of the cul-de-sac, just outside the breakers. This part was crucial. Too fast and the Honda might lose them. Too slow and Fox couldn't do what he had planned. But Mickey was a good driver and he knew what to do. Fox was thinking on his feet now and thoroughly enjoying it. He hadn't used his brain for any skullduggery in a while and found he was adapting well to this new scenario. Mickey turned first right and then first left as instructed and stopped just outside the breakers, just a few seconds before the Honda appeared. This was enough time for Fox to get out of the taxi and run round to the front, crouch down and hide. He still had the Luger from the first mission on Wimbledon Common. It hadn't been used, so it was still clean. It was now in his left hand, with the silencer on and the safety off. It did look a bit sus, the taxi just sitting there on its own at the end of the cul-de-sac, with its lights off and the engine running. But hopefully the gang boys would be too thick to smell a rat. After all, they were the hunters, confident of an easy prey, and they were four-handed and no doubt tooled right up, and too caught up in a moment. The young of the day really were dumb, stupid retards. Fox hoped that they didn't have a gun, or if they had, they would be too scared to use it, or things would get real messy real soon. He would have to shoot them all. The Honda pulled up a few short seconds later, right behind the taxi, just in time for Fox to have crouched down at the position, leaning on the front bumper. The heat from the engine was starting to make him sweat. He wanted to tell Mickey to turn the fucking motor off, but he daren't blow his cover. 3 black boys and 1 white boy emerged from the Honda, while the 3 in the back of the taxi were now all crouched on the floor. So, if one of them glanced in as they walked past, they wouldn't see what was awaiting them. The white boy walked up to the driver's window and said to Mickey, "What you doing interfering with my business, old man?" So it seemed obvious that this was his initiation party. He had a baseball bat in his hand, and the other 3 boys were now standing behind him. "Okay, big man," said Fox as he broke cover from the front of the taxi. "Best you drop the bat. Turn round and put your hands on the bonnet. 2 of you either side." The Luger he pointed at them went a long way to persuade them to do so. Party boy and one of the others went to the front, as Fox had said. The other 2 went to the other side, all the time looking nervously at the Luger. Also in the look of Fox's eyes, that told them that he would pull the trigger. They could just tell. Then Fox banged on the bonnet and the others exited from the back of the taxi. "What's all this?" said one of the black boys. "You know who we are, innit?" said another. Fox ignored them, telling Matt and Maisie to search them. They each searched 2 of the boys. Stan, meanwhile, was standing at the front of the motor, next to Fox. punching his fists into his palm, busters on and quietly chanting, "You're gonna get your fucking heads kicked in," an old football shanty from days gone by. Matt found the revolver on one of the boys. It was loaded, safety on. The other three had blades, and these were all duly confiscated. Then one of them found the courage from somewhere and spoke. "What you white fuckers are going to do in it? You ain't nothing. You're on our turf now," said Stan, getting fed up and started laying into the boy nearest him. He was beating the shit out of the boy, smashing him full force in the face and head. He didn't stop until the boy was a bloody mess and out cold on the floor. Then he kicked his head in. Quite savage, thought Fox, but then again, quite necessary. Matt and Maisie followed suit with the other two black boys, while Fox kept the gun trained on Party Boy. He was Fox's. Matt was picking his boy off with some lovely well-aimed kicks to the head and body, with a couple of punches thrown in too. He was treating this as a training session, except his opponent was unable to fight back, as each kick was so hard it stunned him. He finished off with a perfectly jumping back kick to the throat. The boy went down, quite possibly dead, thought Fox. Any true martial artist would know that this was far too dangerous a kick to do in the ring, as it crushes the windpipe. Quite simply, it was a death strike. Had Matt meant it? Who cared? One less piece of scum in society now. Maisie was doing good too, punching her opponent rapidly in the face and head. The boy managed to throw a punch, but missed. Then she feigned 2 punches to his head, and the boy instinctively brought his hands up to protect his face from the punches that were never intended to connect. Instead, she kicked him hard in the balls, a classic street fighting technique. Draw the hands towards the face and leave a clear shot for down below. She had that down to a fucking T. He went down hard on his knees, his head hanging on his chest, just begging for a good kick. She obliged with a roundhouse kick to the side of his head, with all the force she could muster. He was out. Stan had already kicked his boy into a coma. He was lying on the floor in a big pool of blood around his head. He too, quite possibly, was dead. Oops. 3 down and 2 were dead. Fox dwelled for a moment. Yes, they may well be dead, as Stan was a big hitter, and any one of his punches with a knuckle duster on could deliver a death blow. And that applied to Matt's kicks too. In fact, the way they had performed tonight, they were most certainly more cadavers. He knew this. He stopped dwelling at that point. These bastards were a fucking cancer that needed removing. Tonight they were judge, jury and executioner. Stan especially will never forget when he was a victim of these animals, and to him they were all the same, and he needed the revenge. He was indeed right. They were all the same. After all, who carries guns, knives and a baseball bat and follows an innocent motorist into a dark cul-de-sac, if not with the intention of causing him great harm, or just a fucking whim? No, their actions tonight had been thoroughly justified. The whole episode took no longer than 3 minutes, from the time the boys got out of their car. How quickly things could change. A long time in a fight, a short time in a slaughter. Now, this still left Party Boy. After all, this was supposed to be his night, even if things hadn't quite gone to plan for him. He had watched his mates getting ground to a pulp and knew he was next. It was fucking inevitable, really, even to a thick youth like him. His time was up. At one stage he had tried to run, but Fox had grabbed him by his jacket and dragged him back, pointing the gun in his face. He stayed still. "Okay, I assume that it's your initiation tonight, son, so how about we do it like the good old days, eh? An old-fashioned straightener, no tools, just fists and boots, to see what you're really made of. After all, no gang wants a pussy to join them, do they?" "Nah, of course not," said Fox to the boy. He then gave Matt the gun. Stan and Maisie by now had come up behind the boy so he couldn't run. They were now on the pavement in front of the breakers, on the fucking cobbles. The boy was shaking now and said, "Look, you've had your fun. You can let me go. I won't say nothing." "Sorry, not going to happen," said Fox. "Look at you. You're a young fit lad, and a big lad too. You and me can have a fair fight. If you win, you can walk, and no one will stop you. I really can't say fairer than that, can I?" Indeed, the boy was a good 15 stone and taller than Fox, and he looked like he could be a right handful. Now the boy seemed to gain some confidence, sizing Fox up, thinking he may even have a chance against his old man, more than twice his age, and if he was to fight good and hard, he could leave. The others knew different though. The boy was young and fit, and very much younger than Fox. The trouble was that alone would not win the fight. He needed spirit, aggression and hate. But if he did have all these things, then Fox was bang in trouble. Fox needed this challenge though, for his own personal satisfaction. Winning and knowing that it was not a walkover would make him feel much better. He moved to the front of the taxi and called the boy on. "Come on, put your fucking hands up and let's go." The boy put his hands up and took up a fighting stance. Fox circled him, not getting too cocky or overconfident, as a smack from this boy was going to hurt. He had called this on, so now he had to finish it. Unlike Matt, Fox was ring rusty. It had been a while since he put the gloves on. Fox threw a jab. It connected, but he didn't follow it up. They wanted to see if the boy would actually fight. He did. He threw a right to Fox's chin, but he moved just in time, only feeling the wind from it. Then another 2 punches, both missing. Fox was getting into his flow now, throwing 2 more jabs, lightning fast, both connecting with the boy's nose. They weren't hard, just a distraction for the hard left hooking punch to the boy's head, which did connect full force, rocking him to the core. Fox backed off. No point in rushing it. He was in the zone now and wanted to pick the boy up slowly. The boy tried the low kick, but Fox blocked his foot with his leg, following up the roundhouse to the boy's exposed ribs. He winced, lurched forward with a clumsy right and caught Fox on the shoulder. Enough now. He launched a side kick to the boy's leg, breaking it at the knee joint. The boy collapsed to the floor. Fox then got down on one knee and proceeded to beat the boy to death with his bare hands, pummeling his face, his head and his neck. It had to be done. The rage took over him. The demons were escaping now through his fists. He felt weak now, as if the blood had been drained from him. The last thing he remembered as he sat in the back of the taxi was Matt and Maisie dragging him off the boy. His hands were throbbing inside his leather gloves. He was alone with his thoughts now and isolated from the rest, although in the same vehicle. He had killed that boy. He knew that. Still, he gave him a fair chance. It just went to prove that these so-called gangsters couldn't fight their way out of a fucking empty crisp packet. Pathetic, worthless losers. As far as he was concerned, they had all done society a big favour that night, getting rid of these animals. No loss. Also, his demons seemed to have left him that night, but he knew that there was still some poison left inside him. Maybe he hadn't realised just how much rage and hate he really possessed, and that scared him too. Mickey drove them back without any further incident. Chapter 19. Mickey had patiently watched everything that had happened that crazy night from the driver's seat of that London taxi. He had smoked a couple of joints, saying nothing, doing nothing, except driving them away from the scenes, having witnessed the carnage. He resisted the urge to join in with the bloodshed, although he really felt like smashing some skulls himself. He was wise enough and responsible enough to stay and do his job. The same could not have been said about Stan, as he would have left his post and joined in at the first sign of violence, which is why he wasn't driving. Mickey had been the right man for the job. He smoked a lot of pot and had done for many years. It was his anaesthetic against life. Now, Mickey had killed a man once, but no one knew, only him and his conscience, which never really bothered him. Sometimes you had to do what you had to do, and allowing your conscience to get in the way of your decisions often resulted in not doing what you really needed to do. It will only restrict you in the long run and hold you back. The inaction over certain situations which would also play on your conscience later. Mickey wouldn't let that happen. He got turned over back in 1989, and when he went to the person's house who was responsible for the rumping, he was confronted by 6 of his mates. And when Mickey spoke of his upset, the man told him to go home and phone the police and report him, all the while smirking at him. Mickey wasn't about to have a row with 6 of the cunts, so he left with his wounded pride. 6 months later, his opportunity for revenge arose, which he had always intended to take, no matter how long it took. The bastard was going to pay. He was at a party in Tulse Hill, and at about midnight there became a shortage of drugs, or more precisely coke, which Mickey was clean out of, having sold it all. So the host phoned the very man who had previously rumped Mickey. The man said that he was at home or waiting for a delivery, then he would come straight over in about a couple of hours. Mickey made his excuses and left. He drove straight over to his lockup, not far from the man's house, where he kept a well-oiled service revolver from the Second World War. He took it, loaded it, and drove to the man's house, and waited around the corner, a couple of cars down from the target's motor, a blue Range Rover. 1 long hour later, the man rounded a corner, with a spring in his step, happy to make a delivery at that time of night, as he charged more for his gear then, and people gladly paid for the delivery service. Everyone's a winner, but not tonight. As he approached the driver's door of the Range Rover, Mickey slid out of his car, and by the time he reached the target's car, the dealer was sat inside, just about to pull the door shut, when Mickey wrenched it open, pointed the gun at his head and pulled the trigger, putting a neat hole between the dealer's eyes. He didn't have to say anything, there was no need to. He shut the door and calmly walked back to his own car and left the scene. Job done. His conscience was now clear. Mickey was a quiet, laid-back kind of geezer, but he needed to be handled with extreme caution. He had his own ideas about justice, much like Fox. Chapter 20. Sunday morning at 10 o'clock saw Fox at his pal Nobby's scrapyard in Mitcham. The previous night they had dropped off the others, and Mickey and Fox had driven to the yard, where Fox let himself in with the spare key that Nobby had given him earlier that day. They left the taxi in the yard and got into Mickey's car, which was parked outside, and went home. Now, in the cold morning air, Fox and Nobby were watching as the taxi was meeting its premature end in the jaws of a crusher. Shame, it was a nice motor, but it had to go. Stan had removed all the weaponry the night before and transferred it to his van. Nobby asked no questions. He was often asked to dispose of various vehicles by certain people who had used them in some sort of criminal activity, and Nobby supplied a service. As long as his drink was paid up front, he was happy to oblige. Nobby used to work for Fox many years ago, before he was sacked for poaching one of Fox's punters and buying his car, although Fox had previously turned it down. It was all about principles. If Nobby had asked, he could have had it. Then there wouldn't have been a problem. Still, car cleaners were easy to come by back then. After that, Nobby did well for himself, dealing in cars and using all he had learned from Fox and other various car dealers. He was a natural. Fox had done him a right favour by giving him the Evo. Now, some 20 years later, Nobby was a wealthy man, but as tight as a nun's box. Despite the past, they had remained good pals, doing business now and then. Also, Nobby was the funniest man he had ever met. Totally insane and as mad as a box of fucking one-legged frogs. On the way home, Fox bought the Sunday papers and read them over coffee and toast in Nick the Bubble's cafe. Now, Nick was Italian, not Greek, but they still called him Nick the Bubble. Yet another one of life's great mysteries, like do ants have arseholes, and any other such bollocks. There was no mention of the previous night's carnage. Maybe they had happened too late to appear in that morning's papers, or perhaps the police had issued a press blackout so as not to scare the public. Did Plod think it was the work of rival gangs? Did they think it was the work of vigilantes? Did they really give a fuck, in a city with so much violent crime? Maybe the victims were able to take themselves to the hospital and just said they had fallen down some stairs. One thing Fox did know was that at least 3 or more were dead. On the way home, Fox bought the Sunday papers and read them over coffee and toast in Nick the Bubble's cafe. Now, Nick was Italian, not Greek, but they still called him Nick the Bubble. Yet another one of life's great mysteries, like do ants have arseholes, and other such bollocks. There was no mention of the previous night's carnage. Maybe they happened too late to appear in a paper, or perhaps the police had issued a press blackout so as not to scare the public. Did Plod think it was the work of rival gangs? Did they think it was the work of vigilantes? Did they really give a fuck in a city with so much violent crime? Maybe the victims, who were able, took themselves to casualty and just as they had fallen down a flight of stairs. One thing Fox did know, that at least 3 people were dead. When he got back indoors, he was still a little hyper. The last night's violence had affected him in a way he could never think possible. It had a narcotic feel, one he hoped he could control and shortly give up, but not just yet. The demons were not quite ready to release their morbid grip. Fox remembered a conversation he had with an old friend of his, Black Des, a couple of months ago now. Now, Black Des was not a racist slur on his friend, as when they had met back in the 80s, and all were with all this political correct bollocks, there were 3 blokes called Des on the scene, Fat Des, Long Des and Black Des, and their descriptions spoke for themselves, and when they were mentioned by their given handles, people knew which Des was being discussed. Quite simple, really. Fox had bought his first flat from Black Des, way back, under a false name, and they both got a good result out of the deal. But now, Des had a tale of woe, which was very in keeping with the times they now lived in, a far cry from those glorious 80s. About a month before, Fox met Des in a pub, and Des told him a story. His wife was at an ATM in Croydon, withdrawing out some cash for their daughter's birthday present. But as soon as she had the cash in her hand, and before she could even put it in her handbag, a big bear of a man approached her and said, "Give me the fucking money, bitch." Then, before she knew it, there were 4 of them around her. One was a woman, Romanian she thought, or some sort of Eastern European accent. She was obviously very frightened now, the poor cow. She had no choice but to hand the money over. It was 250 quid. Not a lot of money, but Des has said it was one almighty fucking liberty from these fucking cheeky, thieving foreign cunts. They then walked off laughing and jabbering in their own language. She watched them turn the corner and was still rooted to the spot in shock. This should never have happened. It just wasn't right. And although many people had seen what had happened, no one came to her aid, nor asked if she was okay. British people had now devolved into shameful cowards. That was a fact, and an utter fucking disgrace. A couple of minutes later, she saw a bright green Mercedes pull out of the same road as the muggers had walked up. In fact, it was them in the car. It had distinctive chrome wheel arches and gold-coloured alloy wheels. It was easy to spot these bastards because they didn't give a flying fuck. They had some proper front. She relayed all this to Des that night when he got home from work, and he was understandably furious, but he could do nothing but comfort his wife. A week or so later, he was driving through one of the housing estates bordering Mitcham and Croydon after dropping a mate off home, when he happened to come across the bright green Mercedes with the chrome wheel arches and gold wheels, parked outside a house on the corner. It was 8 p.m, and outside the house, sitting on a wall, were 6 men in their 30s, and one of them was a big bastard, fitting his wife's description of the principal mugger. Now, Des wasn't one to bottle out, and he could have a good tear-up, so he pulled over, got out of his car, and approached the men sitting on the wall. "You mugged my wife last week at a cash point," he said to the big man. "Who the fuck are you?" asked the bear, as Des called him. I just told you my wife got mugged by you, and I want the money back you stole from her. The bear looked at Des and sneered. Fuck off, you black bastard, before you get hurt. And with that, one of the other men produced a baseball bat from behind the wall and stood up. They were all staring at Des now. He wasn't stupid, he knew he couldn't win against these scum, so he walked back to his car, accompanied by their mocking laughter, and drove away. I'm still fucking fuming, he told Fox. These cunts have taken the right liberty and got away with it. I thought about torching their house, but if I get caught with my record, I'll go away for a long time behind the door. I didn't tell the wife because I was too embarrassed. It's not the money, it's my pride, you get me? I totally get it, Des. These dirty slags come over here and take the piss out of us, and most of the fucking time they get away with it, said Fox. This subject truly angered him. This had happened to Des and his wife after Stan's attack and subsequent revenge that Fox had orchestrated, and before the carnage of Saturday night. Fox phoned Stan. How's it going? Asked Fox. I'm good, mate, just off down the pub. You coming? Asked Stan. Yeah, okay. I've got some good news for you, big boy, said Fox, then hung up. They met in the office an hour later and sat in a quiet corner. Stan listened as Fox relayed Des' story. Stan knew Des from a long time ago and liked him. They had worked together many times. Des was a scaffolder and Stan had his own roofing firm. Fuck me, these slags need to be dealt with big style, said an angry Stan. Yeah, but we need to make an example of them this time. We need to send out a strong message. A good beating won't be enough. The message needs to reach the rest of these vermin loud and clear, said Fox. Yeah, but I still want to pound them right up, though, said Stan. Yeah, of course you can, but this needs to be done properly. This is an opportunity, said Fox. I'll need a week or so to plan this out and some more cash. Not too much. I'll also need Matt's expertise with the computer. Stan smiled and said, OK, I'll polish up my dusters. Ready for some skull smashing. Yeah, you do that, said Fox. Chapter 21. A couple of days later, Fox was sitting on his own in the office beer garden on a sunny afternoon, waiting for a punter to turn up and look at one of his old bangers he had in the car park. When in walked Mickey. How you doing? You waiting for some mug to turn up and buy one of your old shitters? He asked. Good guess, replied Fox. You know me so well. But for your information, Michael, my cars are of a very high quality and not old shitters. Yeah, OK. The only thing high about your motors is the fucking mileage. Well, that's before you give them a haircut, said Mickey. It was a standing joke among his mates about the quality and reliability of the cars he sold and how he managed to get away with selling them for so many years. But he had the last laugh because he did sell them and he made very good money in the process. No income tax, no VAT. He was also a very good salesman and knew cars inside out. Disguising many of their faults was fairly easy when you knew how. Like selling a car with an oil leak. Never park it on concrete, park it on mud or grass, so when a punter looks underneath there are no oil stains to be seen. That kind of thing. These are all tricks of the trade, learnt over many years. Also, a big deal needs to be made out of even the smallest fault to the seller, who would be glad to get rid of it. Then, making light of these same faults to the future buyer, it was an art, and he was an artist. His world, his rules. Fox told Mickey about Des and his problem, and told him that there was going to be a party next week for their foreign guests, and would Mickey like an RSVP? Funny you should mention foreigners. I've got someone I'd like you to meet. Wait here and I'll be back in 20 minutes, said Mickey, and with that he left. Fox wondered just who Mickey was bringing down for him to meet, and if he had told anyone about last Saturday night. He really hoped not. Just as Mickey left, Fox's punters turned up in the car park and started walking around the vehicle that was for sale. Fox had a good vantage point from the beer garden and could see the whole car park. He drained his beer and went to work. He was back in his seat within a few minutes. These idiots had travelled from the other side of London to see his car, and as Fox approached them, ready with an ample amount of bullshit, the woman turned to him and said, "Oh, I didn't realise it'd be this big." "Well," said Fox sarcastically, as he knew straight away that this was a no-sale situation, "Land Rovers usually tend to be a bit on the large side, love. Did you not look at the picture in the advert?" "Oh, yes, I like the colour," replied the scatty cow. Meanwhile, her muppet husband, boyfriend, or fucking carer, or whatever he was, said nothing. Fox thought that he was a donut and he should have given her a clump at this stage for wasting everybody's fucking time, but he kept his thoughts to himself. "So I'll take it you're not interested," said Fox, knowing full well that they weren't. "I'm sorry," the muppet chimed in, "but my wife would have trouble parking it." He continued, "Can you tell us how to get to the M25? It took us ages going through London. It should be much easier going round it." "Yeah, you time-wasting sack of shit, I'll tell you," thought Fox. "Yes, no problem," replied Fox, and proceeded to give them the directions, sending the cunts in completely the wrong direction, which should add at least a couple of hours to their journey. That would teach him to waste his fucking valuable drinking time, the fucking vegetables. These mug punters were getting more stupid and annoying by the fucking day. He really needed to get out of this line of work before these idiots gave him a fucking ulcer. The quality of punters these days was worse than ever. Years ago, maybe 2 in 10 were utter arseholes. Now it was 8 in 10. Then he had to tolerate all the bastard immigrants who couldn't speak English properly, just saying, "What's your last price, boss?" and looking to mug him off. Things ain't what they used to be, and that was a fact. Mickey appeared 10 minutes later, and with him, on the end of a piece of rope, was the meanest looking staffy that Fox had ever seen. He looked like a devil dog. He immediately thought that this must be the big Stan Clark of the dog world. "Fucking hell, Mickey, I hope he's eaten today. Is he safe or what?" asked the wary Fox. "First those cunts messing him about on a cart, and now this monster mutt causing him some alarm. What a day." "No, he'll be fine with you. Come over and stroke him," said Mickey. Fox did so, trying not to show any fear, but still thinking fearful thoughts. "See, he's soft as shite," said Mickey. Hopefully this big brute of a dog wasn't a mind reader. He didn't look the type. He bent down and stroked the dog's head gently, and then his back. The dog just nuzzled his arm. "Yeah, okay, so what's his name?" asked Fox. "Filthy," replied Mickey. Fox didn't ask, but it seemed like a fitting name. "I want to show you his party trick," said Mickey. "Oh yeah, what's that then? He don't look the sort to roll over and play dead," said Fox. "Jump in the motor," said Mickey. They then drove the short distance to Croydon High Street and parked just before the pedestrianised part on a double yellow line. No problem. Mickey, like Fox and lots of others they knew, had fake disabled blue badges, which allowed them to park virtually anywhere without getting a ticket or towed. He kept the flies away. Yet another excellent forgery from Monkey Brown, easily fooling the dumb mug traffic wardens. They got out and started walking down the High Street. Suddenly, Filthy started barking at 2 women wearing burqas as they walked past. Then, a little further, at a group of what looked like Eastern European lowlifes loitering outside a record shop, next to an ATM. Say no more. He barked again at some Chinese students, and so on at every foreign person. However, he didn't bark at any English people. Mind you, these are far and few between in the multicultural shithole Croydon had now sunk into. Fox got the general idea. Filthy was a fucking racist. They turned back and headed for the car, with their social experiment now completed. When they got back to the car, there was a traffic warden looking closely at the blue badge in the windscreen. He was checking if it was out of time, as they sometimes did. Filthy growled and bit him on the leg, and Mickey didn't try and stop him either, as he too hated these pests. Seems like Filthy did too. Good boy, Filthy. The traffic warden was rolling about on the pavement as they got into the car and drove off. Oh dear. They drove back to the office and discussed Des's problem further, over some more beers, and Fox assured Mickey that it was going to get sorted. Mickey asked if Filthy would come along and have a little go. "Yeah, why not?" said Fox. In fact, it was a great idea. That dog would cause some serious damage. He looked like he may enjoy himself. Fox spent the next few days planning, buying materials and looking for a suitable location for their party piece at the expense of the bear. He would definitely be seeing another side of good old British hospitality very soon, and not before time either. The pathetic do-gooders had rolled out the red carpet for him and his filthy, thieving ilk. Now Fox was going to roll it back up with him and his mates in there. Their free ride in the UK gravy train was about to hit the buffers. God alone knew how many people they had robbed, or worse, just like the scumbags on Saturday night, except these are not homegrown, so a severe example needed to be made, one that neither the EU or the UN may approve of. Still, fuck them. Justice was about to be served, street style. Chapter 22. By Friday, Fox had everything planned as best he could. He had checked the property that housed his victims, which was on a corner, so that would make things a little easier. So now it was all systems go as far as he was concerned. He told the others to meet him in the office the next day and he would go through the plan with them. Everyone was there by 2 p.m. in the corner of the beer garden. There were quite a few people there as it was another sunny day. The past couple of weeks had been nice too, not natural for this time of year, nor any part of the year in fact, so surely global warming was a good thing. Fox wondered what those muggy tree huggers had a problem with. Maybe it was their white socks and their ill-fitting vegan sandals that may be the lack of the red meat in their diet. Whatever it was, Tarquin and Sophie needed to get over it and get a life. His words, his thoughts. Mickey had brought Filthy along so they could all get to know him. After all, he would be working with them soon. "It's all well and good bringing a dog along, Mickey, but it's your responsibility. If he runs away or gets left behind, then it's on you, my son," said Stan. "No problem, he does what I tell him to do," replied Mickey. "Good," said Maisie. "Oh, and don't feed him all day. We don't want to spoil his appetite, do we?" Everyone was there except Des. He wouldn't be told about it until it was over. It would be a nice surprise for him. They all met up down the road from Nobby's yard at 2 a.m. the following Monday morning. This time Fox drove the van, as Mickey had to sit in the back with Filthy. The house on the corner was in total darkness as they pulled up, and the green work was outside. Good. Fox pulled up on the corner and cut the engine and turned off the lights. They all got out, their masks already on and all dressed in black, even Stan, As he had already indulged himself reliving his skinhead days, these were nighttime manoeuvres, so the appropriate attire was indeed needed. They all met up down the road from Nobby's yard at 2 a.m. the following Monday morning. This time Fox drove the van and Mickey had to sit in the back with Filthy. The house on the corner was in total darkness as they pulled up, and the green murk was outside. Good. Fox pulled up on the corner and cut the engine and turned off the lights. They all got out, their masks already on and all dressed in black, even Stan, as he had already indulged himself reliving his skinhead days. These were nighttime manoeuvres, so the appropriate attire wasn't needed. They crept in single file through the gate and round to the back door. That was locked. Stan leant on it with all his weight and gave it a little nudge. It opened. It was only secured by a small bolt in the middle. No noise so far. Better than expected, as the element of surprise was everything here. They knew that there would be about 6 to 8 people inside the house, but they didn't know how spread out they were. They filed into the kitchen. The sink was piled high with dirty dishes and filthy pans. More empty cans and bottles strewn all over the place. Nice to see the dumb taxpayers' money being spent on the essentials, special brew and vodka. The place was a fucking mess and it stunk. Obviously the women in the house were dirty pigs and knew nothing about hygiene or cleanliness and were minging themselves. On the wall was a Romanian flag and pictures of the motherland. Fox also noticed a photograph of a large half-built house with a group of men in front of it, smiling into the camera, holding up beer cans. Well done again, the UK tax-paying fools, without whom none of this could have been possible, thought Fox. The house they were in now was a 3-bed semi with 2 reception rooms. Their objective tonight was to remove the bear from the house and beat the rest of the occupants to a pulp. Any small children remained untouched, but not the women, as they were in full control of their behaviour and actions, so they needed to be hurt too. They would go upstairs first to where the bear should be asleep, after another hard day of thieving and drinking, no doubt, unless he had Sundays off, the cunt. He would be in the master bedroom at the front of the house, Fox assumed. Filthy was pulling on his lead as they were creeping upstairs. Mickey slapped him round the head and shushed him before he could start growling and having picked up the scent of the occupants. They would go upstairs first to see where the bear should be sleeping, after another hard day of thieving and drinking, no doubt, unless he had Sundays off, the cunt. He would be in the master bedroom at the front of the house, Fox assumed. Filthy was pulling on his lead as they were creeping up the stairs. Mickey slapped him round the side of the head and shushed him before he could start growling, having picked up the scent of the occupants. Fox and Matt were outside the next room, and Mickey and Filthy the third bedroom. None of them knew what was behind the other side of the doors. Their adrenaline was pumping now. Fox nodded. They poled in through the doors. There were 4 in one room that the Matt and Fox had crashed into. A man and a woman in a double bed and 2 men on the floor, both in sleeping bags. The room fucking stunk of stale smoke and unwashed snatch on Blob Week. There were no curtains on the windows, just some grubby nets, so visibility was good. The couple in the bed started to stir as Matt went over and started smashing the man's face in with his knuckle dusters. After 6 good licks, his face was a bloody mess and he would spark out. Then he leant over the man and head-butted the woman as she was trying to sit up. He then gave her a couple of powerful right-handers and put her out with an elbow strike to the neck. Fox, meanwhile, was stamping on the man nearest him on the floor while he was trapped inside his sleeping bag. Then, suddenly, the other man on the floor, about 10 feet away on the other side of the room, threw off his sleeping bag and flew at Fox, grabbing him round the throat. He was young, early 20s, maybe, quick and strong too. Before Fox knew it, he was up against the wall being choked. He immediately swept his arms in a circular motion, coming up underneath the man's own arms, striking his inner forearms, just beneath his elbows, thus breaking his hold and at the same time sticking a nut in, right on target. His nose exploded. Splat. As the man staggered backwards, Fox followed up with a side kick to his right knee joint, dropping him on the floor. Then he was straight on him, punching his face and neck with full force, the only one duster on his left hand, allowing his right hand freedom in case he had to pull the Luger from his inside pocket. He still hadn't used it. The other man was on the floor and starting to stir now. Matt was straight on him, kicking his fucking head in, allowing Fox to continue pummeling the shit out of the other one. All 4 occupants were out cold when they left the room. 1 was dead. No loss, though. Meanwhile, Mickey and Filthy were dealing with 3 more men in the next room. 2 were in a double bed, and the dog was on the bed ripping into their faces with amazing ferocity, chewing and ripping flesh. Mickey hadn't fed the poor thing for nearly 2 days. First one, then the other in turn. He was a heavy beast and was lying across their chests, pinning them down. Surprise, terror and tiredness all added to their inability to stop the onslaught. Filthy was really going to town. Good boy. Mickey had the other man in a chokehold during all this, having pulled him up from the floor by his ears. He had him facing the bed, making him watch, wanting him to see what was coming his way. The chokehold left the man unable to scream. but the ones on the bed were getting rather noisy after about 20 seconds of this. Then the noise stopped. Mickey put more pressure on a chokehold and put the man out. Then he called Filthy over for his dessert. Simultaneously in the main bedroom, Stan and Maisie had burst in to find a bear and a woman snoring in a big double bed. There was no one else in the room. Stan shook the bear awake and then sat bolt upright in surprise, fear and anger. Stan unloaded his metal fist, beating him severely around the face and head while standing over him. Maisie set about the woman, dragging her from the bed and stamping on her head, then kicking her face into the back of her skull. She became still. Then Maisie produced a Stanley knife and gave her a good striping, a souvenir from the UK to take home to show her family. The cunt. Stan had now stopped bashing the bear, who was out cold. "You fucking tosser, we need him alive. You really are a cunt, Stan," said Maisie. "He'll be okay," said Stan. The whole 3 episodes took less than 3 minutes. Now they had to remove the bear and put him in the van. There had been a fair bit of noise during all this, mainly screams from Filthy's victims, as well as his growling. Mickey had taken him from the room and made him shut up. They were all in the bear's room now, and Fox told Matt and Stan to take him to the van, via the front door, double quick, as that was the shortest route. Matt grabbed his arms and Stan his legs, and off they went. Fox had another look in the other 2 rooms. No movement, but plenty of blood though, especially in Filthy's dining room. Fox was the last one to leave and go down the stairs, as the bear was being loaded into the van. Suddenly he heard a noise from the front room on his right. He kicked the door open, only to come face to face with an old man of about 70 in the middle of the room in the dark. He had on jogging bottoms and an old vest. He looked like he had been sleeping on a sofa and had been awakened by the noise, but obviously had been too scared to investigate. Wisely so, as he could have well ended up on Filthy's menu. Now Fox knew that this old man was not of the generation of the scum like the rest of those animals there. He was probably been a hard-working and honest man all his life, only to be brought to the UK to be used to get another national insurance number and make another claim for benefits from the pathetic soft system, again at the expense of the docile taxpayers. The old man had no part in this as far as Fox was concerned. He was just sorry that he had to witness the carnage upstairs and the disappearance of the bear. They were most likely related, but in his simple world he was unlikely to comprehend what his housemates got up to and the crimes perpetrated against innocent people. He was innocent in all this, or so Fox liked to think. So he looked at the old man through the slits in his mask and just raised a finger to where his mouth was. Shh! He shut the door and left. He would not allow himself to stoop so low as to harm a frail old man. That, he knew, was the difference between him and his kind as opposed to these filthy foreign animals, who would not have no qualms about beating a defenceless old man to within an inch of his life for just a few quid. That little scene spoke volumes to him, but he couldn't let this get to him. He still had work to do. He couldn't tell the others either. No need for them to know. He wasn't going soft, but only the guilty had to be punished. Even his inner demons had certain standards. Chapter 23. Fox got into the back of the van this time. Mickey drove with Filthy up front, not wishing the bear to get mauled. After all, he had a job to do, and his face was a mess after Stan had a go at him. He was still unconscious, but he was still breathing, so that was good. Otherwise the night would have been a waste of time. Maisie had had an idea the other day when they were discussing the plan. "Why don't we smear dog food round his bollocks and let Filthy chew them off?" she had asked. "Then he won't be allowed to breed and dump more shit on society." "Fair play, but I'm not having my dog chewing someone's nuts. He ain't no fucking iron hoof," Mickey had said. Subject closed. But Maisie did have a very valid point. These filthy, barbaric, uncivilised, inbred animals should never be allowed to breed. They only produce more scum to ruin everybody's fucking lives. They drove along Mitcham Common. Then, just before the roundabout at the end of the long road, they turned left into a pub called the Ravensbury Arms. It had long since closed and was boarded up and derelict like so many others. Mickey backed the van up down a short driveway beside the pub, which led to the car park at the rear. He turned the lights off and the engine off. Fox and Matt went into the woods at the back of the car park and retrieved a large wooden cross, constructed from scaffold boards by Fox and Mickey the previous week, and then hidden there. It stood 9 feet high, with the horizontal joint to the vertical 7 feet from the base. The joint was secured by 4 coach bolts. It was a very sturdy construction. It had to be. Fox had done woodwork at school, but had only just managed to make a box for his chess pieces in. The box didn't have 4 equal sides, and the teacher was not impressed. This piece of woodwork, however, may have well have earned him a gold star. Maybe. They laid the cross on the ground behind the van and out of sight of the road. Great caution was needed, as Mitcham Police Station was only a few short roads away beyond the roundabout. The bear was now starting to stir in the back of the van. His face was a right mess. Stan had given him a proper pasting. Bits of flesh were hanging loose and one eye was completely closed. His nose was smashed and all his front teeth were gone, and one of his ears didn't look too pretty either. He was well and truly mullered. Oh dear. Fuck off, you black bastard. He may have a little bit of trouble saying that now, eh? Things change. Maisie had some chloroform in the glove box. She put a small amount on an old rag, enough time for them to mount the bear onto the cross, and gave it to him. They didn't put any tape over his mouth for fear his nose wasn't working. Although the chloroform had taken the effect, they didn't want him to suffocate and ruin all their hard work. They laid him on the cross, and Fox proceeded to bang 2 9-inch nails through his palms and into the wood. There were no houses nearby, so the noise of the banging was not a problem. After the nails were in, his wrists were secured to the wood with barbed wire, just in case his weight, when vertical, would cause the nails to tear through the flesh. Fox had thought of everything. Then he placed his feet together and secured them to the wood with more barbed wire, leaving about 2 feet of the wood below. They then all lifted the cross and manoeuvred it over to a hole, also previously dug, incorporating a metal fence post support. It took all their collective strength to insert the base of the cross into the hole. Then, just one more board placed at a 45-degree angle at the rear for some extra support. Job done. They all stood back and admired their handiwork, and Fox's conception of the punishment. Sterling stuff, Mr. Fox. Now for the conclusion of his plan. It was no good going to all this trouble just for him to be found by some bloke out walking his dog on a common in the morning, phoning the police and getting it quickly swept under the carpet. Oh no. After all, it would be no good for public relations for the grovelling, snivelling, appeasing plod that some poor foreign criminal, or victim as they would describe him, had been crucified just a mile away from the police station, would it? No. But Fox was in charge of public relations on this occasion. Matt got his mobile phone out and started to video the bear mounted on the cross. He moved from side to side and top to bottom, with his back against the van. The video lasted for 1 minute, and just as the bear's head started to roll from side to side, he caught that too in the last 5 seconds. Perfect. Just as they pulled out of the pub car park, the bear started to scream. It wouldn't be long now till he was spotted, for now that the van was gone, he was in plain sight of the entrance of the car park, about 20 yards from the road, which would soon become busy with the morning traffic. They drove straight to Nobby's yard, opened the gates and drove the van inside. Another drink for Nobby. No questions asked, no answers given. They then went their separate ways. Later that day, as Fox was leaving Nobby's yard, having supervised the downsizing of the van in the crusher, and sharing another laugh with him, he got a call from Matt, telling him to go round to his place. 20 minutes later, he, Stan and Matt were in Matt's bedroom, looking at a computer screen. Right, I hope this is what you were after. I'll put the video on YouTube first, but I don't know how long it will be before it gets taken off, said Matt. Now Fox didn't know YouTube from a fucking inner tube, but he nodded anyway, not wanting to show his ignorance, though he doubted Stan knew either. Matt pressed a few keys and an image appeared on the screen. A big man nailed to a cross. It went left to right and top to bottom, then close up of a bloody battered face. The quality was very good and clear, even though it was dark. You could just about make out who the man was, the bear. Then, right at the end, his head started to move from side to side, but no sound. Then, underneath the video, some words appeared. Words that Fox recognised. He had written them. This is a Romanian. He was found guilty of robbing a woman at a cash point with a knife in broad daylight, with the help of his friends. Brave, isn't he? He has undoubtedly committed many more crimes, but he was tried and punished for this one. Unlike the pathetic UK justice system, run by soft lefty scum and presided over by pedo judges, we've created a system that works. As you can see, street justice. So, from now on, any foreign nationals coming to this country, England, and committing any crimes against its citizens, then this is what you can expect. We will be watching you. We are many, and you will be punished. This is just the beginning. Any other citizens out there wishing to form their own justice system, then, fellow countrymen, we welcome and encourage you. End of message. Fox was proud of his work. This time, instead of not seeing their handiwork on display, like a couple of weeks previously, as the police had hidden it from the press for obvious reasons, together with the fact that probably none of the victims had gone to them, and there were still some cadavers for them to sweep under the carpet. But this time, however, plenty of people will be seeing this over the internet, and take note. YouTube was a good start, and Matt had explained this. Fox hoped that he had sown a seed of hate which people needed to feed from in order to fucking well act. Matt had also sent the video a message to Facebook and lots of social media sites in Romania, Bulgaria, Poland, and also some UK sites that serve these communities, all untraceable of course. Fuck knows how he had done it, thought Fox, but it was a great job well done. He phoned Des and told him to go on YouTube quickly. Des phoned him back in 10 minutes to say, "Thank you." "No, thank you. If you hadn't told me about what happened to your missus, then I would never have had the opportunity to deliver this message," said Fox. Well, thanks anyway, man, said Des. Click, the phone went dead. The next week, Fox spent relaxing. He managed to flop on an old married bird he saw on and off. Her husband was away on business for a few days, so he spent a couple of days in a hotel by the sea, in the sack, surviving on vodka, room service and lust. Married women loved a bit of variety in the sack when being unfaithful, and they also tended to give a lot fewer problems than single bints, as they needed the security and stability that their husbands provided, which was fine by Fox, good sex with no pressure. The single birds, however, seemed to want to trap some poor mug into something long term, and the older they were, the worse they were for fear of getting left on the shelf. Well, that just wasn't for him. OK, he'd promised them the earth just to get into their fucking Allens, and if they could do with a good turn in the bedroom, he would string them along. But inevitably, he'd have to sack them when they started giving him ultimatums, like wanting to move in together, and any kind of nonsense like that. Fuck that. To top it all off that week, he eventually sold the Land Rover from the office car park when he got back. Empty nuts and full pockets. The people who bought it came down, bought it and drove away happy, leaving him with £1,000 profit in his back pocket. No income tax, no VAT, no money back, no guarantee. Sadly, these kind of transactions were getting rare. He was struggling to clear £1,500 to £2,000 a month. These days, selling an average of 3 to 4 cars a month, whereas years ago it was 20 to 30 a month. Still, mustn't grumble. He was still earning more than the average sheep without having to get up every poxy morning going to work. His time was pretty much his own. He also didn't pay any rent, which was good, leaving him plenty of time for his 3 favourite things in life: sex, alcohol and holidays. There was really nothing else as far as he was concerned. Happy days. Saturday morning, and he was looking in his full-length mirror, having just finished his daily exercises of 200 sit-ups and 200 press-ups, which he did in sets of 50, resting in between. Then some light reps with dumbbells for the upper body. He looked at his reflection. No fat or saggy bits, no bingo wings or beer gut. Not bad for 50, he thought. He liked to look good, which made him feel good. It could always easily pass for 10 years younger, or more sometimes. This he had done when he pulled a little nurse a couple of years ago. She was 23, and he told her that he was 32, and he got away with it. She was a right dirty little bird, tight as a drum and fucked like a rattlesnake. He was glad he had the stamina to keep up. Sadly, this came to an end a few months after. What a bummer. One night when she was staying over, after having her back door smashed off their hinges, Fox received a text while he was in the bathroom, and the nosy bitch read it, only to see it was from another bird that he was banging at the same time. Well, that was the end of that little liaison. Both of them, in fact. As she duly texted the woman back and told her she wasn't the only one that he was fucking hanging out the back of. Having received the bad news from the bird in Fox's bed, she texted back saying that he should stop playing the field at his time of life, as she knew his real age, and informed the nurse of this. That didn't go down too well either with the nurse, as the news that she was getting her back door smashed in by a man old enough to be her father came as a bit of a shock. Fox really picked up the wrong time to take a late night dump that night. Fucking fate. He lost 2 old spunkers that night. A bit of a nuisance, but he was back in the saddle a couple of weeks later after having visited several grabber-granny venues and trawling the internet to restock his supply of old snatch. Still in front of the mirror, he remembered being called a narcissist and a sociopath some years before by a woman he was seeing. He could understand being called a former, but when he looked up the latter in a dictionary, he didn't quite agree. He thought that he fitted into society pretty well. He was not a loner or a nutter, and the fact that he had led his life according to his rules didn't conform with the law or most of society's dumb rules, which would make him just one of the herd and a drone. He was an individual who didn't have a herd mentality. Well, if that classed him as a sociopath, then so be it. Certain members of society liked to label people. It kept them busy and made them feel important. Fox had his own label for them. Kids in particular had more labels than a fucking high street fashion store. ADHD, learning difficulties, etc. In the old days, if they were naughty or played up, then they would just got a slap from their parents or teachers. Job done. If they were thick, they just got put into a low class and left to their own devices. Now everything was so damn complex. Fox was glad he was old and not part of this pathetic new society. It was so totally fucked up, it was a joke. After pondering these facts, he guessed he really was a fucking sociopath. OK, so he was a narcissist too. Who gave a fuck? He snapped out of his daydream when the phone rang. "You coming down to George later on for a beer?" asked Stan. Fox agreed. They arranged to meet in the same pub that Stan had been attacked after leaving on that fateful night, the night that had led to the recent carnage and awakening. This was a good thing. Him going back there, hopefully he was getting over it. The pub was a real den of thieves, an ideal place to buy anything from a stolen car to a bit of dodgy tom, or just to have a drink and catch up with old faces. Fox had been using the pub on and off for over 30 years, and most of the same people still used it too. It was like a time warp inside. A fact made more evident as the decor hadn't seemed to have changed either. It just looked older, like the people in it. Fox liked this place. Apart from the piracy drinks, you would think you were back in 1982, those great far-off days. He found Stan round the back at a corner table, sitting with two faces he knew. Major Tom and his son Lenny Two Boots, as he was known. Fox joined them, and the barmaid brought some drinks over. Fox ordered a large VAT. Tom was a legend on the manor, and beyond. He never had to walk to the bar. He was well respected, and the governor of the pub never charged him for his drinks. Also, anyone in his company was given a VIP treatment. In fact, the only time you had to get up to leave the table was to go to the toilet, something Fox had asked the barmaids for assistance with many times, but was always declined, with their fucking loss. Tom was in his early 80s, but still a living legend all the same. He was no average pensioner. He had been Stan's mentor back in the late 70s when he started out on his football hooligan career. Tom was in his late 40s then, but still the leader of a fearful gang of thugs associated to Chelsea. He was called a major due to the fact that he arranged all the punch-ups with rival hooligan firms. This was done with military precision, avoiding the unwanted intervention of the police and allowing the fights to continue unhindered. Apparently that was quite a difficult thing to do, as there were usually about 50 or so chaps on either side, so a suitable location and a big enough one was always needed. It was no good having it in a pub car park. Before his football hooligan career, Tom was an accomplished bare-knuckle fighter and was rumoured to have gone toe-to-toe with the likes of Roy Shaw and the governor, Lenny McLean. Fox had no reason to doubt this. You better not mess with Major Tom. He also wore chunky keeper rings on each finger of his left hand, legal knuckle dusters, he said. He too was a left-hander like Fox. Now most people don't expect a left hook at the start of a fight. It comes as some surprise, allowing a small advantage as most people are right-handed. Also, in the ring, southpaws are considered harder to fight. But, as with Fox, any good martial artist should be able to switch from left to right with equal confidence, like a good footballer can score using either foot. Tom's son was known as Two Boots, not because he was any good at football, no. He was a debt collector and would always prefer to use his boots than his fists when he came across a bad debt, his boot size being a 14, another reason for the handle. He would collect debts for anybody, as long as they agreed a 50% share for anything he managed to recover. This was usually the fuller's mount, as when his debtors heard that Lenny Two Boots was on their case, they tended to cough up, to save any reconstructive surgery. Any shortfall would result in his two size 14s going to work on them. Even in his early 60s, he was still busy collecting and kicking. He was having a day off that day, giving his plates a rest. It had been a hard and brutal week for poor Lenny. The conversation soon turned to the state of the country, as it normally did with most people these days. Well, there was a hell of a lot of fucking subject matter, wasn't there? Chapter 25. The topic then changed of that of Stan's attack. I hear 3 young lads from Addo got kidnapped, tied to a tree and got a severe beating on Wimbledon Common, shortly after your bit of bother, Stan, said Tom. It continued. It was in a local rag, just a sidebar, not even headline news. Mind you, with Croydon being such a violent place, they reserve the front page for murders, and there's plenty of those round here now. Oh really, I don't read the papers. Like you say, it's just a weekly body count, said Stan. Fox noticed that Tom had said tied to a tree and not nailed to a tree. Again, the police suppressing the facts, but Stan had seen the pictures of matter taken that night on his phone, so he knew the job was done properly. Fox was silently praying now that none of those little bastards had any links to Tom or any of his pals, as that may become a tad sticky. Not that there was any proof, so there was not much he could do. Lenny then said, I know all the faces on the estate. Turns out that one of the kids is the son of a copper, and by all accounts the boy's a right little turd. He had been in care for a few years now for beating the shit out of his mother and putting her into a fucking coma. A right little charmer, eh? These boys were all wrong uns, with long records for mugging, robberies, stabbings, etc. So hearing the news of their little accident was no real surprise, really. Taking a pull from his beer, he continued, Kids these days are just feral fucking animals with no respect. Maybe if this was the kind of punishment that was dealt out to them instead of a poxy slap on the wrist, then the cunts would behave. Fox heaved a sigh of relief, glad that there were no connections. Maybe it was vigilantes, Fox ventured. It certainly wasn't Stan. He was done up like a mummy for over a month. Well, whatever they did to deserve what they got, seems like the job was a good un. 2 of them are now crippled for life, and 1 has serious mental problems. Whoever did this needs a pat on the back, said Tom. Fox held back the urge to stand up and take a bow. Best that no one ever knew about who was involved in that night's bit of work. Let sleeping dogs lie and crippled slags cry. My grandson's getting bullied at school, said Lenny, changing the subject. He wanted me to go up there and sort it out. He said he told the teachers about it, but those cunts are just a bunch of wet blanket wankers, soft as shite, and that's on a good day. So I lent him one of my knuckle dusters and told him to keep an eye out for the kid doing the bullying, and when the chance arises, to follow him to the bogs or somewhere that he goes by himself. Then creep up on the cunt and smash the living shit out of him. Do him some proper damage. People don't like getting hurt, so when he's done him, he will have the control over the kid and turn the tables. Then he can start terrorising him. I also told him it was his choice. He don't have to do it, but if he doesn't, then he'll be a mook for the rest of his life. This is a turning point for the boy. He's only 12, but now's his chance to decide which way his life will go. I ain't heard no more about it, but fingers crossed I ain't got a poofter for a grandson. Then he finished. That's right, agreed Stan. There's always been bullies and always will be. That's a fact of life. And what you told him then is the only way to deal with it. No good telling the teachers they're just a bunch of soft, useless cunts with no control over anything. He needs to sort it out for himself. So let's hope he hammers the granny out of the kid with a duster, and if a teacher gets in his way, then he needs to chin the mug up too. Fuck 'em. They all drank to that and ordered another round. As the barmaid came over, she gave Fox a sly grin. She was in her 50s, but well fit, and Fox had been trying to get into her for a long time, but she was married, so politely declined his advances. But he had heard through the grapevine that she was now divorced, so maybe he could slip in there and give her a good fucking, 'cause, boy, did she ever need one, and he was the man to serve her right up. He decided to give her a tug on his way out. He was getting on a lob on under the table, just thinking about what he was going to do to her. Should he start her on all fours or legs akimbo on her back? Decisions. After another couple of hours of talking about this and that, Fox left, leaving a £50 note on the table for his drinks. More than enough, but he thought of it as a bit of the taxman's share from the sale of his last car, being put to better use. Cheers, HMRC, you muggy shit cunts. On the way, he got the barmaid's number, so another result. He would book her in for later that week, to take her to her hotel and fuck her senseless. Happy days. It was always exciting getting a fresh bit of snatch on a firm and seeing how it performed, and he had high hopes of this one. He walked to his car, which he had parked around the corner and well away from the pub, slipping on his knuckle dusters as he walked, just in case someone tried to jump him. He was always ready to spring into action in his filthy, violent concrete jungle, whether driving or walking, always tooled up. He never parked outside a pub, making the old Bill's job easy. Watching someone coming out from the pub and getting into a car, just what the bosses wanted. Same as parking in the pub car park. On many occasions, the slags have plotted up waiting for that just to happen, and a lot of people have lost their licences due to being careless, and now they were carless. Park the car around the corner and up another road. Then all they see is someone coming out of the pub and walking up the road and round the corner, assuming they are local or making their way home on foot. So simple. These little precautions make a big difference. The police were not a very intelligent breed, and fooling them was quite easy. There was no point in antagonising the fuckheads. Also, when they pull you over, for whatever reason, always be polite, even though it chokes you. Yes, officer. No, officer. I do apologise, officer, etc., etc. It gives the Ponces a sense of importance. Then they are more likely to let you go, as long as you faithfully promise not to do whatever it is they pulled you up for in the first place, ever again. Then you can go on your way and continue your business without their hindrance. Quite simple, really, officer. You fucking mug cunt. His world, his rules. He drove towards home, stopping off at a package shop at the bottom of his road on the way for a packet of skins. Green Rizzler, king size. He had the Berth and Trinidad come around later that night, and she liked to get stoned and film him eating her ass and then fucking it on her phone, and play it back as they laid in bed. Well, who was he to argue? That reminded him he had better get some baby oil to lube her up as well. As he was paying for the skins and the baby oil, he looked out the window and noticed a young white girl of about 15 or so, jostling an old lady and blocking her path. Meanwhile, her friend, another girl of about the same age, watched and laughed. "Where you going, you old bag?" said the girl, still blocking the way, and the poor old dear just kept her head down, saying nothing for fear of a possible beating from her young aggressor. Fox's bowels nearly burst, watching this disgusting behaviour from this dirty little slut. He threw open the door and took 3 long strides, and upon reaching the girl, he grabbed her round her throat with one hand and rushed her up against the nearby wall beside the shop, lifting her off her feet, at the same time glancing over at the other girl. She froze when she saw the sheer hate and danger in his eyes. Turning back to the girl he had pinned against the wall, he said, as calmly as he could, which wasn't very easy, as this had really rattled him, "If I ever see your face again, I want to gouge out your eye and skull fuck you, you filthy little cunt." With that he let her go. She fell to the floor in a crumpled heap, cowering and shaking, the cowardly fucking bully. The old lady was across the road by now and on her way. Poor old dear. This kind of thing should never have happened to her. This was so fucking wrong. Fox couldn't believe just how disgusting this new society was, how low it had sunk in just a few short years. The young were just vile, feral little maggots, an utter disgrace. Chapter 26. The next day, Fox stayed indoors, feeling quite tired after the previous night's bedroom exertions. Fuck me, could that little bird do a right good turn? Pity she talked too much, though. The previous day, after Tom and Lenny had left the George pub, Stan had asked when their next excursion was going to be, and had Fox planned it yet. Fox said no. He told Stan that they had gone as far as he wanted to go. He said that he was no vigilante. What, you lost your bottle, son? There's plenty more scum out there that need to be dealt with, said Stan. He was right, of course, but even if they went out every night for the next 20 years dealing with the problem, they wouldn't even scratch the surface. There was just too much scum out there, and every day they were being born to useless scum parents who really shouldn't be breeding, ready to fill more places in this sick, immoral society, the fucking oxygen thieves. Fox thought that if he really put his mind to it, that perhaps he could get an army of like-minded people to go out in the streets and batter the scum. But that seemed like too much hard work, and it really wasn't his problem, as he didn't intend on sticking around. The country was totally and utterly finished. There was no ifs or buts about it. The only way to survive was to leave the cesspit before it got like a Mad Max film. He had also noticed that lately Stan was bang on a nose powder and was tripping on the violence he had dished out and enjoying it in a very unhealthy way. It was a kind of unhealthy way that would earn him a one-way ticket behind bars. OK, Fox did enjoy it, but only the fact that it was hurting the guilty who needed it. But Stan seemed to be enjoying it on another level. He couldn't quite put his finger on it, but it was definitely down to the coke, that was for sure. Taking drugs with an unbalanced mind was never a good idea. It only magnified the problem. Fox also knew that it really wasn't Stan's fault. If it hadn't been for his attack, then his thoughts would just stay at the back of his mind and never come to the surface and manifest themselves. Those young bastards who had done him really did have a lot to answer for. Nevertheless, Stan wanted more of it. He seemed to be on a self-destruct mode with the coke driving him. You can crack on, Stan, but violence really ain't my bag. It only started out as a bit of revenge for what happened to you, but now I'm out. And besides, how long will it be before one of us gets our collar felt, eh? Yeah, think about that. Remember, if push comes to shove, the filth and the bastard judges won't see it our way. They will always side with the scum. We will never win. This is a sick fucking society. We are white and we are British, so this do-gooder-run shithole will go right against us. And I ain't going down, because believe me, they'll throw away the key, pal, Fox told him. But we need you to do the planning. You're good at it, and we won't get caught, replied Stan. No, Stan. Now, I don't want to fall out of you over this, but I don't think the others will want to continue either, with the risk of all that birdie in the equation. Matt and Maisie are young and have the future, and the future don't involve slopping out for the next 10 years. Then Fox left the pub, not wanting to have a full-blown argument with his friend, especially as he had seen him in the toilets earlier, chucking some more up his left nostril. He was worried for him. He knew the coke had got a grip on him now. He loved Stan like a brother, but he thought it best to stay clear of him now. He was a ticking time bomb, and he didn't particularly want to be anywhere in the vicinity when he went off, 'cause he knew it wouldn't be pretty. In fact, he wouldn't have any other contact with the others either. It was now time to distance himself, which was something he was good at. He could turn and walk away from people. He was a solitary man, and always would be. Something he was happy with. He was very comfortable in his own skin, and he didn't feel the need to get too close to anybody anymore. They had made their point. They had shown a few of the scumbags out there what happens to their kind when street justice comes looking for them. It had been great, and he didn't regret a minute of it. Every punch, every kick, and all the energy used against those animals who had hurt so many people, just for fun. He knew he was justified. Even if some had died, he really didn't give a flying fuck. They were no loss to anybody, let alone society. He also knew that he had had an inner demon that had now been set free during all that. After all those years festering in his soul. Well, he hoped it was gone, but who could really tell? Even the planning, which he had made as airtight as a submarine door, to enable them to get away with what they did, and the fact that the police force were not what they used to be, well, that was a fucking understatement. He had thought on his toes, even when the car with no lights presented itself. An excellent turnout that was, an unexpected bonus. Yeah, he was quietly satisfied with himself on all counts. He was a law unto himself, an island, an independent state. Fuck it, he should have his own flag, really. But this kind of thing had no place in his life now. It could only serve to ruin him, like the coke was going to ruin Stan. It would also get him locked up for a long time. Fox was back in control now. Time to change his life and turn his back on all the madness. He pondered on the vile underbelly of society. He had never realised just how hostile and dangerous his country had become. It was truly frightening, even for a hard man like him. The police were nothing more than fucking useless, and totally overwhelmed by the sheer volume of crime. Even if they got a conviction, it would only happen in front of some bastard lefty pedo judge who would only dish out an 8-year sentence for murder. Out in 5? Life is cheap these days. Very cheap. A high percentage of crime was committed by foreign scum, who knew they could hide behind a pathetic human rights farce. The country was run by shameless traitors. Political correctness had well and truly brainwashed the sheep. The citizens were now devolving into farmyard animals, easy to manipulate and control, bred to become victims of their own tolerance, stupidity and ignorance. Orson Welles would have been proud. The indigenous people were now well and truly second-class citizens in their own country, and every day it was getting worse. Fox could see no future in the UK. He felt genuinely sorry for those who kept their heads firmly buried in the sand. They had their dead-end 9-to-5 jobs, paying their taxes, going home to their TV dinner, then to bed, and ready to do it all over again the next day. All just to pay their bills and barely keep their heads above water. Working just to exist. Taking the tube to work, and all the time keeping their fingers crossed that today one of their foreign guests didn't choose to don their suicide vest and put an end to it all on that particular train. If you broke it all down, it really was a tragic state of affairs. Fox smiled as he thought of a poster he once had on a wall of one of his garages. The picture was of a boy of about 6, dressed in a designer suit and leaning against a brand new Porsche 911 convertible with a big house in the background, and underneath were the words, "I've worked hard all my life for this." Funny, because he thought that these days a poster of a middle-aged man in a cheap suit leaning against a second-hand Ford Mondeo outside a grotty 2-bed semi with the words, "I've worked hard all my life for this," would have been more appropriate. It was much nearer the truth in today's shitty world, where the working pods seemed to get nowhere, and where crime really did pay. Every angle he looked at it seemed to be obtuse. He knew now that he really needed to leave the broken UK, before he was dragged down into the vortex. After all, he had survived to the ripe old age of 50, having had a very colourful and successful life, and things had mostly gone his way. He had plenty of good times and memories, the kind of life that only good money could provide, and all that with no education. There was a message there somewhere. He had experienced it all now, and it was time to get out while he was still ahead and while he was still able to. Who knew what was round the corner in these uncertain times? The card business and the fraud game were now over for him. The computer says no. He had tried to resuscitate them both over the past few years, but with no success. Well, hardly any, anyway. But now it was like flogging a dead one-legged horse. He knew when to give up and throw in the towel. The place had absolutely nothing going for it. Fuck all. There and then he decided to book a one-way ticket to his home in the sun. His second home, where it was cheap to live, the people were friendly, the beach was near and the sun shone on most days. He could speak enough of the language to get by. He would swap his life in the fast lane for life in the bus lane, swap his V8 Jag for a 150cc scooter, and swap his martial arts training for yoga. The time had come. It had been coming for a long while now. He would be a foreigner in a foreign land, not a foreigner in his own land. The writing was on the wall, and he was clued up enough to take note. Burying his head in the sand like the fools were not an option for him. Those drones had one almighty shot coming their way. He would approach Roy, his landlord and good friend, who lived on a ground floor flat. He would put it to him to turn his loft flat into a cannabis farm, and give Roy half of his housing benefits and disability payments every month, for as long as he could get away with claiming it. He didn't have to sign on every fortnight, being on disability, just had to show up for the random medicals now and then, so that was handy. In exchange, he would take half the profits from the farm. He knew that Roy would go for it. There was 3 flats in this converted Victorian semi that Roy owned, but it was no ordinary house. It was affectionately known as the Flop House. Roy was on the ground floor. His nephew Kerry, a drug dealer by trade, was on the first floor, and Fox was on the top floor. No TV licence, no council tax, as they were all on benefits. No recycling and no water rates. They were all on the swindle. All were good friends and all had a good laugh about their situation. It felt good to override the system. He would miss that, but nothing lasts forever. Fox booked his tickets for 2 weeks' time, enough time to tie up loose ends and transfer his money. Chapter 28. 4 months later found Fox sitting on his balcony at 8 AM, drinking coffee and watching the sun rising over the mountains. It was a much better view than that of the gasworks and the bleak grey skies that greeted him in Croydon. Things were at a very slow pace for him now. He knew that it would take time for him to adjust, but this was his life now, and there was no going back. Plus the fact that his old flat now resembled Kew Gardens. Roy had agreed to the cannabis farm idea. He would earn more money from that than renting it out. Plus, half of Fox's benefits made it a no-brainer. Roy had got to work as soon as Fox had left, and the first crop would be ready any time now. Meanwhile, Fox was living quite well on his half of the benefits swindle. 3 cheers for the UK taxpayer. Hip hip, fuck you. Well, if they could look after every piece of foreign filth that was washed up on their shores, they could certainly fucking look after him. Money was no problem. He had enough to live the rest of his life in modesty. There was no stress either. He had met a nice girl there who had also left the UK rat race behind. She had recently split up from some lemon and now they were together. Who knew how long it would last? But she seemed nice enough, and maybe it was time for him to stop chasing skirt and settle down. Maybe, but who knew? Life was good. It always had been, and now living there was a cherry on the cake. The place was paradise, with trips to the beach, lying round various hotel pools, going out on his speedboat, snorkelling in clear blue seas, eating out in nice restaurants, drinking in bars, meeting new people, some expats, some just there on holiday. Looks and talk of envy when he told the holidaymakers how he lived there now, having turned his back on a broken UK. They too secretly wished that they could do the same, but knew they never would. They could never get out of hamster wheel. All in all, it was fan-fucking-tastique, as the French might say. He had told his friends that he was only going for a couple of months, which was not out of the ordinary of him to do. He didn't mention that he was never going back. Roy was the only one he knew, and he wasn't about to say anything due to the fact that he was in charge of the farm. Loose lips sink ships. Fox had heard through the grapevine that Matt had returned to the Philippines to continue his kickboxing and would soon turn pro and fight for a living. Undoubtedly his experience from their excursion would pay dividends in making him totally indestructible in the ring. He had the heart and now he had the hate. He promised himself that he would keep tabs on the boy's career and surprise him one day by turning up for some of his more important fights and being in his corner. Maisie still worked at a hospital knocking people out, but now with just anaesthetic and not violence. She was now in a relationship with a glamorous Indian girl by all accounts. Perhaps the Indian girl liked a bit of rough. Well, Maisie definitely was that. More of a geezer than most of the blokes Fox knew. Fox wondered what it would be like to eat Indian pussy. Maybe he would ask her if he ever saw her again. Maybe he would watch. Maybe not though. Seeing Maisie at it would be a right turn-off, and he doubted she would share a partner with a lech like him. He also wondered just how the experiences of their last excursions had affected her. She was a tough old bird with a very cruel streak. He saw the way that she cut those scumbags on the common that night, with total detachment, almost mechanically, and that concerned him. He hoped she would be happy in life, and put that all behind her. He had heard nothing of Mickey. He was a survivor though, getting through life in a haze of cannabis smoke, and just cracking on with business. Well, there wasn't much else he could do. He was a drug dealer by trade, so that was his life. But Fox liked Mickey, and he knew he would be okay. He also hoped that Filthy the racist dog was okay too, and that Mickey was now feeding him on dog food and not Romanians. He remembered the blood-soaked scene as he put his head round the corner of Filthy's dining room that night they dealt with the bear. Fucking hell, that dog was ferocious. He did his bit just as well, if not better, than the rest of them. He wondered if the 3 Romanians in that room survived. If so, just how messed up their faces were. But who really gave a fuck, eh? They got what they deserved, the fucking dirty bastards. The only bad news was concerning Stan. The story ends as it began, with a phone call from Lynn, with more bad news about her old man. Over the past few months, Stan had become hard to live with. His coke habit had escalated, and his business had suffered as a result. He had taken to driving around at night and stopping when he saw groups of youths and laying into them full steam. He had even been stabbed during one altercation, but nothing serious though. Matt had told her this as he was with him on one such occasion and had seen it firsthand. He knew his dad was going off the rails and he was naturally worried. Sadly, it all came to a head one morning in filthy Croydon. On his way from the car park, walking to the shops, he had to walk past the immigration centre and walk past a queue of filthy immigrants. As he neared the front of the queue, one of the dirty roaches bumped into him as the street was quite crowded and there wasn't much room. Stan stopped and looked at the roach, and the cheeky cunt said to him, "Watch me again, you fat bastard." Well, that was that. Stan hit him hard round the side of the head, dropping him like a sack of filthy shit that he was. As he lay on the floor, Stan turned him onto his front, sat on his back and grabbed his head with both hands and snapped his filthy, worthless neck. Crack! It was no less than the vermin deserved, but now Stan was on remand for murder, and he was going down, especially as the victim was a filthy immigrant. There will be outrage from the vile, filthy do-gooders slugs, and also the disgusting, appeasing judges. If it was the other way round, the sentence would only be a few years, but it wasn't, so no doubt a 20 would be handed out to poor old Stan. There was no sanity in this world anymore. He should have got a fucking medal for ridding society of this disgusting, thieving, rapist piece of worthless immigrant shit, and saving the taxpayer money too. This was a very sad outcome. Fox didn't give a flying fuck about a dead cockroach. It served him right for what he had said to Stan. He was sad for Stan. He had not been right since he was attacked. He had regressed to his football hooligan days, and his demons had been awoken. Fox could understand that. He would have been exactly the same, and no amount of revenge would have ever been enough. It would have had followed him to his grave, and maybe beyond. Fox thought about what Stan had done. He had no choice really, did he? Fox would have done it differently though. He would have gone back to Monkey Brown and bought an AK-47, then gone down to the queue and mowed down as many of the filthy vermin as he could, until the bullets ran out. He could imagine himself doing just that. He often thought that if he was ever struck down with a terminal disease, he would. He really would kill as many of these worthless bags of shit as he could, then give himself up. He would be a fucking hero. He would turn a negative into a positive. Sadly, he knew that the rest of the spineless sheep in society would not see it like that. The fucking weak, gutless idiots. Fox was very glad that the immigrant was dead, but not that Stan was being punished for it. That was an injustice in itself, as far as he was concerned. But most of all, he was sorry for his childhood sweetheart, the girl who took his cherry and let him come inside, the girl with the mousy hair, Lynn. She and Stan had lived a good life together, and it would have continued but for that incident after he left the pub that evening. They might not have killed him, but in the long run, they certainly fucked up his life, and his poor wife's. Those young feral bastards had created a monster that night, one who is on self-destruct ever since. Yeah, Lynn was the one Fox really felt sorry for. Stan wasn't the man she knew anymore. She's uncertain if she likes him, but she knows she really loves him. That's all.